Millions of dragons blotted out the sky, plunging Earth into absolute ruin, while our main character, Yu faced another miserable nightmare. He stood totally alone, inside a blazing hellscape. This marked his 6th regression, and yeah, another absolute failure. Vicious monsters and giant dragons swarmed everywhere, ripping the heavens apart in pure chaos. Our main character paused, wondering if his fate might change. Had he actually listened to that green dragon's warning? Yet, he pushed away the regrets. Having already survived this exact nightmare 6 different times, he accepted that failing and adapting was just part of his harsh reality. His mind drifted back a few minutes prior, when those baby dragons desperately pleaded for their freedom. That green dragon screamed that her closest friend committed suicide because of him, demanding to know if he felt satisfied. But hell no. Our ice-cold protagonist bluntly declared they triggered this entire apocalypse in the first place. Feeling absolutely zero remorse, he stepped right up to her, delivering a brutal ultimatum. Their existence literally dragged the world into this twisted state, forcing him to confront this doomed timeline once again. He gripped his formless sword, an absolutely overpowered divine weapon, and ruthlessly slaughtered his way through the endless horde, completely refusing to yield. The guy fought like a demon, obliterating colossal dragons and savage beasts. Although physically drained to his absolute limit, he ultimately conquered the crumbling ruins, realizing with a heavily shattered spirit that slaughtering endless monster waves changed absolutely nothing. They just kept spawning. The ruthless system showed zero mercy. A glowing red notification violently flashed before his eyes, declaring Earth had officially entered the apocalypse phase. Essentially, the brutal system was mocking him. Game over. Yet, as Jite stood completely paralyzed with zero energy remaining, an insane miracle unfolded. Massive, golden clockwork gears erupted across the bleeding sky. The legendary Vintage Clock Authority activated, a god-tier EX rank supreme skill, and time itself forcefully ripped backward. Jite slowly shut his eyes, surrendering to the void, deciding his agonizing struggles might actually mean something. The system blasted a global time reset notification, and boom, reality aggressively warped back to the modern day. Massive crowds flooded the neon-lit streets, staring in absolute terror at an ominous purple portal. Panicked civilians lost their minds, screaming for the police. One arrogant dude desperately reassured his terrified friend, claiming it was totally harmless, and foolishly attempted to snap a quick selfie with the glowing rift. Huge, fatal mistake, bro. Without warning, grotesque nightmares exploded from the void, devouring the guy alive on the spot, painting the concrete streets completely red. Shattered phones littered the pavement beneath deafening screams. In a single heartbeat, ordinary life shattered into pure, unadulterated horror. Since that cursed day, demonic purple gates violently erupted worldwide, unleashing relentless armies of bloodthirsty monsters, dark nights, and bizarre cosmic entities invading the planet. Humanity teetered dangerously on the edge of total extinction. Then, an epic twist shifted fate. Mysterious awakening powers violently ignited within random humans, sparking a revolutionary era known as the New Genesis. Global authorities frantically gathered awakened kids possessing extraordinary skills, forcefully relocating them to a heavily fortified floating island, named hatchling, for brutal combat training. This sanctuary evolved into the Global Academy City, lair, exactly where Jite, entering his 7th regression, made his dramatic return. Meanwhile, deep inside a grimy alleyway, a blade-wielding psychopath took a hostage, aggressively threatening the terrified crowd, swearing he would slice her throat. Armed officers completely surrounded him, demanding he drop the weapon immediately. The madman completely snapped, screaming his life was already ruined, and he intended to massacre everyone around. Out of thin air, our overpowered hero Jita materialized directly behind the lunatic, casually whispering that he should drop the act and surrender, following police orders. The psychotic villain froze in absolute shock, bewildered by this phantom's insane speed. He wildly slashed his blade, assuming Jite was just another cop. Jite effortlessly dodged the fatal strike, instantly crushing him with one devastating single blow, coldly stating he represented the absolute law here. Honestly, the shattered criminal slammed the concrete floor with such brutal force, his consciousness instantly faded into darkness. Jite stared at his bare knuckles, feeling deeply irritated with his mistake. For failing to suppress his monstrous strength during this little cop roleplay, the guy seriously needed to hold back. Later that afternoon, rumors spread like massive wildfire. A random colleague explained how Joe Hosek, that rogue superhuman criminal, got cornered inside the shopping district during a frantic pursuit, violently snatching an innocent hostage. Staring at the comatose villain, Jite's nervous partner practically begged him to limit his overwhelming physical force. Unbothered, our main character brushed it off completely cold. Scanning the room, he noticed zero familiar faces. Honestly, He had literally abandoned this pathetic daily grind since his very first regression. The tragic reality behind abandoning his humanity stung deep, the brutal massacre of those baby dragons. These innocent mythical beings crossed dimensions from Escalation, seeking joyful adventures and warm memories across Earth, only to encounter absolute, heartbreaking disaster. Several shattered their minds in endless warfare, others crumbled beneath toxic human hatred, while some completely surrendered to despair, ending their own lives after failing their cosmic duties. Witnessing this slaughter, the ancient adult dragons unleashed pure blazing wrath, annihilating humanity, triggering an endless cycle of doomsday. Regardless of the god-tier power he accumulated across countless tragic lifetimes, he hit the absolute level cap. His power was boundless, but solo strength couldn't rewrite fate. Time for a totally new strategy. Just as Jite prepared to bounce, a female officer blocked his path, shooting her shot for a post-shift dinner date. She was super adorable, but our ruthless main character instantly rejected her. He had bigger missions to run. When she asked where, our guy casually dropped a nuke, announcing a sudden flight to Europe. Cut to Florence, Italy. A gorgeous green-haired girl was chilling in a sunlit park, giggling and entertaining the local kids. She crafted delicate flower crowns, radiating pure, unbothered energy. Meanwhile, Jite analyzed her every move from the shadows. Stepping into the light, he finally spoke up. She spun around, completely caught off guard, while Jite locked dead serious eyes, demanding she follow him immediately. Quickly activating a hidden magical translation ability, the girl processed his bold command. She offered a hesitant greeting in return. When she nervously questioned his motives, Jite bluntly stated they had crucial business to handle. Bewildered, she asked if he actually knew her true identity. Jite gave a cold nod, prompting an incredibly awkward, nervous giggle. Trying to play it cool, she questioned why she should follow a total stranger. She admitted the only detail she could sense was his overwhelmingly monstrous aura, proving he didn't belong in this realm. Jite simply responded with heavy, deafening silence. Staring up with wide, cautious eyes, she braced herself and asked if this was an assassination. Our guy just shook his head, offering total peace. Mind blown, she anxiously stuttered out, asking if she was being kidnapped instead. Jite shamelessly agreed it was basically the exact same vibe. She tried deflecting with humor, asking if he was some weird dragon-obsessed creep, but our overpowered main character instantly killed the joke, ordering her to drop the comedy act. His aura sharpened as he declared his absolute mission to protect her from this chaotic, broken world, warning that stubbornness would force him to use brute strength. He subtly brought up the Green Dragon clan's legendary eyes, which easily pierced through normal illusions. He trusted her sharp survival instincts to absolutely realize. He spoke pure facts. Flashing a tiny, forced smile, she asked if good behavior guaranteed 5-star VIP treatment. Jite casually gave his word. Accepting that escape was literally impossible, she demanded to be treated like an honored guest rather than a captured prisoner. Winking playfully, she extended her pinky to seal the deal. Jite noticed her violently shaking fingers, instantly realizing the truth. She was absolutely terrified of his monstrous presence. Regardless, he played along, locking pinkies to forge the ultimate promise, officially launching their chaotic new dynamic. Cut to the very next morning, the dragon girl peeked nervously around her bedroom doorframe, swimming in a massively oversized shirt, wondering if her terrifying new boss was awake. She sleepily shuffled into the living area, only to find Jite casually lounging inside a terrifying, swirling storm of dark aura. Panicking slightly, she called his name. Completely unfazed, Jite coldly commanded the writhing shadows, guaranteeing everything would go completely smoothly, as long as his absolute orders were followed. Suddenly, the pitch-black mist magically morphed into a flawless, identical clone. This absolute cheat code was his double S rank ability, the Grand Duke's Shadow. The summoned entity deeply bowed to its mighty master, brushing right past the completely paralyzed girl. Her jaw dropped, realizing this terrifying phantom looked exactly 100% identical to Jite himself. Breaking the tension, he told her to chill, explaining his shadow double was handling the daily grind. Then, he casually asked about her sleep. She cautiously took a seat, finally realizing this overpowered menace was permanently sticking around instead of actually clocking in. He flexed that since the clone used his raw power, he was technically on the clock. His true mission now was acting as her ultimate personal bodyguard. Chuckling nervously, she nodded along. Desperate to diffuse the heavy, intimidating atmosphere, she pitched the idea of a shared breakfast feast, but our stoic hero claimed human sustenance was completely unnecessary. Refusing his rejection, she complained that dining solo was way too depressing, while her overpowered roommate literally just stared at the wall. Raising an eyebrow, Jite questioned her intense obsession with human meals, reminding her that mythical dragons didn't require earthly calories. Swinging her legs happily, She flashed a bright, pure, innocent smile, explaining that cooking wasn't about survival. It was about the absolute joy and vibrant energy of sharing flavors. Out of nowhere, she leaped off the couch, declaring their empty kitchen totally unacceptable. She demanded an epic grocery run to prove the magic of a real morning feast. Jite tried resisting the side quest, but his protests hit a brick wall. Flash forward, the duo pulled up to a massive, bustling supermarket, eyes glued to them instantly. She radiated stunning, otherworldly beauty, while Jite carried massive main character drip. Even random girls were whispering about his insane visuals. Totally oblivious, the green dragon joyfully skipped through the aisles, humming sweet tunes, while Jite trailed behind with his signature deadpan expression. He suddenly realized she was stockpiling ingredients like a literal apocalypse was coming, questioning if this mountain of food was truly just for breakfast. She quickly defended her loot, arguing their barren kitchen needed a total revamp, ensuring they had premium supplies for all their future cooking sessions. Her eyes sparkled with culinary excitement, but Jite completely crushed her dreams. He ordered her to dump the endless grocery bags at home so they could just grab takeout instead. Before she could even celebrate dodging dish duty, he dropped a sudden, serious side mission that left her entirely speechless. She looked visibly deflated, but he stood firm. They had crucial destiny-altering business to handle, and absolutely zero time to waste. Their next destination? A sketchy underground alley. She scanned the shadows until a cyborg-eyed geezer stepped from the gloom, smirking and asking if he brought his girlfriend. Jite instantly dropped a freezing threat, growling at the old punk to shut his mouth and just do his job before he lost his remaining eye too. Moments later, she emerged, clutching a brand new identification card, staring at the plastic like it was legendary loot. Eyes sparkling, she whispered it was her very first. Jite was genuinely stunned, questioning how she even survived in this modern world without an identity or bank account. Inspecting the card, she saw her newly forged name, U-Bomb. Curiosity piqued. She asked why he chose Bomb, especially since he actually gifted her his own family name as well. Jite casually gestured toward a faded Four Seasons storefront, explaining his simple logic. 4 dragons meant naming them straight after the 4 seasons. Bomb meant spring, perfectly fitting the spring dragon. Her face totally lit up, declaring she adored it since spring represented blooming life and pure joy. The gorgeous new name completely won her over. Strolling down the street, she openly confessed her fear of him was gone. Yet despite those sweet words, her dragon vision still caught the terrifying, pitch-black aura suffocating him, a stark reminder of his lethal nature. Regardless, flashing a massive, radiant grin, she firmly declared he wasn't a villain. Jite silently scoffed, wondering how she could possibly judge his soul after a single day. Brimming with absolute confidence, the girl proudly flexed that her green dragon intuition was literally flawless. Our protagonist suddenly froze. She was giving him a genuine, unfiltered smile, a rare sight he had never once witnessed across all his brutal past regressions. He honestly couldn't tell if this timeline shift was a blessing or a curse, but walking side by side, a quiet thought hit him. Maybe this fresh start wasn't so terrible after all. Meanwhile, somewhere in Africa, a crimson-haired demon stood triumphantly over the broken, bloody mess of a fighter she had just absolutely dismantled. The arrogant fool had constantly bragged about his overwhelming power, but honestly, he hadn't even survived 60 seconds. She viciously stomped her heavy combat boot right onto his screaming face, zero empathy in her eyes. One final, devastating kick echoed, and the screaming abruptly stopped. Yeah, she definitely just shattered half the bones in his body. A wicked laugh escaped as she mocked his lifeless form, wondering if her heavy strikes were just too much. Rocking a totally sinister skull mask, she gloated about the explosive adrenaline coursing through her veins. Tonight marked her 199th flawless victory, with absolutely zero defeats, a flawless streak she found absolutely hilarious. Now, she only craved to know who her next victim would be. By morning, global news feeds were completely exploding. Massive turf wars were tearing South Africa apart, with some radical syndicate called Barkata dropping literal bombs. Rumors spread of a savage monster dubbed the Night Fighter, declaring war on the South African Union, sparking absolute chaos. Our main character Jite analyzed these chaotic broadcasts from his office, his sharp gaze confirming his inevitable cue. Just then, Bomb, the green-haired girl, gently knocked on his door, happily announcing dinner was served. Yielding to the vibe, our boy sighed and decided to join her at the table. She proudly presented a culinary disaster straight out of a literal horror movie. Entire whole fish were violently jammed into weird purple rice, jutting out like reanimated zombies, while she expectantly waited for Jite to react. Bursting with pride, she explained this cursed creation was inspired by a British dish she saw, but fused with rice, because, obviously, Koreans need their absolute daily rice fix. But honestly, those dead fish eyes looked like they were begging for mercy, and our protagonist's pale face said everything. His soul was leaving his body. She was basically rocking Shion-level toxic food energy from Tensura. Regardless, while painfully forcing down the cursed meal, Jite casually dropped the bomb that tomorrow he was flying out to capture the Red Dragon. Bomb's bright expression instantly darkened. She urgently warned him that this mission would be a total bloodbath. Red was the polar opposite of her, a literal nightmare to tame who wouldn't just sit down and listen. Jite calmly requested Bomb to tag along and help negotiate, but she instantly flinched, explaining that rival dragon clans absolutely never joined forces. Our main character raised an eyebrow, learning their fundamental instincts clashed violently. Bomb explained her nature was peaceful growth, whereas the entire Red Dragon clan practically worshipped brutal combat, raw violence, and constantly flexing their absolute dominance. She practically begged him to understand forcing the Red Dragon's hand would trigger an apocalyptic disaster. To those fire-breathers, surrendering was a fate way worse than death. Jite countered that elite hunters were already tracking Red, and hesitating meant her guaranteed execution. Looking her dead in the eye, he stated that bringing the Green Dragon was their only shot at preventing a complete massacre. Bomb's eyes widened in sheer shock. She genuinely believed this lone wolf guy would rather shoulder all the agonizing burdens by himself than ever ask for backup. Her surprise quickly melted into a brilliant, supportive smile, completely agreeing because she couldn't bear watching another dragon perish either. She did drop one crucial ultimatum, though. Staring him down with deadly seriousness, Bomb demanded Jite finish absolutely every single bite of her terrifying dinner first. Her sharp eyes hadn't missed him, sneaking his spoon down the exact second he brought up the mission. He froze, realizing this dragon was way too observant for his own good. Ultimately, the poor guy choked down that radioactive sludge while silently sobbing internally. Surviving this meal was honestly worse than soloing an entire dragon horde. Suddenly, the scene aggressively cut back to Africa, panning over a ruined city that looked literally nuked. A sea of corpses painted the battlefield, with the crimson-haired girl standing tall amidst the absolute carnage. Glaring down at the fallen, she scoffed at their pathetic strength. Securing her 200th victory felt completely hollow, furious that the entire African continent lacked a worthy challenger. Bored out of her mind, she debated crossing into Europe just to hunt down Green. Just yards away, two surviving soldiers cowered behind shattered rubble, their voices trembling. They wildly whispered how a single psychotic girl just annihilated their entire elite squad. One soldier frantically prayed for their legendary savior to finally arrive. In a flash, the Crimson Demon loomed right above them, laughing at their pathetic attempt to hide in the shadows. She launched a blindingly fast strike, but right before the fatal blow, a blinding surge of golden aura violently intercepted her. The sheer pressure forced her backwards in pure shock. Deflecting the colossal blast, she triggered a massive, earth-shattering explosion. The terrified guards watched in absolute awe that she survived his signature strike. Through the clearing smoke, a towering, heavily armored knight emerged. He questioned if this feral girl was the infamous Night Slayer. The soldiers erupted into cheers. Their ultimate savior, Javier Karma, had finally descended. As the 8th-ranked powerhouse of the African Union, he radiated an overwhelming golden aura, commanding his battered troops to evacuate the wounded immediately. Smirking, the girl called him an old-timer, praised his heavy-handed attack, and instantly realized she found the final boss. Javier scanned his opponent, genuinely caught off guard that a petite girl hid beneath that menacing mask. Lowering her blade, she arrogantly joked that enemies always got so mesmerized by her gorgeous face, they completely forgot how to fight back. Baffled by her reckless confidence, Javier demanded to know why she refused to surrender, considering the terrifying gap in their power levels. The Crimson Fighter just cackled like a total maniac, declaring she would rather die swinging than ever bow down. She gripped her chipped weapon, ready for war. Pushing her agility to the absolute limit, she unleashed a brutal barrage of strikes against his steel plating. Suddenly, a fatal opening ignited her excitement. She ruthlessly aimed a crippling strike to his blind spot, hoping for a one-hit knockout. But upon impact, Javier stood completely unfazed. He absorbed the blow without shifting a single inch. Pure, unadulterated shock paralyzed her features. What kind of indestructible monster was this guy? The armored juggernaut glared down at the Red Dragon, coldly stating she had clearly only been crushing pathetic weaklings until now. He warned her that her little playground massacres ended here, and he absolutely refused to play nice. Brilliant golden energy ignited within his eyes. He acknowledged her raw talent, but brutally declared it was nowhere near enough to survive him. Without warning, he hoisted his colossal broadsword and unleashed his monstrous aura, forcing the panicked girl into a desperate, razor-thin evasion. In a heartbeat, Javier unleashed his devastating ultimate technique, Blade of Raw Ignition. The Red Dragon's instincts screamed in terror. Dodging was mathematically impossible. Stealing her defenses, a blinding shockwave of apocalyptic light violently launched her through the air, obliterating a solid stone wall upon impact. Debris rained down as massive dust clouds swallowed the battlefield. She was completely buried under the catastrophic wreckage. Standing untouched amidst the chaotic fallout, Javier silently admitted that this masked girl was an absolute monster. She somehow managed to reinforce her arm and absorb his ultimate strike. Now, he realized he had to crank his lethal force even higher. As the heavy smoke dissolved, Javier inspected the obliterated crater, suddenly feeling a chilling unease. Did she actually manage to escape? Here is the absolute truth. Bomb, the enigmatic green dragon, was flawlessly concealing herself directly behind the shattered stones. She tightly gripped the feral red dragon, clamping a hand over her mouth to silence her. Red stared back in absolute disbelief, completely mind-blown by her sudden appearance. Bomb softly whispered she had rushed over to rescue her from this death trap, but Red aggressively rejected the help. She furiously pointed out that the green dragon possessed zero combat skills, making her completely useless here. Dropping her gentle facade, Bomb sternly warned that continuing this battle meant guaranteed death. Red stubbornly slapped her healing hands away, viciously declaring she would finish this bloodbath even if it cost her life, demanding Bomb back off. Instantly, Bomb's eyes darkened with terrifying intensity, coldly stating that Red's death would trigger an apocalyptic disaster for them all. Channeling glowing magic into Red's shattered arm, she reminded her that survival was not a solo game. Her reckless demise would permanently destroy the earthly sanctuary for all dragon children. In a heartbeat, Bomb switched back to her sickeningly sweet, innocent persona. Pouting that she desperately wanted to keep living on Earth, she begged for cooperation. Red fell silent, heavily acknowledging the terrifying gap between her and the Golden Knight, realizing escaping seemed statistically impossible. Yet Bomb flashed a confident smirk, promising that their reliable old man would handle this mess. Red's eyes widened in sheer shock at the mention of backup. Bomb beamed brightly, revealing she had not ventured into this war zone completely alone. Right on cue, our main guy, Jite, boldly stepped onto the chaotic battlefield. Javier slowly turned around, analyzing this mysterious newcomer to gauge his hidden threat level. Radiating an absolutely chilling calmness, Jite firmly declared himself as the Crimson Girl's official guardian. Javier erupted into mocking laughter, claiming Jite looked way too scrawny to protect a damn thing. Meanwhile, deep in the shadows, Red peeked past the crumbling debris, questioning if this was the legendary human Bomb hyped up. Bomb frantically shoved her back into hiding, warning that this battlefield was about to turn completely nuclear. Keeping his cool, Jite casually told Javier that the entire situation was heavily complicated. Walking away was the smart move, but Javier's pride wouldn't allow it. He barked that the crimson-haired girl crossed the line and demanded justice. Jite calmly countered that her hands were free of blood. That logic only fueled the knight's blazing rage. He snarled at him to stop twisting facts. Yet, Jite pushed for a peaceful resolution, promising the girl would vanish like a ghost and asking Javier to stand down. But the stubborn knight completely snapped, roaring that this was African Union soil. As a sworn investigator, he vowed to lock them both in chains. Blinding golden aura erupted from his blade. He unleashed his combat arts, roaring like a wounded beast, and unleashing a devastating strike meant to obliterate everything. A massive shockwave kicked up a choking dust storm. Javier sneered through the thick debris, mocking Jite that if he was truly her protector, he shouldn't die so pathetically. But plot twist, our main character materialized right behind him, completely untouched and radiating a terrifying, pitch-black killing intent. Jite sighed at the sheer annoyance of it all, quietly roasting the supposedly elite rank 8 warrior for being so pathetically rigid. Javier whipped around in sheer terror, his brain freezing over Jite's impossible god-tier speed. Before Javier could even launch a counterattack, Jite instantly closed the gap and brutally severed his sword hand. Then he approached, radiating ice-cold menace, and ordered him to listen closely, because his living nightmare was just beginning. He coldly narrated that, as a righteous investigator, Javier attempted to capture the Crimson Dragon, but tragically crossed paths with an unidentified beast. Failing to dodge its initial devastating strike, he sacrificed his arms and his vision, while the phantom beast vanished. Javier shrieked, desperately pleading for mercy, but Jite felt absolutely zero pity. He executed the script with one ruthless, blood-soaked slash, severing the knight's remaining limb and destroying his eyesight completely. Our main character rationally calculated that the Union's elite healers would eventually save his pathetic life, but pure, unadulterated terror would be permanently scarred into his soul. For Jite, psychological dominance was the ultimate control method. He smirked internally, knowing even the notoriously violent Red Dragon, the legendary night fighter, would bow to overwhelming dread. Meanwhile, Red stood completely paralyzed by horror, trembling as she asked Bomb what kind of demonic entity he was. But Bomb maintained her chill vibe, calmly clarifying that he wasn't a monster at all, he was just human. Red scoffed in disbelief, claiming if that psycho was human, she was just a basic lizard. Honestly, considering the brutal carnage, who could blame her logic? Suddenly, Jite approached the red dragon, bluntly laying down the absolute law. From this moment forward, she was living under his roof and strict protection. He offered her mostly free reign, promising reliable backup whenever she needed it. But in a split second, his expression shifted drastically, his eyes sinking into a terrifyingly dark abyss, warning that crossing his boundaries meant suffering unimaginable agony. The mighty dragon girl instantly began trembling like a leaf, ready to sprint for her life, while Bomb quickly swooped in to defuse the killing intent, whispering they would explain everything shortly. Red was completely losing her mind, screaming about this insanely terrifying situation. But Bomb just flashed a secretive wink at our protagonist, treating the trauma like an inside joke. Our main character, officially dubbed the redhead Yorum, symbolizing summer, and ordered her to permanently burn it into her memory. He then casually strolled away, fully anticipating the duo to trail behind him. Bomb leaned in, playfully teasing Red about finally experiencing some real character growth since their last chaotic encounter. But Red fiercely snapped back, furiously declaring this was definitely no time for garbage humor. While all this drama unfolded, Jite's shadowy clone pinged a swift mission complete notification. Meanwhile, thousands of miles away in the vibrant Amazon rainforest, the actual Jite was casually kicking back with a gorgeous blonde whose stunning visuals belonged on a high-fashion runway. He severed the mental link to his double, silently praising his own flawless execution. Our protagonist was strategically calculating that dispatching Bomb instead of his real body was absolute genius. Red was an unpredictable wildcard, making solo persuasion practically impossible even for him. The blonde beauty caught him muttering and giggled, relentlessly teasing him for conversing with his smartwatch like a total lunatic. Plot twist. This stunning girl was the fabled Golden Dragon, an absolute diva craving the spotlight. Across 3 reincarnations, she constantly dazzled everyone, yet her most legendary, radiant moment ironically triggered catastrophic devastation. Basking in endless admiration might seem like an absolute dream, but the fame grew suffocatingly toxic, forcing her into this jungle exile. Despite originally descending to this realm strictly for the entertainment factor, she idly played with Jite's smartwatch. Out of nowhere, our main character bluntly interrogated why she chose complete isolation among feral beasts, instead of mingling with human society if she simply craved amusement. That piercing question instantly hooked her focus. Stunned by his insider knowledge, her eyes widened. He casually revealed, Bomb, the illustrious green dragon, had already spilled her secrets. He then challenged if humanity genuinely terrified her. Pausing for a heartbeat, she confessed that pure fear wasn't exactly the core issue. However, existing among mortals brought endless chaos. The relentless staring, the obsessive chasing, honestly, her daily reality sounded completely exhausting. Escaping the grid made perfect sense. A comfortable silence settled before Jite randomly asked if she enjoyed pastries. She stared at him, utterly bewildered, scoffing that divine dragons required 0 sustenance. But our guy simply summoned a spatial pouch using magic, instantly flooding the jungle with a mouth-watering bakery aroma. The moment the heavenly scent of fresh-baked bread hit her, she surrendered entirely. Her eyes widened into massive, sparkling saucers. Staring at the mountain of sugary donuts and tarts, her mouth watered as she questioned his massive haul. Seizing the perfect opening, our main character offered her a cozy home, way better than surviving in the brutal wild. He guaranteed her absolute safety and endless playtime with the others. The blonde hesitated, echoing her mother's ancient warning about trusting shady strangers. But the second he mentioned unlimited macarons, bro, her defenses completely shattered. She was instantly sold on the deal. Meanwhile, in the bustling city, Red leaned against the balcony rail. Autumn leaves drifted by as she wore an incredibly bitter, salty scowl. She angrily muttered under her breath about her previous clash with our hero, while Bomb watched her quietly from indoors. Suddenly, Jite stepped through the door, leading the barefoot blonde girl inside. She loudly declared her absolute loyalty to the legendary sausage bread, claiming it easily crushed anything from their home realm. Devouring a vibrant macaron, she practically tasted divinity, hyping up that flawless, crispy shell and impossibly chewy center. Bomb offered Jite a warm welcome, but the blonde absolutely lost her mind with pure, unadulterated joy upon spotting her. Sprinting over for a bone-crushing hug, she cried about missing her terribly, gushing over Bomb's seriously leveled up, stunning beauty. The energetic blonde curiously asked if Bomb shared this place alone with the mister. Bomb gently clarified her own recent arrival, gesturing toward the lurking redhead. Off to the side, our main character quietly dismissed his shadow clone, praising its flawless execution before releasing the spell. Red peeked inside with a furious glare. She locked eyes with our boy in a heavy, silent standoff before stubbornly turning away. Spotting the fiery redhead instantly, the blonde dashed over and shrieked her name with explosive enthusiasm. Her face quickly scrunched up at the harsh stench of smoke, roasting the Red Dragon clan for constantly craving totally toxic habits. Zero tolerance activated. Red violently clamped her hand over the blonde's mouth, savagely threatening to rip her out by the roots if she kept babbling. Seriously, her terrifyingly explosive temper hadn't chilled out one single bit. Gathering the chaotic trio in the living room, our hero cut straight through the nonsense, demanding their true, exact ages. Bomb smiled warmly, claiming 20. The blonde proudly puffed her chest at 10, while Bomb helpfully revealed Yorum was merely 15. Yorum slouched there, looking utterly dead inside, resting her chin, radiating pure, unfiltered apathy. The blonde aggressively defended herself, arguing that draconic aging blitzed past human years, heavily flexing her maturity so nobody would dare treat her like a helpless toddler. Yorum threw some brutal shade, sarcastically mocking the exact things the blonde felt so desperately proud of. Pivoting instantly, the blonde questioned why everyone addressed the redhead as Yorum, wondering if it was some kind of secret alias. Yorum lazily brushed the question off. Bomb chimed in, revealing their master assigned these identities, proudly accepting her new title as Bomb. The blonde recoiled in absolute horror, violently rejecting this bizarre naming situation. She argued that casually handing out permanent titles before reaching adulthood was deeply messed up, since true names carry massive, sacred power. Connecting the seasonal dots flawlessly, she quickly deduced her assigned role would be Guol, embodying the crisp essence of autumn. Our hero firmly nodded, cementing the decree and officially crowning her with the title, Guol. Then, his gaze locked onto her pendant, ordering that once the tiny creature inside finally hatched, it must be named Guol, meaning winter. Her jaw practically hit the floor. How could a mortal see through her illusion? He casually revealed he sensed the polymorphed blue dragon egg hidden right inside her necklace. He strictly commanded her to guard it with her life, since hatching day was rapidly approaching. Guol was utterly mind-blown by his omniscient knowledge. She desperately probed for answers, but our main character ruthlessly ignored her burning curiosity. He coldly shut her down, claiming it was above her pay grade. Instantly shifting his aura, our hero turned dead serious, establishing one absolute, unbreakable law moving forward. He permitted them to freely enjoy this earthly paradise, with one lethal catch: they must never, ever step beyond his metaphorical fence. Translation: leaving his direct line of sight was strictly, absolutely forbidden. The fiery redhead absolutely despised this restriction, dramatically rolling her eyes while branding him a total dictator. The other two exchanged deeply uncomfortable, awkward glances, but Yorum aggressively held her ground, shooting them death glares and daring them to challenge her defiant attitude. Honestly, bro, this fiery dragon is packing some serious, unmatched heat. Anyway, ultimately, the draconic trio compromised, accepting that staying within boundaries was acceptable. Ever the radiant peacemaker, Bomb vibrated with excitement, suggesting a massive shopping spree to secure human IDs and vital supplies for their brand new earthly existence. Guol was completely hyped, but Yorum cynically questioned their financial backing, dangerously joking that street robbery sounded like a wildly entertaining alternative. Unbothered, our main character casually tossed Bomb a premium, limitless black card. He ordered them to forget financial limits and just experience the ultimate human joyride. Stunned, Bomb overflowed with gratitude, timidly asking what their actual spending limit was. Our main character didn't even flinch. He just handed over the black card with zero limits. Yes, he actually said that. Is our boy secretly a billionaire? Crazy. The girls absolutely lost their minds clearing out the entire mall. They piled shopping carts high with endless designer gear, showing absolutely zero mercy. Meanwhile, Jitae's smartwatch practically caught fire, spamming him with massive transaction alerts. We are talking tens of millions here, guys. They literally shattered the credit ceiling. Returning to the penthouse, the squad was completely buried under luxury bags. Yorum proudly flexed her newly forged, legendary blade, looking insanely triumphant. Guol twirled happily in her fresh designer fit, while Bomb sheepishly returned the plastic to our hero. She shyly confessed her guilt over dropping so much cash, even attempting to gift him some fresh streetwear. But the platinum card finally choked. Our guy gently brushed off her worries. Suddenly, Guol loudly demanded the spotlight, parading her flashy new aesthetic and flexing her massive fashion haul. She excitedly snatched a slick shirt from the pile, claiming it perfectly synced with his own drip, begging for a couple's aesthetic. He casually praised her killer new look. Guol absolutely melted with joy. Meanwhile, in the background, Yorum fiercely analyzed the gleaming steel of her weapon. She bragged to our protagonist about replacing her shattered sword, demanding his praise. He simply questioned if it matched her aura, considering she strictly hunted for top-tier artifacts. Our main character offered a calm nod of approval. Yorum just scoffed coldly, muttering that it barely passed her standards. Man, she is forever an ice queen. Suddenly, Guol sprinted over, lugging massive shopping bags, bouncing with pure hype, offering Yorum a mountain of trendy outfits, begging the warrior to model her fresh gifts. Yorum brutally rejected the vibe. She fiercely barked that she was not playing big sister and refused the charity. Bomb secretly leaned toward our hero, softly whispering that their fiery roommate was just hopelessly awkward with affection and was secretly deeply thankful. Yet, his sharp eyes caught that Bomb basically bought absolutely zero luxury items. For her personal stash, questioning her choices, she gently gestured toward a delicate little sprout resting on the dining counter. She softly confessed that nurturing life brought her deep peace. Seeking the hidden meaning, he listened as Bomb smiled sweetly, explaining how blooming flowers forge eternal memories. Suddenly, a heavy thought crossed her mind. She desperately questioned how to truly experience happiness. Inside this protective fortress he built, she admitted tasty meals and games were great, but their souls hungered for a real purpose. The main character confidently promised a path. He dramatically slapped down academy registration papers, inviting them to experience real student life. That massive revelation left Yorum and Guol absolutely paralyzed. Fast forward, the trio dragged themselves home from their intense academy trials, looking completely drained of their life force. Guol trembled with raw anxiety, nervously whispering her dark fears to Yorum. Terrified, she was doomed to be the sole failure while her sisters thrived. Yorum, already vibrating with pure irritation, savagely ordered everyone to zip it, but Guol unleashed a devastating puppy dog glare, crying about failing just for being hopelessly greedy. Thank heavens, our usually cold protagonist gently praised their hard work, trying to soothe the storm, yet Guol completely broke down, sobbing hysterically about definitely bombing the Lair Academy entrance exam. Bomb questioned his mysterious absence, and he casually mentioned grabbing a secret package. He revealed a warm box radiating a heavenly scent. Pure magic, bro. Guol's eyes instantly sparkled, desperately begging to know if it was fresh pastries. But Jite promised a vastly superior feast. His mind flashed back to her idle days. When the superstar dragon was asked about her ultimate craving, the interviewer playfully joked that she survived purely on mystical morning dew. But Guol chuckled, claiming she had mortal tastes. She intensely pondered her ultimate snack. Boom! Crispy fried chicken and iced soda materialized. The dragon squad stared with wide, hungry eyes, like they discovered a divine artifact. Yorum immediately started roasting Guol mercilessly, mocking her for looking absolutely clueless about fried chicken, exposing her fake television persona and her supposedly favorite earthly meal. Guol fiercely ignored the shade. She instantly declared crispy chicken as her new eternal obsession. Meanwhile, Jite quietly attempted a stealthy exit, trying to let the dragons devour their holy feast in peace. But Bomb blocked his escape with big emotional eyes, begging him to stay, radiating desperate hope for family bonding. But our lone wolf calmly rejected the offer. Refusing defeat, Bomb unleashed her ultimate adorable pout to win him, basically pleading for his company. Yet his iron will held strong. Stepping outside, a sudden phone vibration shattered the chilly silence. The caller ID flashed the prestigious Lair Academy. A formal voice sharply demanded to verify his legal guardianship over the three girls. Our main character smoothly confirmed his status. However, the official quickly dropped a massive, unexpected problem regarding the recent entrance exams. He stood deeply puzzled, knowing Bomb never mentioned any red flags. Then, the Academy official dropped an absolute nuke. Bomb utterly demolished the interview with a flawless, perfect score. The examiners were so completely mesmerized, they demanded she lead as student representative and deliver the legendary opening ceremony oath. The Academy was so wildly obsessed they begged her instantly, but our quiet girl fiercely rejected them. She flatly rejected the massive spotlight. Now, the desperate administration begged Jite to change her mind, terrified of losing a generational talent. Our main character brushed off the idea instantly. He fired back that manipulating Bomb was out of the question, fiercely respecting her personal choices. Conversation over. But right as he dropped the call, a shadowy presence loomed. Yorum swaggered up, hair blazing wild and puffing smoke like an absolute boss. She demanded to know who he dialed, and if Green was involved. His expression darkened into a heavy scowl. He strictly ordered her to use Bomb's actual name. Rolling her eyes hard, Yorum trashed the name completely. She called it utterly cringe, asking if they were running some pathetic pretend family. Her intense gaze suddenly locked onto him, probing for his ultimate endgame. She demanded the real reason he dragged them all to Lair Academy. Our stoic hero replied coldly, claiming he simply desired for them to pursue absolute freedom. Flashing her signature savage grin, Yorum declared her thirst for battle. She desperately needed to know if this academy housed any formidable monsters. Jite confirmed the absolute top-tier elites gathered there. Yorum merely scoffed, dismissing them as arrogant toddlers. But our main character fired back a reality check, reminding her she was currently a child too. Instantly triggered, she shattered the balcony rail, daring him to a death match. She craved a taste of his true power, scoffing at his attempts to tame her. Yet Jite just glared back, icy and unfazed, ordering her to go eat chicken. That absolute disrespect sent Yorum spiraling. She cursed, flipped him the bird, and stormed off furious. While she raged, Guol sprinted over carrying crispy fried gold, desperately trying to pacify the dragon by shoving food toward her face. Yorum prepared to unleash pure fury, but one accidental bite changed everything. Holy wow, that crispy perfection instantly rebooted her entire hostile aura. The heavenly flavor completely stunned her. Honestly, that meal carried mythical healing stats. Anyway, let us shift our focus back to 𝖪. This academy was absolutely insane. A massive floating continent named hatchling, casually orbiting the globe like a majestic sky fortress. 𝖪 stood as the ultimate sanctuary for awakened youth, prodigies, blessed with mind-bending, supernatural abilities. Truthfully though, elite bloodlines and filthy rich heirs dominated the ranks. The ordinary masses harbored deep resentment, labeling it a glorified sandbox for the wealthy. Meanwhile, down on the campus grounds, Guol and Bomb explored the breathtaking scenery. Guol was entirely starstruck, whispering that commoners could never breach these walls. She genuinely suspected Jite hid an unfathomable secret billionaire status. Given his habit of casually dropping insane cash, Bomb agreed it made perfect sense, noting his undeniable elite aura. Bouncing with pure dopamine, Guol hyped up their flawless admission success and completely obsessed over how incredibly sleek their uniforms looked. Suddenly, it hit her. Where did Yorum and Jite vanish to? Bomb clarified that Yorum headed toward the Blue Dragon sector for combat trials, and Jite escorted her as an official guardian. Because these superhuman prodigies wielded catastrophic power but severely lacked basic human common sense, guild veterans or family elders mandatorily shadowed them to prevent absolute campus-wide destruction. Guol totally agreed, especially regarding Yorum, because honestly, unleashing that walking disaster unsupervised was basically asking for a massive catastrophe. Bomb nodded along, breaking down how Yorum's brutal exam focused entirely on crushing rival students in duels. Hyped beyond belief, Guol desperately wanted front-row seats. Sadly, Bomb shattered her dreams, revealing spectators were strictly banned. Absolutely devastated, Guol questioned this ridiculous rule. Bomb casually replied that their combined presence would definitely trigger an uncontrollable public meltdown. Glancing around, bro, the entire courtyard was literally staring at them. Everyone wondered where these stunning, otherworldly goddesses had suddenly descended from. Gossip spread like wildfire among the elites, mesmerized by their breathtaking beauty and incredibly mysterious, untouchable energy. These disguised dragon royalties instantly became legendary icons on day one. Suddenly, the perspective shifted to Blue Dragon Academy's Changchun Arena, where pure, absolute chaos reigned supreme inside the battleground. Awakened rookies clashed violently with wooden blades, the roaring audience radiating energy like a massive high-stakes tournament. Jite observed with a deadpan, chilling gaze. This pathetic brawl meant nothing to him. Nearby, a furious instructor screamed at his students to strike harder. Then a creepy, long-haired professor flashed a sinister smirk, ordering everyone to chill out and prioritize the fragile mental health of these young warriors. This mysterious figure approached their group, revealing himself as Wei Yan, the highly esteemed supreme professor ruling the Blue Dragon faction, and smoothly expressed his profound honor to collaborate with the Guardians. Nearby, adults completely fangirled, worshipping his legendary status. Yet Jite remained completely cold and unfazed. Spectators continued hyping up this elite professor, leaking rumors that he wielded immense wealth alongside a legendary war hero background. Booming through the speakers, the announcer's massive voice demanded combatants, number 124 and number 7, enter the fray. Our main character narrowed his predatory gaze, while Yorum dragged her wooden blade into the arena, radiating absolute god-tier boredom. She coldly whispered that if this fight sucked, she was literally abandoning this pathetic school forever. Locking her piercing glare onto a blonde rival, she prayed for a real challenge. The audience erupted, debating who would survive, Sofia Volova or the redhead. One spectator totally simped for the fiery redhead, but his buddy snapped him back to reality, arguing the real hype was about survival, not looks. He bet everything on Sofia securing the victory, considering her hardcore background in the elite RIL military forces long before stepping foot on campus. The RIL was Russia's apex airborne hunter unit, notoriously feared for subjecting their recruits to absolute, hellish torture. Down by the cage, a hulking giant went completely feral, screaming at his girl to absolutely obliterate her opponent, broadcasting his massive, suffocating expectations to the entire roaring stadium. Sophia just stood there frozen, practically begging the earth to swallow her whole from the sheer, agonizing cringe. Her opponent, Yorum, an absolute menace who thrived on psychological warfare, caught the vibe and immediately launched her lethal trash talk. She mocked the giant's unhinged screaming, dialing the disrespect to maximum, and suggested the little princess should just forfeit and cry in Daddy's arms. She spat out Daddy's girl while flashing a highly punchable, totally toxic smirk. Instantly, Sophia's entire demeanor shattered. She locked a death glare onto Yorum and whispered with absolute, freezing malice to shut her filthy mouth immediately. Pure, unadulterated murder blazed wildly in her eyes. She promised the redhead that another word would guarantee her a body bag. But honestly, Yorum was feeding off the chaos. She just flashed a psychotic grin, practically begging Sophia to strike. The spectators instantly tasted the heavy, suffocating bloodlust, murmuring that this lethal aura was classic RIL hunter energy. Though they had to admit, Yorum radiated absolute boss energy too. The atmosphere shifted into pure, terrifying anticipation for the upcoming slaughter. The buzzer blared. Sophia launched like a fired missile. They violently collided, but Yorum effortlessly deflected the explosive opening strike, dropping a cocky remark about her decent velocity. Then, shifting her weight flawlessly, she unleashed a devastating counterattack, whipping her weapon and roaring to eat this strike. But Sophia refused to flinch. She blitzed back in, executing a blindingly fast combo that Yorum barely parried, tearing her outfit in the process. Bro, Yorum completely lost her mind. That was brand new drip. Sophia showed zero mercy, just relentlessly hacking away, hunting Yorum across the arena, with brutal, breathless, close-quarters combat. The stadium went totally feral, as explosive shockwaves echoed endlessly. Sophia launched a sweeping low kick, but Yorum defied gravity, vaulted off the iron cage like a ninja, and plummeted like a meteor with her blade locked onto her skull. Sophia desperately raised her guard, but the catastrophic impact violently shattered her defense. A pathetic whimper escaped her lips. Smelling blood, Yorum went totally goblin mode, unleashing a torrential hurricane of strikes that forced a terrified Sophia into a desperate, crumbling retreat. Then, like a phantom, she vanished behind her. She whispered that Sophia only felt powerful because she was holding back. Then she initiated absolute annihilation, delivering devastating combos until Sophia crumpled lifelessly onto the cold, hard canvas, violently hacking up crimson. Paralyzed, Yorum towered over her, blade aiming at her throat, as the referee declared candidate 124, the undeniable champion. Yorum chuckled darkly, calling out her fake gangster energy as pure, pathetic weakness. That specific insult ignited Sophia's deepest rage. This crimson-haired menace was a masterclass troll at baiting aggro. Sophia's guardian sprinted towards the carnage, screaming her name. The audience immediately started buzzing, roasting the so-called elite hunter for getting absolutely folded, marveling at the total massacre. Despite the initial hype, the stadium worshipped Yorum's flawless victory, pointing out she practically dodged every single scratch, treating a trained killer like a helpless toy. The brutal disrespect continued, rumors spreading that Sophia only passed admissions via pretty privilege instead of actual combat talent. Simultaneously, a frantic field medic sprinted over and enveloped Sophia in a vibrant, emerald healing aura. Yet Sophia remained frozen, her face completely shadowed, bangs obscuring her dead eyes, absorbing the toxic whispers labeling her a pathetic, easily shattered glass cannon. The medic grimly informed the guardian that Sophia suffered shattered arms, requiring serious recovery downtime. Trembling violently, Sophia desperately argued she was completely operational. Her guardian stepped in to soften the massive blow, flashing a heartbroken smile, gently reassuring her she fought so bravely against an impossible, god-tier opponent. He swore he felt zero disappointment, hoping this crushing tragedy would forge her into an unstoppable force. Later on, he dropped some deep, philosophical wisdom about leveling up through bitter, agonizing failures. Mid-sentence, the panicked medic shrieked in absolute terror, pointing at his daughter stalking back towards Yorum. Out of the void, Sophia manifested a wicked dagger. With an unnerving, demonic whisper, she declared it wasn't a surrender, just a tactical retreat. Pure, unhinged insanity fractured her pupils. Her mind was completely gone. Meanwhile, Yorum casually walked away, convinced the war had ended. Sophia shrieked like a lunatic, demanding to know where she was running. This deathmatch was far from over. Something inside Sophia completely shattered. Leaping forward with pure killing intent, she plunged a blade right into her back. Meanwhile, our main character just watched from above, cold, silent. He didn't blink. Down below, Absolute fury consumed Yorum's eyes as reality hit her. Spitting venomous curses, she could not believe a literal child just backstabbed her like some coward. Screaming bloody murder, Sophia charged like an absolute psycho. The entire arena instantly exploded into absolute chaos. Panic swept through the stands. Teachers and students watched a simple sparring match mutate into a gruesome crime scene. The truth clicked. If this crazy girl wanted a literal fight to the death, Yorum would happily oblige. Her hand clamped down on Sophia's hair, ripping a sheer wail of agony from her lungs. Playtime was officially over. A brutal right hook instantly shattered the girl's arrogant face. But she was not done. The merciless beatdown continued. Crimson splattered across the arena floor with every single strike. The entire student body watched in pure, paralyzed horror. Minds were reeling. Why the hell was no one stepping in? Gathering her aura, Yorum unleashed one final, devastating blow. The impact instantly knocked Sophia into a bloody, unconscious heap. Yorum stood above her, gasping for breath. Yet her savage glare remained fixed on the broken body. It was not over. Snatching the dropped blade, she advanced. Hellfire burned in her eyes. She promised to repay that treacherous strike tenfold. But right before she claimed her bloody vengeance, Sophia's father crashed into the arena, intercepting her wrist. He roared at her to stand down, claiming the debt was paid. Professor Wei Yan finally snapped into action. He barked urgent orders, commanding the academy mages to deploy a spatial restriction spell. He declared an immediate suspension of the exam. Blinding azure mana erupted, trapping everyone within a suffocating magical lockdown. Yorum was absolutely furious. She screamed at the hypocrisy. Why was she the villain when that brat cowardly stabbed her first? She spat facts. With that massive guy's aura level, he could have easily subdued his daughter peacefully. Absolute facts right there. Playing the peacemaker, Wei Yan instructed the giant to tend to his bleeding child. Shifting his gaze to Yorum, he flashed a chillingly calm smile. He claimed staff were retrieving her guardian. She just needed to wait and heal. But Yorum viciously bit back. Silence was not an option when her blood was literally boiling. Dropping his friendly facade, Wei Yan whispered that he witnessed everything. He played the sympathetic card. Yet, if her rampage continued, his protection would completely vanish. A dark warning lingered in his words. Her entire bloodline would suffer the consequences. He casually dropped a sinister hint about her hidden sister. That froze Yorum dead in her tracks. What the actual hell did this creep know? Wei Yan cornered her with a straight-up threat. Keep pushing, and everyone she loved would become targets. Safety would become a myth. Flashing a twisted, knowing smirk, he ordered her to wait for her guardian. Yeah, this professor is pure garbage. But suddenly, the main character arrived like an absolute boss. He commanded Wei Yan to cancel the search. Her guardian had arrived. Without breaking a sweat, Jite phased right through the ultimate magical barrier. He completely shattered the spell like thin air. Step away from the wounded kid, he demanded. Deal with me instead. Yorum stood there, stunned but visibly relieved. Meanwhile, Wei Yan was absolutely paralyzed. How could a total nobody, with zero backing, just casually shatter a master-level barrier? Cut to the principal's office. Two guardians sitting in pure tension. Wei Yan played it cool, pouring fancy tea. But internally, he was sweating bullets. Jite radiated monstrous strength, yet this mysterious Yu family did not even exist on his radar. A background check was definitely needed later. Forcing a pathetic, nervous laugh, Wei Yan opened the meeting with a hollow apology for the arena bloodbath. He quickly spun the narrative. The good news? No fatal casualties. Sophia was currently inside the healing ward, while Yorum had already fully recovered. He shamelessly proposed sweeping this entire mess under the rug. They were academy classmates after all. He promised to erase the incident records if both parties just shook hands. Sophia's massive father, Mikhailov, sat like a stone mountain, eyes closed, total silence. Finally, he confessed his bloodline instigated this violent clash. He offered the first apology. Presenting himself as Sophia's protector, he blamed this brutal ambush on pure, youthful recklessness. She just lost control of her mana, he claimed. But Jite? He remained an absolute statue. Piercing Mikhailov with a dead, freezing glare, he outright rejected this proxy apology. The culprit herself needed to beg for forgiveness. Mikhailov's aura instantly erupted. He called Jite an arrogant fool. Was he acting tough because he was blind to Mikhailov's underworld connections? Jite literally did not care. Taking a slow, calm sip of tea, he smoothly asked if this pathetic display was considered an apology in Mikhailov's homeland. Boom! Mikhailov snapped. Surging to his feet with blazing fury, he roared, demanding to know if the main character expected him to violently drag Sophia here to apologize. Jite instantly replied with a deadpan yes, savage. The killing intent in that room was suffocating. Watching two titans clash, Wei Yan completely panicked. Flashing an anxious smile, he desperately tried defusing the bomb. but Jite laid down the law. He was not here for empty words. He demanded to know why Mikhailov just stood there when Sophia lunged with that blade. Mikhailov barked back that the ambush was simply too fast. Jite ripped into that pathetic alibi. He coldly asked if hiding behind a child while failing his actual duty didn't completely crush his pride. That shattered Mikhailov's patience. He slammed his foot down, snatched Jite's collar, and growled a bone-chilling threat. Lethal blue aura exploded from him as he dared Jite to cross the mighty RIL organization in this insignificant little country. He kept projecting that fake alpha energy, trashing the U family like they were just absolute nobodies on the street. Suddenly, a deadly blade was aimed right at him. Pure panic washed over his face. Where the hell did this weapon come from? Jite casually praised the edge of Mikhailov's own weapon, warning that a single twitch could easily paint the room red. Mikhailov completely froze. His eyes dropped, realizing Jite was effortlessly wielding his signature dagger, the exact weapon he always kept completely concealed. Shock widened his eyes. How did this absolute nobody swipe his concealed weapon without making a single sound? Jite simply mocked his sloppy sheath, claiming it made the theft a total joke. But the math wasn't adding up. Mikhailov's spiritual awareness was absolutely maxed out. Yet, in the blink of an eye, our main character materialized right behind his back, dropping a terrifying whisper straight into his ear. It was a deadly promise that would make any sane person completely shatter. He casually warned Mikhailov to stay out of dark alleyways, sounding exactly like an unhinged apex predator claiming its prey. Then, he effortlessly tossed the blade onto the desk, declared their little chat finished, and turned his back to walk away. Mikhailov remained paralyzed, pure terror etched into his pale features. Meanwhile, Wei Yan, who had been sweating out an ocean of anxiety, finally exhaled a massive sigh of relief, looking like a man who just barely escaped a catastrophic death. Stepping out into the hall, Jite spotted Yorum leaning against the wall. He immediately checked if she was holding up okay. Unbothered, Yorum brushed it off as a mere scratch, loudly flexing the unbreakable pride of the Red Dragon clan. Classic Yorum energy right there. Our guy gave a simple nod of approval, but her tough facade suddenly crumbled away. She paused, pouting slightly, and quietly asked if she totally wrecked the situation. She heavily blamed herself for dragging them into this chaotic mess. Frustration and guilt completely flooded her. She realized she should have kept her cool like an actual adult, instead of going totally feral. But our main character shut that down instantly. With a deadpan stare, he told her she handled it perfectly, leaving her totally stunned. Then, matching his signature frosty vibe, he dropped some absolutely unhinged advice. The next time someone tried testing her boundaries, she should just finish the slaughter completely out of sight. That was insanely dark, but Yorum was absolutely eating it up. A devilish smirk flashed across her face as she dared him not to regret those words. Jite, absolutely unfazed, promised he never would. Changing gears completely, he ordered her to pack her bags. Back at the house, a confused Yorum questioned their sudden relocation plan. He revealed they were transferring to the Lair Academy dorms. Yorum dramatically rolled her eyes, joking that Kyle, the tiny yellow chick, would probably lose her mind over this. Suddenly, a voice called out for Jite, making both of them snap their attention backward, to find Wei Yan approaching with his signature unsettling smile, begging for one more chat. Jite coldly stated their business was already finished, but Wei Yan desperately insisted he had a crucial proposal involving Yorum. She let out a loud groan, lazily picking her ear, and complained about catching another annoying lecture. But Wei Yan quickly clarified he was actually bringing a massively profitable deal to the table. Shooting his shot, he offered her the ultimate throne as the official freshman representative at the prestigious Blue Dragon Academy. He painted an absolute fantasy. Endless scholarship funds, top-tier magical artifacts, massive media hype, basically the royal treatment. Our guy, sensing massive red flags, sharply questioned if Wei Yan even held enough authority to guarantee such an insane package alone. Wei Yan just flashed a slimy grin, bragging about his incredibly tight connection with the powerful vice principal, Ma Namjoon. The moment that name dropped, Jite's expression shifted into an empty, terrifying darkness. The tension in the air instantly skyrocketed. Deep in his mind, our main character was processing absolute horrors. Both Wei Yan and Ma Namjoon were actually literal demonic humans. Unlike superhumans who embrace divine blessings, these monsters consume pure void. They willingly traded their fragile humanity for overwhelming, corrupting power, morphing into bloodthirsty beasts driven only by pure slaughter. These creatures were the rotting core of the world's deepest tragedies, and Jite had suffered devastating losses because of their kind during his grueling first and second lives. Honestly, his fists itched to violently crush Wei Yan every single time they locked eyes, but he forced down his lethal rage. He resolved that Wei Yan deserved unimaginable suffering before tasting death. Masking his bloodlust, He smoothly stated that only Yorum's opinion actually mattered. After all, he was merely acting as her guardian. Wei Yan chuckled in agreement, playfully noting that her destiny was entirely in her hands. Locking eyes with her, he aggressively hyped up the position, detailing the massive evolution happening within the Academy's walls and pushing his vision of her ruling as the absolute leader during the massive year-end festival. Grasping her hand, he pleaded to forge destiny together. Yet Yorum remained absolutely frozen. She bluntly rejected his offer without hesitation. Wei Yan stood paralyzed, convinced his hearing failed. Her expression stayed ruthlessly blank as she doubled down. Pivoting toward Jite, she casually suggested packing up. Wei Yan completely snapped. He desperately demanded why she even attended the trials just to reject him. Yorum merely shrugged. She confessed her room felt painfully boring, so she craved a chaotic brawl. Thick veins bulged across Wei Yan's forehead. Verging on a total meltdown, he deployed his final trump card. Gesturing outside, he revealed a massive swarm of journalists hungering for his official statement regarding the brutal stabbing. He viciously blackmailed her, declaring her entire academy future rested upon his upcoming words. Choose wisely. Unfazed, Yorum spun around, delivered a final rejection, and strutted out with absolute main character energy. Glaring daggers, Wei Yan hissed a dark warning about future regrets. Our savage queen didn't even flinch. She abandoned him utterly crushed. Now that is peak entertainment. Stepping outside, Yorum's cover was instantly blown. The moment she emerged, ravenous journalists ambushed her like starving predators, violently thrusting flashing cameras forward. Blinding flashes erupted. One interviewer aggressively interrogated her regarding Sofia Volova's recent bloodbath, demanding immediate answers. Another ruthlessly shoved a microphone closer, claiming the leaked footage had the entire nation spiraling into madness. They viciously questioned if she orchestrated this carnage purely for clout and clan revival. The vultures kept pressing, demanding her true motives for infiltrating the prestigious Blue Dragon Academy. Murderous rage flashed in Yorum's eyes, yet before she exploded, our protagonist intervened, ordering the swarm back. He demanded they leave a wounded student alone, but Yorum instantly silenced him, claiming the spotlight. Snatching the device from a stunned reporter, she boldly echoed their question, radiating pure, unadulterated confidence. Flashing a downright demonic smirk at the blinding lenses, she broadcasted her ultimate, unfiltered desire. She literally demanded the S-word. Damn, bro, this menace possesses zero filter. The frame suddenly shifted toward breathtaking cherry blossoms, drifting gracefully across a ridiculously luxurious estate. Welcome to their elite academy dorm. Guol absolutely lost her mind, shrieking like a glorious jackpot winner. Stepping inside the massive lounge area, sheer disbelief washed over her at the insane architectural drip. Even the stoic Yorum stood stunned, openly questioning if this majestic palace was truly their home. Guol wasted 0 seconds. Sprinting up the grand staircase, she aggressively claimed the ultimate master suite. Naturally, Yorum bolted behind her, roaring for dominance. Guol struck absolute gold, discovering a colossal sanctuary. Bathed in golden sunlight, featuring a king-sized mattress and cinematic screen, she admired her prize. She proudly declared this paradise hers. Suddenly, Yorum smashed through the doorway, a cigarette hanging loosely. Claiming the scenic balcony offered prime smoking territory, Yorum hijacked the suite. Panic instantly gripped Guol. She frantically protested her first-place victory. Besides, Yorum previously wanted the adjacent suite, but Yorum unleashed a death glare. Guol instantly crumbled under the pressure, meekly accepting the neighboring quarters without another squeak. Trust me, nobody survives challenging that crimson menace. Meanwhile, Bomb surfaced inside a completely different chamber. She delicately misted a massive sapphire egg, whispering sweet motherly praises while caressing its magical shell. Our protagonist entered, questioning the indoor rainstorm. Flashing a warm smile, Bomb called it vital prenatal education, since oceanic dragons crave moisture. She happily lectured about mystical incubation, revealing that nearing its hatching phase, the polymorph illusion shatters, restoring its monstrous true scale. Pivoting, she mentioned the Academy's reigning gossip, Yorum. Jite instantly projected the viral interview footage, showcasing Yorum absolutely obliterating the journalism squad. They chuckled through the chaotic comment section. Several users worshipped her fearless, unhinged aura. Haters continuously trolled her. Suddenly, that scandalous S-word declaration blasted across the digital display. Panicking, Bomb desperately shielded the egg's non-existent ears, protecting her unborn child from such vulgar toxicity. That hilarious energy destroyed me. Later, the squad gathered inside the lavish central lounge. Lounging with her signature icy demeanor, Yorum groaned about society overreacting to basic biological facts. Blinking in utter innocence, a deeply confused Guol questioned the mysterious vocabulary. Yorum slowly turned, A wickedly corrupt grin spread across her face as she offered forbidden knowledge, declaring it was officially time for some mature education. Pure terror flashed across Kael's face, begging to be spared from this forbidden knowledge. She desperately claimed her mom warned her against such secrets. But Yorum just creeped closer, flashing a truly demonic smirk. Escaping was not an option. She literally grabbed Kael's head, whispering absolute nonsense. Despite her frantic screams and desperate escape attempts, she completely surrendered, sobbing that she would endure the torture just to survive. She frantically wailed at JT, begging him to rescue her from this utter madness. Honestly, bless her soul. Meanwhile, JT and Bomb completely ignored these chaotic dragon siblings. Flash forward to the crack of dawn. Yorum was utterly passed out. Suddenly, Kael busted down the door, shrieking about a massive emergency. Yorum woke up, radiating pure rage, cursing and demanding what on earth justified this rude awakening after her sleepless night. Kael instantly accused her of binge-watching sus content again. Yorum just flashed a wicked smirk, proudly confessing her spicy late-night marathon. That made Kael totally snap. She aggressively dragged Yorum downstairs, shouting that playtime was officially over. Yorum lethally threatened murder if this was fake news. Downstairs, the whole squad was assembled. While Yorum just looked entirely unbothered, she demanded answers. Bomb crouched beside the massive egg, her voice trembling with insane tension as she announced Guol's imminent awakening. Everyone stared as the shell fractured with a blinding, magical glow, making Kael squeal loudly. A majestic new life was literally entering the world. But right then, our guy's expression completely shattered. Devastating flashbacks hit him like a truck. The last birth he witnessed was an absolute nightmare, far from joyful. His trauma dragged him back to a bleeding battlefield, where a sobbing mother begged for her infant's survival. But his comrade delivered the crushing truth. It was too late. The newborn perished instantly. With the hospital reduced to ashes, and the world literally burning around them, they were utterly powerless. Our main character carried this soul-crushing weight in his eyes, agonizing over that tragic fate. Snapping back to reality, he stood paralyzed beside the three girls, questioning why this traumatic ghost resurfaced today. As anticipation peaked, the shell completely shattered. A tiny blue claw emerged, followed by an adorable baby dragon boasting giant, innocent eyes. Bro, her cuteness level was straight up lethal. Bomb radiated pure joy, softly welcoming the newborn miracle into the world. Kael's eyes practically sparkled with stars. She was totally malfunctioning from happiness as the little dragon adorably rubbed her sleepy eyes. Meet Guol, literally translating to winter. As Bomb tenderly toweled her off, JT questioned where she mastered such delicate care. Bomb casually mentioned her own mother did this, except using her tongue. She then softly offered him a chance to cradle the baby dragon, but he silently declined the offer. Instantly, Kael hyped up and aggressively begged to hold the tiny creature. Bomb cautiously transferred the baby, strictly warning Kael to handle her with extreme care since her scales were super fragile. So incredibly soft, Kael vowed to protect the tiny creature, embracing her fiercely. Closing her eyes, she declared passionately that this absolute warmth was healing her very soul. But suddenly, a mischievous, chaotic glint flashed across Kael's golden eyes as she challenged Yorum to hold baby Guol. Before the fiery girl could even process it, the tiny dragon was shoved right into her personal space. Yorum completely panicked, but Bomb calmly ordered her to chill out and show some gentleness. Meanwhile, the little hatchling let out an adorable yawn, completely unbothered. The usually explosive Yorum was now frozen, awkwardly holding this squirming little dragon, staring down in absolute, stunned silence. Kael flashed a triumphant smirk, asking if the hothead finally understood the sheer, overwhelming joy of cuddling their youngest sister. Yorum desperately tried maintaining her tough facade, but reluctantly muttered that the tiny kid was undeniably adorable. Then, she whipped around toward our main character, aggressively demanding to know why he was acting so suspiciously distant when everyone else had taken a turn. Kael chimed in, whining that little Guol would be heartbroken if Jite rejected her. Yet, our guy remained standing there, an impenetrable fortress of silence. A wicked, demonic grin spread across Yorum's face as she mercilessly mocked his untouchable, lone wolf acting like some superior being. Suddenly, she threatened to launch the baby dragon right at his face, forcing his hand. Kael shrieked in absolute terror, screaming if her sister had actually lost her mind. Yorum's smile morphed into pure, chaotic evil, boldly declaring her single, ultimate mission since moving into this house was shattering Jitaya's unbreakable composure. Without hesitating, this absolute menace actually tossed the helpless little Guol high into the air as Kael wailed in absolute panic. But Jitai? He didn't even flinch. Moving like lightning, he snatched the baby dragon single-handedly, radiating absolute dominance. Yorum groaned in massive disappointment at his zero reaction, while a traumatized Guol mumbled that her older sister was totally unhinged. Bomb glided over with a proud, gentle smile, suggesting that he might as well shower the baby with some affection, since she was already securely in his arms. Looking uncharacteristically nervous, our hero hesitantly extended a single finger, delicately stroking her head while awkwardly asking if he was doing it right. Guol beamed with pure joy, and Guol immediately went into paparazzi mode, rapidly snapping smartwatch photos, declaring this legendary, heartwarming moment had to be immortalized. Suddenly, Bomb proposed an epic family photo to celebrate Guol's awakening, magically producing a vibrant red rose, leaving Guol utterly speechless. Bomb offered a playful wink, revealing she had prepared special props for this exact aesthetic, shocking everyone with her intense dedication. She confidently tucked the rose behind Jitai's ear, then placed a delicate blue blossom on Guol. Jitai stood completely paralyzed, his soul seemingly leaving his body, as Yorum erupted into hysterical laughter at his absolutely absurd appearance. But Bomb sweetly assured him he looked dashing, prompting our desperate protagonist to beg them to just snap the picture and end his suffering. Yorum furiously tried escaping the frame, whining about the cringe, but Guol ruthlessly dragged her right back into the spotlight. Guys, this honestly feels like a found family. My heart is literally melting right now. Once the legendary photo was taken, our guy turned toward Bomb, questioning her next move with Guol. Bomb revealed her grand plan, teaching the baby polymorph through a mystical magic transfer. This advanced technique channels pure mana into another's soul to instantly grant them a spell, but it comes with a heavy toll. It literally burns away the caster's own lifespan, yet Bomb remained absolutely unshakable in her resolve. Mature dragons like her, Yorum, and Guol had already mastered polymorph to disguise their true, terrifying forms back in their home dimension, but little Guol was completely defenseless. Lifting the hatchling with boundless affection, Bomb softly whispered that dragons mature at terrifying speeds, and she desperately wanted to gift Guol fragments of pure happiness and unforgettable memories before she outgrew these precious family bonds. Our main character gave a firm nod, pledging his absolute support. Instantly, Bomb's eyes turned pleading, softly asking if he could anchor her during this dangerous magic transfer. Jitai offered a single, decisive nod, but Bomb playfully scolded him for standing far away like a soulless statue, demanding he close the distance. With absolute deadpan seriousness, he claimed there was zero logical reason to sit that intimately, but Bomb relentlessly pushed her case. She dramatically argued that the massive mana drain could make her collapse and drop poor Guol, adding that the guilt of the baby getting hurt would crush her. She was pouring on the theatrical drama, but Jitai just pierced her with his unbreakable poker face. Defeated at last, our stoic main character surrendered, taking a seat beside her while sighing that resistance was completely futile. The instant their shoulders brushed, Bomb felt his rock-solid physique. Blushing furiously, she nervously whispered how hard it was. Confused, Jitai questioned her, causing Bomb to panic, desperately stammering that she meant the sofa's texture, totally backpedaling from the massive misunderstanding. Unfazed, our guy seriously analyzed the expensive sofa materials, missing the social cue entirely. Desperate to shift gears, Bomb immediately sparked her mana, a brilliant emerald aura erupting around her and the tiny hatchling. With a deep breath, she initiated the perilous magic transfer sequence. Fast forward through the aftermath. A few peaceful days rolled by since that intense magical awakening. Bomb's energy hit absolute rock bottom. She practically melted into the couch cushions, completely drained, with literal steam radiating off her overheated body, whispering faintly that the agonizing task was over. Looming above her, our main character quietly acknowledged her massive effort. A breathless thank you escaped her lips. Attempting to stand, her legs completely betrayed her, leaving her staggering like the walking dead. She pleaded with our guy to feed tiny Guol and handle burping duty during her power nap. She also strictly warned him to snap her awake if any absolute chaos erupted. Suddenly, her vision blurred, and her exhausted body just entirely gave out. With lightning reflexes, our main character snatched her mid-fall. He cradled her collapsing frame effortlessly, defying gravity like it was absolutely nothing. Utterly stone-faced, he announced he was hauling her to bed. Instantly, Bomb's cheeks flared a deep crimson, her panicked eyes darting everywhere in pure panic. Scooping her up in a smooth bridal carry, Bomb meekly confessed through her blush that this whole situation was intensely humiliating, to be hauled around like royalty. Meeting her gaze, he playfully jabbed that she somehow retained enough stamina to whine. Bomb breathed out a weak giggle and questioned if her weight was crushing him, definitely fishing for reassurance. Without skipping a single microsecond, our protagonist declared she was practically weightless. That unexpected sweet talk clearly melted Bomb's heart. Gently depositing her onto the mattress, he wrapped her tightly, and within seconds, Bomb plunged straight into a coma-like slumber. Moving like a ghost, our main character silently sealed the bedroom door shut. The moment his boots hit the hallway, intense waves of bizarre sapphire mana started pulsing violently out of the living area. His danger sense spiked. He investigated immediately, only to be blinded by a violently glowing azure aura consuming the entire space. As the blinding flash faded, a tiny kid rocking waist-length turquoise hair perched on the couch, examining her own palms. Like they were some legendary alien artifact, Jite froze for a heartbeat, desperately attempting to project a warm, welcoming dad vibe. Yet his underlying anxiety was screaming loud and clear. This was officially an unprecedented disaster. Before we could even process that, the camera snapped to the Lair District precinct. A squad of detectives were gossiping relentlessly about our main character's recent god-tier performance. Dude was single-handedly dismantling entire criminal syndicates in mere days, effortlessly crushing cold cases the supernatural task force couldn't crack for solid months. A wildly overly hyped colleague cornered him, aggressively offering an expensive dinner celebration since our guy was officially the absolute golden boy of the precinct. A female officer brutally roasted the guy, cackling that he was just exploiting the corporate credit card. Desperately defending his shattered ego, the veteran claimed he fully intended to fund the after-party himself. Disregarding their noise, our protagonist simply rejected them with a firm headshake, claiming duty called elsewhere. The rejected coworker sulked hard, flexing his shiny gold card to hide the sting of rejection. Stalking our guy to the exit, the squad furiously whispered about his suspicious habit of vanishing perfectly on the clock. Their paranoia spiked, completely convinced he was hiding a secret lover. Delivering a brutally icy glare, he instantly murdered their delusions, maintaining absolute zero emotion while strutting away. One detective desperately hollered that he believed in him, swearing the girlfriend rumors were fake. Bro, that female cop was definitely catching major feelings. Cut to after hours, but massive plot twist. That desk jockey wasn't the real protagonist. That exhausted wage slave was secretly the Archduke of Shadow, an insanely overpowered ability Jitai violently ripped from a slaughtered demon lord back in the day. This dark doppelganger basically acted as his personal butler, grinding side quests while the real boss chilled. Strolling into the local park, the shadow clone locked onto its creator. It approached with ultimate reverence, addressing him as absolute master and humbly reporting for summoned duty. Suddenly, the phantom registered a massive anomaly. Its terrifying overlord was cradling a tiny human child. Radiating maximum chill, Jite casually dropped that this was Guol, rocking a fresh haircut and finally unlocking her epic human transformation ability. A random pedestrian beamed at the duo, gushing over the insanely adorable, peaceful toddler, and complimenting how perfectly they meshed as a whole family unit. Desperate to prove its worth, the shadowy servant volunteered to transport the child if the boss felt burdened. Instantly, Guol locked onto the phantom with absolute murderous intent, radiating pure hostility. The ancient dark entity internally panicked in pure terror. Rejecting the assist, Jite carefully placed Guol on the pavement, stating she needed to walk independently. The trembling shadow just awkwardly monitored her, severely questioning its entire immortal existence. The darkness nervously questioned why the supreme leader was playing nanny, and why the older girls, Bom, Yorum, or Kyle, weren't covering childcare duties. Jitai sighed, revealing Bom was currently bedridden, burning up after enduring the intense mana synchronization, and regarding those other two walking disasters, he recalled the absolute madness. Kyle was dragging her sister out on a massive shopping spree, yapping nonstop like a broken radio, while the delinquent Yorum angrily blew smoke rings, completely isolating herself. Our protagonist realized those two were entirely incapable of surviving basic responsibility. The shadow bobbed its head, the puzzle pieces finally clicking. Cutting the small talk, our main character demanded the actual reason for this little summon. He pierced the phantom with an intimidating glare, silently threatening it to drop the act. Since their souls were literally tethered together, the dark entity nervously averted its ghostly eyes, frantically defending that it wasn't protesting, just deeply bewildered by this modern existence. Historically, its previous demonic overlords only demanded horrific bloodshed, slaughtering empires, and spreading despair. Yet currently, it was stuck grinding a mundane 9-to-5 desk job, feeling entirely adapting to human life was brutal for a shadow beast. It bowed, begging forgiveness for any disrespect, but the main character simply brushed it off. He assured the creature that craving a normal existence was perfectly natural for any sentient being harboring true desires. A massive operation loomed on the horizon. Until then, his absolute command was simple: play the perfect undercover employee and fade into the background. Before vanishing, he mentioned the human detectives were totally crushed by the Shadow's recent rejection. His final directive? Hit the bar and grab drinks with the squad. Since its departure was fast approaching, the dark beast bowed deeply, swearing to execute the command perfectly, and vanished into the night to execute its orders. Once alone, his gaze drifted toward a mother-daughter duo, radiating absolute joy. The little girl beamed brightly, squeezing a brand new toy while praising her mom. He caught little Guol totally locked onto that exact heartwarming moment. Her eyes were completely glued to them. It instantly hit him deep down. The quiet girl desperately craved a plushie. Regret washed over him. Had he realized sooner, he would have bought one immediately. But Guol kept piercing the scene with such intense longing. Her silent yearning was so deafening that he felt it straight in his soul. Breaking the silence, he softly asked if she wanted a toy. Guol's pupils dilated massively, absolutely stunned that he had cracked her inner thoughts. But instead of hitting up a regular maul, he simply raised his hand and ripped a tear through the fabric of space. Yep, just casually spawning a dimensional rift. From the void, he yanked out a massive azure teddy bear. He casually mentioned it was not an exact match to the other plushie, but definitely a solid upgrade. Guol embraced the stuffed animal, and holy smokes, the thing practically dwarfed her tiny frame. A rosy flush painted her cheeks. The pure, bashful joy radiating from her as she stared at the giant bear was absolutely melt-inducing. He asked if she loved it, fully anticipating an adorable nod or a quick squeeze. Instead, she surprisingly dropped the colossal plushie right onto the pavement. Closing the distance with tiny, deliberate steps, she marched straight toward him, leaving our guy completely baffled and frozen in confusion. What on earth was triggering this? Was she secretly furious, or did the present completely flop? Panic spiking, he swiftly scooped her tiny body into his arms, paranoia kicking in. He wondered if the blue bear fell short of her expectations. He gently confessed that his inventory of magical presents was empty, but Guol simply extended a tiny hand, softly grazing his cheek before pressing her small forehead directly against his. The sudden intimacy completely paralyzed him. What sparked this bizarre reaction? His mind raced, theorizing she might be confusing standard mana transference with actual human displays of affection. Or maybe this was just her silent, clumsy way of showing deep appreciation. Instantly, trauma hijacked his thoughts. Flashbacks of apocalyptic wars, oceans of blood, and ruthless death matches against monstrous dragons flooded his vision. Centuries of endless slaughter threatened to drown him. The suffocating nightmares gripped his soul, until Guol's pure, untainted gaze forcibly anchored him back to reality. Her absolute innocence instantly extinguished his inner demons, coaxing out a rare, genuine smile from the hardened regressor. The tiny girl beamed in response. Hand in hand, they strolled beneath a breathtaking sunset, giving off the ultimate wholesome found family aesthetic, Guol dragging her gigantic azure bear along the pavement. The cuteness overload was real, but abruptly, he hit the brakes, exhaling sharply as his senses flared. His radar locked onto a familiar presence. Bursting into view, Guol sprinted toward them, waving frantically like an absolute maniac. Radiating golden retriever energy, she engulfed Guol in a massive bear hug, enthusiastically announcing she had just raided the local shopping district. Tapping her forehead against the toddler's, Guol smugly translated that the little one was floating on cloud 9 over her brand new plushie present. His jaw practically dropped. Was this girl a secret telepath? Busting out laughing, Guol revealed that their dragon biology allowed them to transmit pure emotions and vivid thoughts through simple skin contact, completely bypassing the need for mana. And the forehead-to-forehead connection? That was their ultimate communication hotspot. The truth struck like lightning. Guol's forehead gesture was not some weird magic glitch, it was a pure declaration of affection. He was completely clueless. Guol mercilessly roasted his ignorance, a totally deserved reality check for the veteran. Suddenly, his eyes locked onto a massive, suspicious case slung over her shoulder. When interrogated about the loot, she flashed a $1 million smirk. Unzipping the bag, she revealed a pristine acoustic guitar, claiming it was her new emotional outlet. A perfect way to bypass physical contact. Striking a rock star pose, she eagerly asked if she radiated major pop idol vibes. Without missing a beat, she started shredding chords and belting out lyrics on the sidewalk. With fiery determination, she vowed to master this musical path completely. As her melody echoed, he spiraled back into a traumatic timeline. A haunting vision materialized. A shattered guitar, scattered medical supplies, and terrifying needles. Amidst the wreckage sat a hollowed-out Guol, hands stained crimson, surrounded by discarded liquor bottles. It was a suffocating, nightmarish reality he violently hated. Snapping back, he watched her aggressively pressing the strings. Her skin was tearing, with actual smoke rising from the fierce friction on her fingertips. Her dedication was bordering on sheer madness. Catching the aggressive tremors shaking her hand, he immediately ordered her to dial it back and stop torturing herself. Guol blinked in absolute surprise at his unexpected concern. She questioned his reaction, but he simply commanded her to pace her ambitions. Guiding Guol forward, he heard Guol call out, passionately declaring her unstoppable drive to reach the pinnacle of success. Dodging the emotional moment, he instantly pivoted, demanding an update on Bomb's condition. Guol's bright expression darkened into sadness as she shook her head, explaining the girl was still trapped in a feverish slumber, a severe backlash from burning massive mana reserves. Shifting topics, he asked about Yorum, making Guol tap her chin in deep thought. Yorum spent the entire day locked in her room, hopelessly addicted to binge-watching dramas. Honestly, our main character considered that an absolute win. Way better to have her obsessing over screens than starting street brawls outside. Honestly, 100% valid logic. That fiery redhead possesses way too much chaotic energy. Upon returning home, Jite reminded Guol to wash up, and she happily agreed, bringing Guol along. But while Guol wondered if Bomb had woken up, the atmosphere suddenly turned ice cold. Our main character gripped her shoulder hard, his relaxed aura vanishing in a split second. His eyes turned deadly serious, ordering Guol to grab Guol and lock themselves in their room, strictly forbidding them from stepping out. His terrifyingly intense tone completely freaked Guol out, asking what was wrong, but he simply growled, "Leave, now." Trembling with fear, she frantically nodded and dragged Guol down the hall. Our main character stepped forward and slowly pushed Bomb's door open. His expression instantly darkened into pure rage. Heavily armored knights swarmed the entire room, their menacing eyes glowing through the darkness as they surrounded the sleeping Bomb. One armored figure turned, coldly demanding if our main character was responsible for the Green Dragon's current state. These absolutely were not your average goons. They were the elite guardians, elite knights, and bound slaves, serving as the dragon's ultimate personal bodyguards. Terrifying monsters and humans eternally bound by overwhelmingly powerful magic to serve dragonkind. A few were even top-tier elites, exclusively assigned to protect baby dragons during their earthly joyrides. Instantly, our boy realized these knights had absolutely cast a forced sleep spell on her. But before he could utter a single word, the armored giant aggressively stomped forward, furiously demanding what our main character had done to the Green Dragon. Obviously, Jite was not about to tolerate this disrespect. He instantly fired back, harshly scolding the intruder for trespassing into a private home without even dropping a basic introduction. Like, "Have you ever heard of basic manners, bro?" But the arrogant knight just laughed off the warning, acting totally supreme, claiming that interrogations were a privilege reserved strictly for the strong, calling our main character pathetically weak. Then, just to flex his power, the intruder unleashed a suffocating dark aura known as Blackheart, shifting the room's atmosphere from merely tense to absolutely blood-curdling. The armored menace essentially declared himself the only one with the right to ask questions, trashing our boy as a filthy, lowly human. Big yikes, buddy. You are totally dead meat. Yet somehow, Jite remained ice cold. The knight issued one final threat, aggressively demanding the truth about the Green Dragon. Instead of panicking, our main character kept his chill and smoothly laid out the actual facts. A blue dragon had just hatched, leaving the Green Dragon completely exhausted from teaching the newborn how to master polymorph magic and performing a massive mana transfer. This revelation only made the towering knight glare with heavier murderous intent. He viciously demanded to know who our main character thought he was, standing his ground like an absolute boss. But Jite simply responded with chilling confidence, declaring himself as their true guardian. The armored giant burst into mocking laughter, completely baffled that a fragile human would ever dream of protecting legendary dragons. He relentlessly mocked our boy, questioning if he truly grasped the terrifying nature of these cosmic beings. But Jite just narrowed his sharp eyes, stating he knew exactly what these creatures were capable of, which is why he had his own interrogation for the intruders. Then, our boy dropped an absolute bombshell, demanding to know why they appeared so early when they were destined to be hopelessly scattered across a distant dimensional rift. The invading squad stood completely paralyzed, exchanging shocked glances like, "How does this random human know our deepest cosmic secrets?" The squad commander instantly realized something was horribly wrong, because this guy held way too much forbidden knowledge. Desperately trying to maintain his cool, the leader proclaimed they were the sacred guardians of the youth and eternal keepers of history. He acknowledged our main character had sheltered the dragons, temporarily, but aggressively stated he 0% trusted him, heavily implying that leaving him alive was a massive risk. "Yeah, you clowns are officially finished." Our guy calmly suggested they talk things out, but the commander refused to listen. He viciously swung his massive greatsword downward, promising a swift execution so Jite would not even feel the sting of death. But then things got absolutely unhinged. A deafening boom erupted, scattering blinding purple energy everywhere, yet our main character did not even blink. The commander's legendary, heavy greatsword was casually blocked like a literal toy, because Jite casually manifested his own SS rank formless blade. Then, crack, with lightning-fast precision, Our boy cleanly severed the commander's hand, like slicing through soft butter. The arrogant leader crashed to the floor howling in utter agony, while a fellow knight trashed him as a pathetic loser for getting bodied by such a basic counterattack. The remaining guardians absolutely lost their minds, roaring that they would annihilate our main character, and ruthlessly charged with flashing swords and spears from every single direction, but they stood zero chance. Suddenly, the bleeding leader began stammering, finally grasping that this supposed mere human was an absolute monster. In the blink of an eye, elite knights were helplessly launched through the air, like discarded, broken toys, their impenetrable armor and legendary weapons completely shattered into dust. When the battlefield finally cleared, our main character stood effortlessly amidst the smoking wreckage, radiating pure boss energy, entirely surrounded by the crushed remains of the so-called elite guardians. The mutilated leader, trembling miserably on the floor, stared up at our boy in absolute, undeniable terror. Deep within his mind, he regretfully admitted he should have trusted his survival instincts. No ordinary human possessed this godly power. He had realized the terrifying truth way too late. Jite operated on a completely different dimension, radiating the aura of an absolute monster. Our guy just glared downward, his pitch-black eyes practically piercing souls. Stepping forward, the air grew heavy. He coldly reminded the trembling knight who exactly begged for this conversation. Shaking like a leaf, the commander stuttered, asking if Jite conquered this realm. But the main character ruthlessly interrupted, demanding straight answers. How on earth did his armored squad bypass those broken dimensional barriers to crash into this exact timeline? The broken commander finally folded. He revealed a massive space-time distortion occurred when their lord attempted to rip open a massive portal, straight from the dragon's nest. But the spell violently backfired, scattering their entire unit randomly across this foreign world. Jite narrowed his eyes, demanding specifics about this cosmic glitch. The battered warrior admitted he lacked the exact magical blueprints, but vividly recalled his master whispering a legendary name, the Horizon of Providence. He claimed the spatial tier was merely collateral damage from that horizon's overwhelming aura, violently warping the fabric of reality itself. This revelation hit Jite hard. Across countless brutal regressions, that godly title had never once crossed his radar. Alarm bells instantly rang in his head. This specific timeline was glitching with massive, unexpected curveballs. He suddenly clocked that no guardian had ever interrogating him about that mysterious horizon's connection. Did that divine force literally drag them into this exact coordinates? The warrior nodded weakly. An absolute, invisible will from beyond that horizon had hijacked their failing warp. Jite's absolute focus locked on. The commander described feeling a supernatural tug yanking his soul straight through the cosmic chaos, directly feeding him the exact GPS coordinates of the hatchlings. But Jite wasn't buying this convenient destiny crap, resolving to extract the raw truth himself. He violently gripped the commander's metal helm, declaring a mandatory, immediate reality check, forcing terrified eye contact. Instantly, Jite activated his double S rank, Eyes of Balance, a completely broken, overpowered skill. He violently ripped straight from the corpse of a slaughtered demon, Archduke. These glowing irises absolutely shattered any illusions or deceptions, and to his absolute shock, the trembling warrior was speaking pure facts. Flashbacks hit him hard. Decades spent ruthlessly exterminating every single microscopic variable, bleeding himself dry just to ensure timeline-breaking anomalies like this stayed buried forever. Yet here stood another massive, unscripted glitch, and it was absolutely frying his brain. Pure, unadulterated rage boiled inside Jite. Seriously, what absolute garbage was this? Why did these rogue, off-script elements keep respawning? Despite his flawless grind, refusing to back down, he fiercely interrogated the soldier about that sinister entity lurking beyond the barrier. Choking on fear, the knight described a suffocating, toxic malice, like an ancient, festering grudge. It resonated purely as a catastrophic curse, heavily theorizing it locked onto him solely because his soul was tainted by the lingering, chaotic residue of the green dragon's magic. Without warning, Jite's patience violently shattered. He delivered a devastating, lightning-fast strike from the blind spot, launching the armored commander backwards, leaving him coughing up blood in the dirt. While the victim writhed, Jite forcefully tore away his breastplate, exposing a bizarre anomaly. An eerie, pulsating glow bled from the shattered metal. In that exact microsecond, the absolute authority of the vintage clock self-activated, aggressively scanning for whatever cancer was corrupting the time stream. Brilliant, divine chains of pure gold violently lashed around the intruder, radiating terrifying, suffocating pressure. Those divine links compressed into a blinding sphere of judgment, practically broadcasting a supreme, universal decree of sheer hostility against rogue foreign variables polluting the sacred timeline. Then, projecting absolute, mechanical, zero-degree frostiness, the eternal clock, decreed that effective immediately, any alien entity invading from alternate dimensions or manipulating unauthorized, splintered temporal branches would face extreme, lethal prejudice. They were now officially branded as target practice. Jutai stared intensely at the radiant, supernatural hourglass, manifesting right in his palm. It suddenly hit him, this cosmic relic, his ultimate reset button for conquering death itself, was literally developing a mind of its own. Across countless grueling lifetimes, this EX-tier absolute skill only ever triggered during a regression, yet here it was, going completely rogue and overriding his commands. Powerless to cancel the ultimate spell, he simply braced for impact. As the golden temporal gears vanished, the surviving soldiers patched their wounds, exchanging terrified, panic-stricken mutters. They frantically questioned what kind of god-tier phenomenon just occurred, but Jutai kept his killing intent dialed up. Pivoting sharply, he readied his deadly blade, coldly demanding their next move. He confidently declared the legendary hatchlings were already under his absolute protection, rendering their entire rescue mission utterly pointless. Furthermore, he logically deduced that their magical soul tethers to the beasts had totally snapped, completely severed by that chaotic cosmic warp. It was completely erased. So, realistically, sticking around meant guaranteed death for zero payout. The armored squad stared back, absolutely paralyzed with shock, questioning if this ruthless monster was genuinely offering a free pass. But Jitai's aura remained sub-zero. He bluntly stated he gave zero cares, provided they stayed strictly out of his crosshairs. Swallowing their pride, the bruised warriors nodded, quietly retreating into the shadows one by one. But out of nowhere, the heavily battered commander forced himself upright, swaying violently on shattered legs. He rasped that retreating wasn't an option, instantly freezing the entire battlefield. Genuinely caught off guard, Jitai demanded a reason. The bleeding commander confessed his absolute, sworn duty was securing. Preaching about causality and fate? Yeah, no. Before the night could even finish, our main character absolutely decked him, slamming him face first into the dirt. Zero hesitation. He planted his boot firmly on the armored chest, demanding to know if this dude was seriously planning to stay. Despite his ribs probably screaming in pure agony, the battered warrior refused to back down. So, Jitai leaned in, crushing his entire weight right onto the struggling knight's broken defense. Over the sound of agonizing screams, his voice dropped to a terrifying chill. Was he truly ready to die here? Gasping for breath, the knight held his ground. Fierce resolve burned inside his glowing eyes beneath that heavy metal helmet, swearing he would never abandon the dragons. Hearing this, our guy coldly shifted his gaze toward the trembling backup squad. One extra frantically yelled that their commander was totally clueless. Another mocked him for being a total meathead, laughing at him for rejecting a free escape ticket. Then, those cowards literally just shrugged and bailed on their own boss. Jitai stood in dead silence, processing this absolute circus. Letting out a heavy sigh, he finally decided to play along. Glaring down at the battered warrior bleeding in the dirt, he casually muttered that, honestly, true guardians actually needed that insane level of stubbornness. Then, in one breathtaking blur of motion, he slaughtered the deserters, sparing only this loyal meathead. Trembling in absolute shock, the commander stuttered out, asking if this was all a test. Jitai shot that theory down instantly. With chilling composure, he admitted this dude was built completely different from those fakes, and demanded to know why he was so obsessed with the green dragon. Kneeling proudly in his full battle gear, the warrior declared his eternal devotion to her clan. Jitai respected the vibe, but brutally crushed his dreams by stating, he was infinitely more powerful. Seriously, what could this weakling even protect? But then, a rare, terrifying smirk crossed his face, offering the dude a flawless position. Boom, scene transition. We pan to the living room where Yorum, Guol, and Guol are chilling. Jitai ordered his new pet to introduce himself. He announced the fierce warrior as their new housekeeper, leaving the guy utterly paralyzed, rocking heavy steel battle armor slapped with a neon pink frilly apron. Bro, the disrespect was absolutely unreal. Imagine being a legendary commander reduced to a literal cleaning slave. Fast forward, and our badass warrior is stuck at the sink, scrubbing plates in hot pink rubber gloves, sighing as his dignity shattered into dust. He flashed back to his furious protest, screaming about how scrubbing pots had literally zero connection to defending mighty dragons. Grumbling under his breath, he felt completely played, wondering if this whole setup was a massive troll. But Jitai just iced him out, flexing that dragon security was already flawless, and this humiliating gig was his only ticket to stay. Then, Jitai flashed a glare so demonic it could freeze hell, promising to erase his entire existence if he failed at basic chore duty. Talk about toxic management. Defeated, the fallen knight aggressively scrubbed the dirty bowls, radiating pure depression, questioning how a supreme battlefield commander devolved into the universe's most pathetic dishwasher. Suddenly, Bomb glided into the kitchen, rocking oversized pajamas, softly asking if he was the proud warrior from Escalation. The commander instantly panicked, dropping his tough guy act, frantically checking on her health and blurting out Lady Green before biting his tongue. Flashing an angelic smile, she brushed it off. Desperate to know why she left her bed, he listened as she teased him about his new job. Complimenting his ridiculous apron, she sent the massive warrior into a complete internal meltdown. Radiating pure wholesome energy, she politely asked him to watch over them, as their official Mr. Housekeeper. That title struck his soul like lightning. Fired up with sudden passion, he literally shattered a ceramic plate, screaming a blood oath that her precious hands would never suffer tap water again. He was officially locked in for duty. Unfazed, Bomb stared at the scattered porcelain shards and coldly reminded him that those dishes cost a literal fortune. Bro, worst first day ever. Fast forward to morning, and baby Guol initiated a full-blown runway fashion show. First, an adorable blue teddy onesie. Next, she styled a crisp academy uniform paired with a flashy neon yellow backpack before switching to maximum goth mode in a dark aesthetic dress. Meanwhile, Guol acted like a crazy paparazzi, spamming pictures on her smartwatch, literally vibrating with hype because little Guol was serving absolute peak cuteness. Mid-fangirl breakdown, she desperately asked Bomb how she secured such premium drip for the kid. Smug as hell, Bomb bragged about online shopping the second her fever broke. Pivoting her attention to the tiny fashionista, she asked if the wardrobe upgrade was approved. Guol squeezed her stuffed blue bear like her life absolutely depended on it, swaying nervously while holding back a massive, heart-melting smile. Everyone in the room knew this tiny dragon was completely addicted to her new clothes despite playing the shy card. Out of nowhere, Guol spun around and targeted our legendary dishwasher, the mighty Knight Commander, demanding his verdict on the ultimate outfit. Sweating bullets to avoid offending anyone, the massive warrior declared her flawless in every single look. Guol's eyes sparkled with amusement. Look who suddenly got that silver tongue, she teased. A massive level up for yesterday's window washer. Meanwhile, Jite lingered in the shadows, his piercing gaze analyzing their every move. Out of nowhere, our main character shattered the mood. He exposed Guol's secret. Her lingering finger injury kept her strumming those strings. Panic flashed across her face. She immediately threw up her defenses, stammering that it was just a casual hobby, but the nervous sweat betrayed her completely. Bomb, gently brushing Guol's hair like a loving sister, immediately scolded Jite's bluntness. She simply adores the melody, Bomb countered gently. Jite defended his blunt observation, swearing zero malice. Then, he pivoted the interrogation. Where is Yorum? He demanded, already suspecting she was binge-watching shows in her cave. The former knight turned janitor flinched. Sweating nervously, he confessed he attempted to purify her domain earlier that morning, but he suffered a brutal rejection. Voice trembling, he described her ghostly pale aura before she ruthlessly banished him. Bomb flashed a knowing, slightly mischievous smile. Another all-nighter, probably, she hummed. Our main character stayed completely silent, but the icy aura radiating from him screamed pure disappointment. Taking charge, he cracked open her door. And man, pure apocalyptic chaos greeted him. A thick fog choked the room, masking a massive graveyard of cigarette butts. Empty energy cans littered the battlefield. Amidst the ruins, Yorum slouched in baggy sweats, looking absolutely wrecked while clutching a beverage, and aggressively tearing into some dried squid. Sparing him a sideways glare, she sneered, "Just checking if I still have a pulse?" Jite's gaze shifted to the massive monitor dominating the wall. "Is this your entire existence now?" he questioned. She blankly nodded. "Nothing else?" he pressed. "Nope," she deadpanned. Suddenly, the screen exploded with a chaotic clash of heavily armored knights. Instantly, Yorum erupted. Screaming loud enough to shatter glass, she ruthlessly trashed Season 7's completely garbage storyline. "That sword technique is pure trash," she howled. Unfazed, Jite simply suggested turning it off. She instantly fired back pure venom, sarcastically praising his groundbreaking, absolute genius logic. But Jite's expression remained stone cold. He issued a non-negotiable command. "We need to talk." His icy tone completely stunned her. Before anyone realized, Jite had summoned the entire household. With little Guol resting safely on his lap, he dropped the ultimate decree. Operation Total Purification begins this instant. The three non-human girls and the terrified knight nervously lined up along the sofa. They looked like prisoners awaiting execution. Guol shattered the silence first, frantically questioning this sudden, terrifying obsession with extreme hygiene. Jite unleashed his harsh reality check. "Listen up. You might not be human, but on Earth, you adapt to human standards." He mercilessly targeted Yorum and Guol's biohazard zones. Guol completely lost her mind. "When did you infiltrate my sanctuary?" she shrieked. "Never invade another dragon's nest uninvited." Bomb flashed a wicked smirk. "Didn't Mother also command you to maintain your territory?" Before settling down, Guol's face flushed crimson as she frantically screamed objections, but our hero remained utterly unfazed. Channeling a ruthless military commander, he barked out orders. The knight claimed the common areas, while the girls faced their own disastrous realms. Yorum unleashed a demonic, wall-shaking groan. "Why exert ourselves when the servant exists for this exact purpose?" she bitterly complained. Embracing her inner menace, Yorum smeared a filthy finger across Guol's cheek, a custom-made blessing of grime. "Just for you," she mocked. Murderous intent flashed in Guol's eyes. Screaming like she absorbed a toxic attack, she violently leaped back, declaring absolute hatred for all things unclean. Yorum cackled like a villain, the absolute irony. A neat freak living inside a literal garbage dump, she brutally mocked. Honestly, valid point. Quickly losing interest, Yorum attempted a stealthy retreat, shamelessly commanding the knight to purify her chaotic domain. "I require physical training," she lied effortlessly. The traumatized janitor actually nodded along, radiating pure, defeated puppy energy. Bomb smoothly activated her own escape route. Claiming her territory was already spotless, she announced an urgent dinner grocery run. This abandoned poor Guol on the battlefield. Weeping dramatically, she cursed their expanding household and her suddenly skyrocketing workload. Our main character silently approved Bomb's exit, but the moment she mentioned cooking, Jitae's stoic mask completely shattered. Traumatic flashbacks hit hard. He remembered her unholy fusion of fish and purple rice, a literal culinary catastrophe. Sweating bullets, he stared at her innocent smile. "Craving anything specific?" she chirped sweetly. Defeated, our guy surrendered to fate, secretly praying his stomach would survive another one of her meals. Smash cut to Yorum's disaster zone, an absolute biohazard wasteland. The terrified knight stood paralyzed, knuckles turning white around his broomstick. His warrior soul practically ascended from pure trauma. Honestly, the brutal demon realm felt like a luxury resort compared to this toxic wasteland. The mystery of her zombie-like state was totally solved. Scanning the wreckage, his eyes locked onto a flower pot, completely devoid of nature. Instead, it overflowed with toxic ash. He genuinely questioned if she was attempting a slow, self-inflicted poisoning routine. Shaking his head, he initiated the purification protocol. Armed with a heavy-duty bag, he aggressively chucked the metallic ruins. Suddenly, Shamanin shifted. Jitae's terrifying clone materialized in full police gear, freezing the knight with a brutal death glare. The shadow copy aggressively tapped the tin can, launching into an intense, full-blown lecture about separating metals from plastics. He brutally roasted the armored knight, claiming that even back in his homeland of Escalation, society must be totally primitive to ignore basic recycling. The exhausted janitor just stared at this fake Jitae, completely drained. But then, a chilling realization struck the poor cleaner. A suffocating demonic pressure flooded the room, radiating off the figure standing nearby. The terrifying truth hit him: this wasn't the real Jitae. It was merely a phantom, yet its overwhelming presence could easily fool absolutely anyone into thinking it was the actual boss. Piercing the cleaner with a death glare, the clone barked, demanding to know why he was just spacing out like a statue. Trembling like a leaf, the janitor furiously bowed and begged for forgiveness. Despite the terrifying aura, he secretly despised this arrogant counterfeit acting tough. Suddenly, the door swung open, revealing the true Jitae. He caught his shadowy double, red-handed, absolutely bullying the helpless cleaner. Caught off guard, the phantom shifted awkwardly, but desperately tried to play it cool, claiming he was merely educating the utterly useless, slacking janitor on basic competence. This fake had absolutely zero chill. However, the real Jitae swiftly ordered his double to shut up and start scrubbing. He explained that summoning backup was necessary, since tackling the apocalyptic disaster inside Yorum's bedroom was impossible for one person. Forced teamwork had officially begun. Hearing this glorious command, the miserable janitor felt a wave of absolute salvation. He gleefully celebrated seeing this arrogant brat dragged into the same hellish chore. Thus, the ultimate deep cleaning crusade officially commenced. While the others lived their best lives, Yorum training, Bomb grocery shopping, and the two youngest girls happily playing around, the tragic duo battled an absolute mountain of garbage. They scrubbed and sweated relentlessly until the sun finally dipped below the horizon. Exhausted, the Phantom reported to Jitae's desk, proudly declaring the impossible mission accomplished. Surprisingly, the main character actually offered genuine praise. Absolute miracles really do exist. He then spun his monitor around, revealing a glowing red target hovering over Moscow, Russia. He revealed that a shady organization named Invisibility was operating there, conducting twisted, horrific experiments on transcendent class magic users. Gruesome images of massive test tubes and mutated humans flashed on screen. Jite issued a cold command, finished local patrol duties, then instantly deployed to Russia to hunt down the target called Prototype X. Without a single ounce of hesitation, the clone pledged absolute obedience. Just as the briefing concluded, the front door burst open, revealing Bomb with a breathtaking smile, announcing her return. The exhausted janitor politely welcomed her back, while Guol stared at the mountainous bags of groceries in pure shock, questioning the massive haul. Bomb just beamed cheerfully, explaining that their expanding family naturally required a much larger feast. The Phantom attempted a stealthy escape, but Jite clamped a heavy hand onto its shoulder, his eyes flashing with lethal intent. He commanded an immediate wardrobe swap, silencing any protests. Cut to the dining room, where Bomb enthusiastically rallied everyone to dig in, revealing an absolute culinary nightmare. Toxic purple soup bubbled violently, exhaling sinister smoke while whole fish jutted out like jagged spears. Surprisingly, the girls devoured it. Guol gasped in amazement, declaring the cursed flavor perfectly matched their traditional Escalation cuisine. Yorum casually agreed it tasted decent. Guol innocently wished the cleaner could join the feast, but Yorum brutally called her clueless, reminding her the armored guy literally lacked a mouth. Meanwhile, the trapped shadow clone sat frozen in casual wear, sweating absolutely buckets while staring down the demonic stew. The horrific realization finally struck him. His master had ruthlessly swapped places, strictly to dodge this catastrophic dinner. What a brutal betrayal for the clone. So, where was the actual Jite hiding? He stood in the garden, looking incredibly sharp, peacefully basking in the moonlit darkness. He successfully dodged a lethal bullet, abandoning his tragic double to endure Bomb's apocalyptic cooking. Now that is absolutely ruthless. The very next day, inside an abandoned, rotting factory near Lair, our protagonist was dealing absolute devastation. It was pure carnage. Shattered bodies littered the blood-soaked concrete, accompanied only by the agonizing, ear-piercing shrieks of a broken demon. The blood-drenched monster spiraled into total madness, screeching that Jite would suffer eternal torment, desperately screaming about his powerful, untouchable, hidden backers. Jite just stared down, cold and emotionless, as a grim reaper. Then, without even a single blink, he cleanly severed the monster's hands, sending him crashing face first into the unforgiving concrete like a discarded, lifeless ragdoll. Absolutely brutal. He casually grabbed the screaming demon by the scalp, whispering with bone-chilling calmness that he already knew the identity of this so-called mighty sponsor. He named him directly, Wei Yan, the elite Blue Dragon professor, known throughout the underworld as the sinister mastermind of the Invisibility Syndicate. With absolute zero hesitation, he plunged his merciless blade straight through the creature's throat, demanding the raw truth about Wei Yan's ultimate, twisted master plan. He instantly triggered his absolutely broken Eyes of Balance ability, silently warning the vile fiend that deception was utterly useless today. He demanded absolute honesty, zero tricks. Terror morphed the monster's face into pure, unadulterated panic. Trembling violently, the creature confessed he lacked the full picture, yet dropped a massive bombshell. Wei Yan swore that if their scheme succeeded in 3 months, he would secure a coveted position called a seat. This title was legendary, a supreme throne reserved strictly for the Invisible Syndicate's top 4 commanders, claiming it granted a personal legion and apocalyptic strength. Our main character found this incredibly suspicious, because throughout his countless previous regressions, that traitor Wei Yan never even sniffed a throne, and he absolutely lacked the sheer authority to pull off this massive stunt today. Suddenly, his mystical antique clock ability violently surged to life once more. A suffocating, malicious aura bled through from a dimension far beyond ordinary human comprehension. The artifact hunted down whoever dared to shatter destiny's rules. It viciously locked onto a single target, the monstrous Wei Yan. The system violently flashed a massive red alert, exposing an intruder manipulating the sacred timeline, and they completely despised his temporal regression cycle. Unbelievably, Wei Yan had shattered the endless loop, mutating into a catastrophic glitch within reality, retaining his absolute peak abilities from every previous existence. That is not just cheating, that is straight-up god-tier system manipulation. Jite immediately sensed the lethal stakes. First, those fanatic guardians, and now this overpowered Wei Yan anomaly. The cosmos desperately wanted him dead. Meanwhile, the pathetic creature groveled on the bloody dirt, frantically pleading for mercy, swearing he had emptied his mind. He practically begged our hero for a second chance, promising to dig up darker secrets, even fabricating a tragic tale about his bedridden mother. Naturally, our cold-blooded main character saw right through the pathetic illusion. He ruthlessly summoned a brutal lightning bolt, decapitating the fiend instantly. He glared at the headless remains with terrifying, radiant eyes, recalling his exact promise that deceit guaranteed death. He smoothly activated his devastating incineration technique, reducing the filthy carcass to absolute dust, coldly noting that even total honesty would never have saved the monster's miserable life. Fate is genuinely cruel. Afterward, he silently marched back toward the sprawling city, deeply processing these grim new revelations. He calculated that Wei Yan's colossal ambition absolutely had to intertwine with the lair. He vividly recalled how that bastard pushed for Yorum to become the student representative at the grand winter banquet. The sinister puzzle pieces rapidly clicked into place. That entire ceremony screamed deadly trap. Suddenly, his sharp gaze caught Baum and Guol chilling peacefully in the distant courtyard. Two random students blocked their path, absolutely squealing over Guol and praising her overwhelming cuteness. One excitedly begged for the tiny girl's name, and Baum, wearing her signature gentle smile, introduced her as Yu Guol. The strangers practically melted over the precious name, claiming it perfectly suited her icy hair, before demanding her age. But abruptly, they sensed Jitai looming behind them, radiating an absolutely suffocating, murderous aura, as he coldly questioned if these strangers required anything from the child. Experiencing our protagonist's bone-chilling intimidation firsthand, they absolutely panicked and bolted like they had just encountered a grim reaper. Jitai calmly claimed the empty bench space beside Baum. She curiously questioned his all-day disappearance, but he simply locked his gaze forward, muttering about unresolved business. She kept rambling, expressing deep regret over missing quality time with Guol due to battling a sudden fever all morning, while gesturing toward Guol playing near the splashing fountain. She heavily sighed, realizing tomorrow's academy opening meant their carefree adventures were officially over, then flashed a brilliant smirk, asking Jitai if they finally resembled a legitimate family. She playfully distributed titles, declaring Guol the precious daughter, herself the devoted mother, which obviously crowned Jitai as the stoic father. She threw him a bashful, intensely romantic side glance. Yet our main character delivered his legendary, emotionless glare. Baum burst into sweet laughter, claiming it was merely a prank while wondering why he remained perpetually rigid. Our guy bluntly stated that if she planned to spout sheer nonsense, she belonged back home. Baum merely smiled in silence, admiring him scoop up Guol, and softly whispered that playing pretend was genuinely thrilling. The following dawn brought explosive energy as cadets flooded toward the elite academy beneath a radiant, cloudless sky. Guol dashed frantically with crispy toast dangling from her lips, absolutely embodying total main character anime energy, shrieking with pure joy about her highly anticipated first day. Baum effortlessly matched her chaotic pace, curiously questioning her chosen schedule, and praying their paths would align. Suddenly, Baum questioned the dramatic bread prop, pointing out that Guol had totally devoured a massive breakfast earlier. Guol giggled mischievously, claiming her oblivious friend lacked vision. Urban legend dictated that sprinting toward campus, chomping on morning baked goods, and violently colliding at a blind corner practically guaranteed encountering your soulmate. Deep within her vivid imagination, she literally envisioned slamming into an outrageously gorgeous dragon prince. This girl was completely lost in her romantic delusions, but honestly, dreaming big never hurts. However, fate completely denied her fairy tale romance, and bam, she brutally crashed straight into Yorum, who anchored herself there sporting a wickedly arrogant smirk. She leaned incredibly close, dangerously whispering about their perfectly timed, fateful encounter. This absolutely shattered Guol's reality. Yorum, flashing her signature menace smile, teased if fate had bound them as soulmates. Our anxious blonde almost screeched, frantically pointing out their matching genders, but Yorum merely cackled, claiming Western shows proved that did not matter at all. Bruh. This fiery menace gave 0 out of 10 cares. With lightning speed, she swiped the crispy bread right from Guol's trembling lips and devoured it whole. Guol's soul visibly left her body, ultimate breakfast betrayal achieved. Shifting the vibe, Yorum casually questioned where Grand Boss Jitai vanished. Baum softly mentioned his promise to monitor their lectures, though he detoured straight to the staff headquarters. Smirking like a true villain, Yorum loudly speculated about a secret romance, considering his suspicious overnight absence. Instant paralyzation hit Baum. Cold sweat drenched her face as she violently stuttered out a desperate, panicky denial. Guol stared with massive concern, innocently asking if Baum caught a fever, since she was practically melting away. Suddenly, blinding camera strobes erupted as a massive mob swarmed their position. Yorum narrowed her fierce eyes, spotting a ravenous pack of reporters hunting for shots of the legendary rookies. Standing united, the trio braced themselves, while bystanders aggressively gossiped, pointing at Yorum as the absolute unit who crushed Sophia and dropped that unhinged exam speech. Catching sight of her iconic crimson locks, the media horde stampeded forward, desperately screaming for an exclusive interview. Dozens of mics violently invaded her personal space with overlapping interrogations. Guol simply watched the chaotic stampede, absolutely mortified and questioning their literal sanity. Yorum's patience meter officially hit 0. The dragon was awake. She unleashed a soul-shaking, beastly roar, demanding total silence, paralyzing the entire mob in pure, unadulterated terror. Piercing the reporters with a lethal glare, she branded them trash, declaring her previous statement was absolute. Daring anyone to challenge her, she flipped an arrogant finger while flashing a terrifyingly ruthless, battle-hungry smirk. The entire crowd violently recoiled. No one possessed the death wish required to engage. Meanwhile, at base camp, Guol camped out on the floor, tightly hugging her plushie and intensely guarding the entrance, craving some entertainment. The cleaner peeked inside, instantly questioning his life choices. Jitai's ominous departure warning echoed in his skull. With the students deployed and the boss absent, this mere mortal had to solo guard the terrifying baby dragon. Pure, unfiltered dread masked his expression. Scrubbing grime was nothing compared to this boss battle, and childcare was not in his skill tree. Faking maximum composure, he formally addressed Lady Guol, nervously suggesting she relax somewhere plush until the squad returned. Guol locked onto him momentarily, then brutally dismissed his existence. Emotional damage critical, the poor dude started sweating buckets. His protective gear nearly slipped from the moisture. Completely strategyless, he tactically retreated to scrub random objects, desperate to evade the suffocating aura. But gathering his scattered courage, he respawned with a fresh tactic. Using his softest tone, he proposed a co-op reading session. Instantly, sparkling stars ignited within Guol's cold eyes. Finally, a successful hit. Feeling a surge of hope, he planted himself on the ground facing his tiny overlord, presenting a tome titled Dad is a Fairy. The cover featured an absolutely wholesome illustration of a winged family duo. He narrated an ancient tale of Dalsoon and her father surviving deep within enchanted woods. But his warrior brain was totally glitched. Traumatized by combat, his mind projected a hellish monster wasteland instead of a mystical paradise. Continuing the lore, he voiced how the father shared nightly legends while mentally visualizing gruesome, blood-soaked battlefield chronicles. He deadass concluded this innocent toddler possessed a bloodthirsty warrior's spirit like himself. Witnessing this breakdown, Guol stared, utterly bewildered, likely registering him as a complete lunatic. Pushing forward, he read how Dalsoon awoke to an empty, fatherless home. Rather than assuming a simple grocery run, this broken veteran envisioned a savage raid for a captured bride, complete prisoner of war style, imagining a highly intense tactical abduction. He blindly praised Dalsoon's luck in acquiring a replacement mother, picturing the poor hostage screaming in utter agony. Bruh, fairy tales do not work like that. Turning to face his audience, he instantly met Guol's terrifyingly murderous death glare. A pitch-black, suffocating aura violently erupted from the child, leaving the clueless veteran completely baffled, questioning her dislike of the plot. Obviously, my guy, you are acting like a literal psycho. Our precious Guol felt deeply traumatized. Staying entirely silent, she menacingly aimed a tiny finger toward the isolation corner, silently ordering his immediate, permanent banishment from her presence. The defeated warrior broke eye contact, completely lost, while she comfortably sprawled out, cheerfully humming at the colorful pages. Meanwhile, our broken hero curled into the shadow corner, his very soul ascending to heaven. Childcare was definitely his dump stat. Flashing back to the academy grounds, a dangerously sleek phantom vehicle pulled up. The chauffeur practically teleported to pop the door and out. Stepped up a flawless beauty radiating runway energy, totally out of place on a gritty battlefield. Enter Gong Juhai, the future supreme heir of the legendary Gong dynasty. We are talking about Korea's top 3 elite Blade Master bloodlines. Yet, this pampered princess only obsessed over maintaining her absolute perfect complexion. She whined endlessly, aggressively applying cosmetics while trashing their rigorous martial arts practice just because it ruined her absolute glow. Perspiration basically destroyed her flawless base layer. Mother had her priorities straight. Suddenly, she spotted a massive swarm of hungry paparazzi blocking the main gates. Instantly, her ego spiked, fully believing this media circus gathered exclusively for her grand arrival. She practically sparkled, absolutely hyped that her celebrity status had peaked. Her anxious lackey, a trembling dude named Kim, desperately attempted to shatter her delusion, nervously whispering that those flashing lenses definitely targeted somebody else entirely. Juhai whipped around, glaring daggers at him like he just brutally dragged her entire bloodline, and viciously demanded a repeat. Sizzling with absolute rage, she desperately needed to know who else possessed enough main character energy to make paparazzi literally pitch tents outside. Ignoring his panicked stutters, she ruthlessly, aggressively shoved a random cameraman away and strutted forward, radiating pure boss energy. But what absolute madness unfolded directly in her line of sight? Guol and Yorum literally just dropped into the scene. Even arrogant Juhai silently confessed these two queens served absolute breathtaking visuals. We are talking illegal levels of gorgeous. Then, her jaw dropped at pure chaos. Yorum literally lounged upon a random classmate, dominating him like a living throne, while he dragged himself like an ultimate simp. Nearby, Guol looked completely traumatized, desperately questioning how this absolute madness even existed. Yorum, face totally deadpan, bluntly stated this pathetic guy begged for it. The actual human furniture literally shook like a terrified stray, violently nodding with pure joy, claiming extreme fanboy status, and loving every single second. Yorum simply pierced him with absolute disgust, labeled his existence pure trash, and carried on radiating untouchable, unbothered energy. Instantly, she aggressively dominated the entire media mob, declaring a strict one-question limit per reporter, promising to vanish instantly if they crossed her boundaries. The entire chaotic swarm froze instantly, terrified to trigger her wrath. She singled out some capped reporter, who immediately launched into a massive yapping session about his Taiwanese network credentials. Boom! Yorum instantly sliced through his annoying monologue, canceling his massive yapping, and mercilessly skipped ahead. That rejected dude just froze, jaw glued to the pavement. 0 questions successfully launched. Next up, a French correspondent questioned her current vibe regarding dominating the spotlight across the entire awakened superhuman society. Yorum, radiating 0 gave, casually dug into her nostril, branded the fame absolutely filthy, and swiped left. Another brave soul mentioned her obsessed followers. Yorum brutally crushed her heel into her living throne, labeling her entire fanbase total psycho-stalkers. Brutal. Suddenly, a heavy-set, spectacled reporter locked onto her. He aggressively demanded the hidden meaning behind her unhinged outburst during that infamous Blue Dragon Academy broadcast. She practically scanned his soul with absolute toxic repulsion, growling that his brain already comprehended it, while brutally roasting his atrocious body odor. Yet this creep refused to fold, heavily pressing about her extremely foul vocabulary choices. He attempted a creepy smirk, heavily implying some spicy hidden agenda driving her actions. Yorum slowly invaded his personal space, flashing an absolutely lethal predator grin, and darkly whispered an invitation to hook up right there. The guy basically short-circuited, visibly sweating bullets. Instantly, her expression shifted into pure ice, sneering that he obviously recognized her sarcasm, questioning why he kept pushing such a pathetic narrative. Shockingly, this sleazy reporter held his ground without flinching. Flashing a wicked grin, he declared the media industry ran on absolute garbage, heavily suggesting that if she dropped the attitude, he would totally write favorably. Boom! She violently snatched his collar, growling that her sanity thread just snapped. Panicking, Guol desperately attempted to defuse the ticking bomb, but nobody cared. Noticing the rolling cameras, the shady reporter ruthlessly decided to escalate the dangerous toxicity further. He quietly hissed promises to ruin her reputation if she remained defiant. He brutally threatened to drop a viral headline, claiming she begged for his bed, daring her to keep barking. Bro, that was a massive fatal error. Yorum absolutely snapped, going feral, and roared a bloody promise to violently rip him apart, launching a devastating right hook straight toward his smug skull, as Guol shrieked in absolute terror. Yet, mere milliseconds before impact, a massive palm flawlessly intercepted her blazing strike. Plot twist, our ultimate main character Jite entered the chat. Guol practically collapsed in pure relief, almost screaming his holy name. Jite served an icy glare, grumbling about how these girls instantly dragged him into supreme chaos upon arrival. Yorum aggressively barked back, frantically blaming the absolute trash reporter for starting the war. Jite gave 0 cares. He effortlessly hoisted her up like a lightweight duffel bag, casually tossing her over his broad shoulder. Yorum instantly unleashed a furious drum solo against his spine, screaming for immediate release. But our Sigma male brutally declared the press conference dead, freezing the room. He slowly locked onto the trembling reporter with absolute predator eyes and coldly commanded him to permanently bury today's entire incident. In chat, his murderous aura erupted like a hurricane, pressure so violently heavy that camera lenses instantly exploded, forcing the reporter onto his knees, literally leaking puddles in absolute unadulterated horror. Even feral Yorum, dangling upside down, just stared at his godlike dominance in pure disbelief. He was not here to play games. Jite casually strolled away, hauling Yorum, ordering a stunned Guol to speed up before the bell rang. Backstage, Juhai remained completely frozen, pupils totally dilated, frantically asking her lackey if he witnessed that absolute cinematic insanity. Her assistant nervously suggested they investigate that wild girl's ancient bloodline immediately. However, Juhai harbored an entirely different crazy obsession brewing inside her brain. She stared at Guol, blurting out how her chest could possibly be that massive. Bro, I was utterly speechless. Even Assistant Kim just facepalmed hard. Cut to the lecture hall, where Professor Kai materialized, radiating strict, towering authority. He introduced himself as the Blade Master Professor, declaring the lesson today would focus on the ancient history of swordsmanship and mastering the proper mindset for the blade. Beside Jite, Yorum groaned, rolling her eyes so violently they nearly popped. She dismissed this philosophical trash, demanding to know when the actual bloodbath would begin. Argai was shocked she survived the intro, but Yorum just scoffed, claiming she always endured agonizingly slow dramas. Then her true motive slipped. She craved ultimate power, plotting to absolutely shatter that armored freak Javier herself. She interrogated Jite about why he shadowed her here instead of babysitting Bomb or Guol. He bluntly replied with a brutal truth she already knew deep down. He knew the fiery red dragon would unleash absolute chaos if left unsupervised. Yorum instantly played the victim, swearing she had been a complete angel lately. Bro, not even 5 minutes ago, she nearly obliterated a journalist. Naturally, our main character destroyed her lie, recalling the incident. She deflected aggressively, arguing that garbage humans started it and entirely deserved her wrath. Suddenly, she leaned heavily against Jite, intentionally closing their distance. He shot her his signature freezing glare, ordering her off because she was radiating heat. Yorum smirked wickedly, teasing him. Most dudes would completely lose their minds over this. She teased if he was blushing, but he completely iced her out. Remaining as unresponsive as solid granite, Yorum threw a massive tantrum, visibly insulted that her charm offensive completely failed. She slammed her head down, groaning about dying from sheer boredom. Jite coldly stated academics were never meant to entertain. She snapped back, clarifying she meant his dull personality. Even a hostage-taker should have some flair, she complained, expecting him to be an unhinged psycho, not a soulless brick wall. She had anticipated explosive, adrenaline-fueled adventures alongside him. Instead, she got suffocating domestic vibes. Jite dryly countered that their chaotic morning commute should suffice, but Yorum eyes ignited with pure madness, craving brutal combat and the euphoric rush of destroying enemies. Not this academic torture. Right then, Professor Kai spotted the predatory glint in her gaze. Far from intimidated, he practically smiled. His pupils flared with an eerie, supernatural green aura. Muttering he possessed the perfect remedy for her bloodlust. Before the entire class, he commanded them to remain behind. Yorum glared daggers, radiating pure murderous intent. Yikes, she was totally screwed. Flash forward, Yorum was trapped in the dusty armory, violently scrubbing wooden training blades like a ticking time bomb. Furious, she launched equipment everywhere, screaming that janitor duty was infinitely worse than a brutal beatdown. Her rage intensified with every single agonizing second. Our main character, completely unfazed, told her to stop crying and start polishing, forever seeking shortcuts. She demanded they summon their neat freak guardian to handle this peasant labor. He deadpanned, asking who would protect Guol then. She scowled fiercely, cursing Blue for being useless. Pivoting sharply, she asked if he was a scholar growing up. Jite stated survival left zero time for books. Yorum scoffed, labeling him a meathead, using survival as a pathetic excuse. He revealed his past was an endless, bloody war zone just to breathe. That grim reality instantly silenced her. Unsure if he was bluffing, she wondered what that made her if his nightmare was real. Dropping the attitude, she sparked a cigarette, piercing him with a heavy question. Was life fun? Jite locked eyes with hollow emptiness, explaining reality was never a joyful game. Genuinely baffled, she could not grasp surviving just to exist. She swore if she wielded his godlike strength, she would never stagnate in boredom. She teased his immense power, probably just fried his brain. Looking burdened by centuries, he confessed time drags on relentlessly. Quitting was never an option. She mocked his edgy teenager depression, prompting his icy command to shut up and scrub. Bro, he was completely immune to her tantrums. Later that night, Yorum mindlessly spun a Rubik cube, while their guardian furiously sanitized the room like his soul depended on it. Meanwhile, Bomb and Joel vibed in the background, totally immersed in stacking their toy blocks. The guardian hovered over Yorum like a ghost, and watching her painfully struggle with that puzzle absolutely triggered her rage. Screaming at him to back off and stop ruining her focus, the terrified dude immediately apologized, literally trembling like a leaf. Exhausted, she dramatically face-planted onto the sofa, radiating pure boredom, while the guardian watched her pitifully. Softly, Bomb asked if that annoying journalist drama from earlier still bothered her, but Yorum coldly brushed it off. Existence just felt insanely dull without a blood-pumping brawl. Suddenly, out of absolutely nowhere, she called Bomb Big Sister, basically giving the poor girl a massive heart attack. Bomb panicked, jumping up to ask if she needed an ambulance, completely dumbfounded by what she had just heard. Dropping the respect, Yorum switched right back to calling her you. She sat down, getting super philosophical, asking what truly gave her life purpose. Totally stunned, Bomb leaned over, whispering to Guol that their fiery roommate was finally hitting puberty. Yorum shrieked that she heard everything, snapping at Guol for silently agreeing with that absolute trash. She then ranted about asking Jite what made existence fun, mocking his edgy answer that you simply endure reality because time never stops moving forward. Declaring that the gloomy dude felt zero actual joy, she passionately argued that chasing happiness was the only real point of surviving this world. Pointing at Guol, happily munching away, and Guol, vibing with her teddy bear, she proved that some people actually understood the true assignment of life. Everyone craves pure joy. Defending him, Bomb gently suggested that maybe Jitai just kept his real passions completely hidden. Yorum instantly interrupted, ruthlessly roasting Bomb for being exactly like him, totally secretive, unreadable, and straight up boring. She dared Bomb to name one thrilling thing she enjoyed. Eyes sparkling with mischief, Bomb completely dropped an atomic bomb. She confessed finding Jitai unexpectedly shy. Yorum froze in pure shock before calling cap on that, branding that man a literal cold-blooded sociopath. Smiling softly, Bomb admitted feeling the exact same way initially, but now she genuinely found his hidden side incredibly cute. Shuddering, Yorum called her sweet smile absolutely terrifying. Unable to handle the cringe, she aggressively lunged, ruthlessly tickling Bomb without mercy. As Bomb squealed, desperately thrashing to escape the attack, Yorum loudly interrogated if those two were secretly dating. Meanwhile, Guol just silently judged them. Clutching her plushie, she deeply questioned why these ancient dragons acted so incredibly childish. Honestly, this chaotic crew definitely mastered their own bizarrely unique version of family bonding. Suddenly, Guol rocketed up the stairs like a meteor, screaming that the entire lair community was completely obsessing over Yorum. A whole fan club just dropped for her. But catching those two dragons in a super sus position, she instantly blushed red and nervously apologized for interrupting. Yorum frantically screamed that it was a massive misunderstanding. Fast forward to morning, our boy strapped on his shirt, radiating his usual unbothered aura. Good lord, his physique is absolutely god tier. We all know he is flawlessly majestic. Anyway, the front door violently swung open. Then, a sweet voice called his name as Bomb peeked inside. She looked a little hesitant before admitting she had a favor to ask, but her eyes landed on his 8-pack, and she got flustered, apologizing until GT waved her in. Once he was dressed, Bomb entered, looking sharp in her uniform, and approached him. In a super timid voice, she asked if he'd accompany her today. It was clear she'd summoned all her courage for this. Pouting, she reminded him he always hung out with Yorum and Guol, but had never once gone out with her. She even began to scold him, her puppy dog eyes turned up to the max. The guy tried to reason with her, recalling Yorum's insane violence, and Guol's endless begging for food whenever they were together. Just thinking about it was exhausting, so he prepared to refuse Bomb. But then, Yorum and Guol appeared. Guol questioned why Bomb wasn't heading to school yet, while Yorum insisted she finish her breakfast first. That's when Bomb dropped the bombshell, announcing she was asking their master on a date. Guol looked absolutely floored. Yorum, ever the pragmatist, figured Bomb just needed a guardian. Guol, taking it seriously, asked GT why he'd never gone out with Bomb, pointing out that it looked like he favored her and Yorum. Our boy immediately denied it, but Guol, munching on toast, just giggled, saying favoritism is wrong, but she understood. She brought up her mom, who'd met countless men, but only chose a select few. Yorum was genuinely impressed, calling her mom incredible. Bomb, however, seemed lost in her thoughts, wondering if the men her mom left felt how she was feeling now. When GT asked what she meant, Bomb snapped, saying he'd kidnapped her, only to treat her like she was nothing, like a fisherman ignoring his catch. Her expression was a mix of sadness and deep loneliness. Yorum then cut in, saying she understood why he watched over them, since trouble was their shadow, but she promised to behave this one time, and pleaded with him to go with Bomb. She reminded him that he couldn't just babysit them forever. Our main character considered it, and finally caved. The moment he agreed, Bomb beamed and shot GT, a triumphant wink. She's definitely got a crush on him. Later, at the academy, they stood in a massive, ornate hall, buzzing with students. Nearby, staff murmured about Bomb's beauty and her perfect interview score. They started gossiping about her family, until one guy mocked the U family name as low class. Seriously, what a clown. Our hero sat right behind them, hearing every single word. As class ended, the teacher announced the beginning of social dance training. A collective groan filled the room. The instructor teased their shyness, reminding them this was necessary. since they'd have to attend high society events. She said the real shame would be not knowing how to act in a formal setting. With that, she instructed them all to find a partner. Suddenly, an awkward tension filled the air as students scrambled to pair up while trying to look cool. But here's the strange part. People were stunned that Bomb had no partner, thinking every guy would be rushing to her. Instead, she stood alone, as if an invisible barrier surrounded her. Students whispered that she was just too intimidating, like even approaching her was a daunting task. The professor finally noticed Bomb was still by herself. Bomb nervously confessed she wasn't very popular. The professor kindly offered to be her partner, commenting on how lovely she was. But Bomb did something that shocked everyone. She asked if her guardian could dance with her instead. The stunned professor could only agree. And then, man, Bomb practically teleported to GT's side. She held out her hand, all but yanking him onto the dance floor. He looked slightly irritated, admitting he was terrible at dancing. Bomb just gave him this huge, pleading look, begging him not to abandon her. Our guy was trapped. He just sighed in resignation as the lesson began. The professor told them to hold hands and feel the rhythm. As GT faced Bomb, she shyly looked away, but he was the one who was visibly trembling. She noticed his awkwardness and asked if her touch made him uncomfortable. He denied it with his usual cold demeanor, but when Bomb grabbed his hand firmly, it completely rattled him. She clarified that holding hands didn't mean they were in love or anything, and he coolly replied that he understood. But then, her expression turned serious as she warned him not to screw up and ruin her grade. Now that was a real threat. As they began to dance, their movements flowed surprisingly well. Bomb mused to herself that his palms were sweating like crazy, and not just his hands, but his back and chest too. She had no idea what was making him so tense. Just then, an image of his toned muscles under the fabric flashed in her mind, and her cheeks went completely scarlet. Losing her composure, she stumbled, but our boy caught her just in time. Their faces were suddenly inches apart when a trickle of blood ran from Bomb's nose. Bro, the tension. Just kiss already. A moment later, they were outside. Bomb sipped her juice with a tissue in her nose as GTA asked if she needed a hospital, his voice laced with concern. Bomb, bewildered, insisted she was fine and hadn't hit a thing. But for GTA, it felt odd. What caused the nosebleed? Bomb dodged his gaze, claiming ignorance. She then switched subjects, pointing out that his dancing was far better than she'd imagined. Her eyes narrowed. Have you learned to dance before? A memory flashed in his mind. Dancing flawlessly with another woman at night, promising he would perfect his steps for her. He snapped back to reality and lied to Bomb, denying he'd ever learned. Bomb eyed him with pure suspicion, sipping her juice. She then asked about his after-school plans. Hearing none, she tied up her hair, a fire igniting in her eyes as she told him to join her for some fun. Meanwhile, in Moscow, Russia, things were anything but calm. Inside a sinister demon lab run by the Invisibility Syndicate, alarms blared as the facility descended into panic. Scientists scrambled for their lives, some slipping in pools of blood. One screamed that their operation had gone to hell. Total anarchy. One female researcher, with a clear demonic aura, sprinted down the corridors, desperate to escape. Panic seized her. What kind of monster had just appeared and unleashed this utter destruction? She reached a door, but the lock held fast. She wasn't foolish. She knew there was no way. Their pathetic security could stop this threat. She reached for her comms, but before she could call for backup, boom! A shadow materialized behind her. GTA, cold and menacing in all black, asked where she was off to in such a rush. The woman froze in terror, shaking, trapped between a predator and a dead end. She stammered, asking what he could possibly want from her. GTA's eyes flared with an ominous blue light. Yeah, it was about to go down. He cut straight to the point, asking if her boss was seeking something of his particular interest, a demonic weapon known as Prototype X. The woman refused, her panic escalating, screaming she would die before betraying them. Our hero wasted no time. A shadowy hand shot out, seizing her throat. As darkness coiled around her, he remarked coldly that all demons reveal their true nature, right before death. His gaze was piercing as he thought about how, when the pain truly sets in, these creatures drop their human facade and become little more than broken dolls. A pathetic sight. He lifted her effortlessly, telling her with chilling sarcasm to go dance alone in the moonlight. Absolutely savage. With the demon slain, our hero stood over the corpse, blood dripping from his fingertips. Then, he called out to his master, and there he was, the shadow agent, looking completely solid and real. The shadow reported to GTA that Prototype X was already at the leader's main headquarters, complicating things, since the new prototype is a girl, unlike in the previous timeline. GTA commanded the shadow to assume the dead researcher's form and infiltrate Invisibility's primary base. To learn Prototype X's true nature, the shadow loyally accepted, preparing to go deep undercover. The scene snaps back to our hero, waiting inside a clothing shop. This prototype X is a demonic human hybrid, formed by fusing numerous demons and possessing the strongest human it consumes. The longer this creature survives, the more humans it absorbs, evolving into an ever-growing threat. That's why our hero always eliminates prototype X first in every regression. But this time, the intel is different from the last timeline, making the search a nightmare. Even the vintage clock confirmed that some malevolent force had tampered with the world's timeline. But it didn't matter. He would destroy X, no matter what, and let nothing disturb his daily life. And at this very moment, our hero faced a different kind of danger. Bomb, the green dragon, called him from a fitting room, wanting to show him something. He turned, expecting something simple. He was wrong. Bomb emerged, rocking an incredibly bold, black swimsuit under a sheer cover, asking with a grin how it looked. Bro, this girl is a certified menace. GTA averted his eyes, asking what on earth she was doing. Bomb just laughed, saying summer was coming and she needed a new suit. And then she did it. She invited him into the fitting room for a closer inspection. Barely able to see inside, our boy deadpans. So this was your idea of fun? Because if so, you've definitely pranked me. Bomb just pouts, insisting it's a blast for her. But Jatae's voice drops, dead serious, warning her not to push her jokes too far. Or else, she'd meet a side of him she wouldn't like. He wasn't playing, but Bomb just doubles down on the teasing. As they exit the store, she hums, casually asking if she should just buy that swimsuit. Jatae immediately tries to pivot, suggesting they head home if she's finished, but Bomb's playful vibe vanishes, reminding him of their actual mission. They were supposed to be buying gifts for the other dragon girls. Our hero blinks, caught off guard. Gifts? Bomb explains that Guol's favorite teddy bear is practically falling apart, so she needs a new one, and everyone else deserves a present too. He asks what she had in mind for the others. Bomb says Guol's world revolves around clothes and nothing else, so a high-quality wallet is perfect for when she starts going out with friends. For Yorum, Bomb had already asked her yesterday. Yorum wanted something from a movie, but it was a seriously weird request, so Bomb proposes they divide and conquer. She'll handle the gifts for Guol and Yorum, while he's in charge of finding Guol's new teddy bear. He agrees in a heartbeat, no doubt thrilled to escape the swimsuit madness. As he walks away, Bomb watches him go, a flicker of doubt in her eyes. Was entrusting a gift mission to someone like him a good idea? Even she seemed worried. And with that, our boy steps into a toy store. The salesgirl behind the counter is dying of boredom until he walks in. Her eyes scan him, and she thinks, damn. The guy looked to be in his late 20s or early 30s, tall, well-built, and frankly, ridiculously handsome. She clocks that he's alone and probably clueless about kids' gifts. A spark ignites in her eyes. Seeing an easy mark for a big commission, she approaches with her sweetest smile, asking how old the child is. Jatae, already holding a teddy bear, replies that she's around 4. The employee beams, clapping her hands and calling it the most adorable age. She then pries, asking if it's his daughter. Our main character says no, just a kid he knows. The employee presses on, guessing he's the uncle and laying on the praise, saying few uncles bother to choose presents themselves. She confidently promises the kid will love it. Our MC gives her a blank stare, but she was already deep into her sales pitch, showcasing elaborate roleplay toys and insisting that hospital games would make them instant best friends, or something to that effect. She even pushes a doctor set on him, dangling a 10% discount if he bought it with the other kits. A classic upsell. Jatae just stands there, processing it all. But the moment he pictured little Guol in a nurse outfit, he caved. The man agreed on the spot. The employee was ecstatic, likely feeling like she just hit the jackpot. Moments later, he was buried under a mountain of boxes and gifts, following her to the checkout counter. She reassures him that while the price tag might seem steep, it was a priceless investment in the child's development, and he'd surely be thanked for it later. At the register, she asks if he'll pay by card. Jatae agrees, but when he presents a black card, the kind reserved for the mega wealthy, her jaw nearly hits the floor. It all clicked. Now she understood why he'd agreed to everything so easily. In her mind, he transformed from a clueless guy into a certified, scorching hot millionaire. Her thoughts raced. Was he married? Maybe she could make a move. Feigning shyness, she shoots her shot, asking if he has a girlfriend. But before a word could leave his lips, Bomb materialized out of nowhere, latching onto his arm and calling his name. Her eyes widened at the mountain of toys as she asked in disbelief if he really bought all of it. The employee's face fell instantly. Assuming Bomb was the girlfriend, her fantasy shattered right there, and Bomb was clearly not amused. She demanded to know why he bought a pile of junk when they only needed one doll for Guol. It then dawned on the employee, oh, maybe this girl was his little sister. She scrambled to save her commission, saying that the child might just need time to warm up to the toys, but Bomb shut her down cold. Her expression darkened, and a dangerous aura radiated from her as she informed the employee that Guol does not like those kinds of toys. She then picked up a simple teddy bear, explaining this one was perfect because it resembled the doll Guol already had, so it wouldn't feel strange to her. At this, Jate sheepishly admitted that was the one he originally intended to buy. Then, turning to the salesgirl with a dazzling smile, Bomb sweetly asked if they could get a VIP discount on just the bear instead. Cut to that night at home, and the girls are absolutely losing their minds over the gifts. Guol and Yorum were shrieking with joy at the sight of multiple luxury gift bags on the floor. Perched on top of it all was the new brown teddy bear. Guol was dancing around, tears of joy in her eyes as she clutched her brand new wallet, gushing about how much she now loved Bomb and JT. She confessed she'd always wanted that wallet, but never dared. Meanwhile, Yorum stood there, holding her own gift, and Jewel was gazing at her new bear with pure wonder. Little Jewel then asked Yorum what present she received, since Guol received the doll. Yorum had to see what was inside her bag, discovering she'd actually gotten adult toys, just as she'd requested. She held up a pair of handcuffs and a whip, a purely demonic grin spreading across her face. Calling Jewel monkey, she beckoned her closer to try something new, but Jewel immediately noped out of there, sprinting away in a full-blown panic. Yorum gave chase with the cuffs as Jewel shrieked for someone to save her, like it was the apocalypse. The whole scene sounded like something from a horror flick. Through it all, our boy just watched from the sidelines, with little Jewel held safely in his lap. She clutched her new teddy, looking completely content. For a moment, our boy could finally breathe. Just then, Bomb approached with a small box, telling him it was also for him. Opening it, he discovered a navy blue necktie. She explained she'd noticed he always wore the same old tie. She then promised that once she was earning her own money, she would buy him an entire new suit. He quietly thanked her, then asked if she had bought anything for herself, just as he had instructed her to. Bomb confirmed that she had. He pressed to know what it was, but she just gave him a sly little smile, a bright grin, and said she'd show him later. A little sus, right? That girl was definitely plotting something. A few weeks flash by, and the scene shifts to the janitor entering the room. He finds the guardian, JT, dressed and preparing to leave. Our main character informs him directly that he'll be gone for about 3 days and that the janitor must watch over Jewel in his absence. The janitor questioned if it was a long trip, and our protagonist confirmed that it was, adding that Yorum would be accompanying him. The story then cuts to a bustling square, packed with students. A massive event was kicking off a demon combat simulation. Students were milling about in their squads, all decked out in sci-fi gear. A purple gate materialized, and an announcer explained it was for survival training. Inside a virtual dungeon for 3 days and 2 nights. The students had to operate in teams of 3, with a guardian issuing commands as the operator. It was just like a real-life monster raid. And now, the operator role was JT's new assignment, so he equipped his headset and prepared to take command. Yorum scoffed at the nervous students, remarking that they all looked petrified, and wondering if any had ever witnessed a real battle. JT shot her a warning, telling her not to get cocky, but she just brushed him off. He reminded her this wasn't a solo mission, she had to find a squad. But Yorum was adamant, saying she'd only party up with people she approved of. Right then, 2 other students, a guy and a girl, approached them nervously. The guy politely asked if Yorum might consider joining their team, seeing as she was still available. Yorum, in typical fashion, completely lost it, called them losers, and told them to scram. But our main character intervened, asking for their names. The guy introduced himself as Hisaki Sojiro, and the girl as Kim Ji-un. They both bowed, vowing to do their best and not be a burden. Yorum just shrieked at them again, still trying to drive them away, but JT simply spoke, understood into his headset, officially forming the team. Yorum was floored, yelling that she had never agreed to this. He just silenced her with an ice-cold glare, and told her to find another team if she had a problem. In the end, her hands were tied, so she grumbled that this was a total drag but complied anyway. Honestly, teamwork is just not in her vocabulary. She then welcomed them to the team, and let's just say it wasn't warm. She laid out the rules immediately, stating that if they got in her way during combat, they were as good as dead. Poor Hisaki immediately started stammering, and actually managed to thank her, but he couldn't even finish before someone cracked him from behind. Out of nowhere, some shady-looking blonde dude appeared and slapped him hard across the head, so hard the kid almost burst into tears. This punk called Hisaki a loser, and brought up an old threat about killing him if he interfered again. Hisaki just apologized, trembling from head to toe. Ji-un, however, remained as cold as ice, which clearly annoyed the punk. He sneered, asking why she was so quiet while her boyfriend was apologizing for them both. Then, like a total creep, he grabbed a fistful of her hair and yanked her head up, but Ji-un only glared back, her eyes burning with a silent death stare. The punk's buddy warned him to chill, pointing out the guardians were nearby. But this guy, whose name was Johnny, just scoffed, saying the adults couldn't care less about orphans. Johnny continued to taunt Jiun, telling her to move her bangs because she looked too gloomy, and then tried to force them aside himself. But that was a huge mistake. Yorum stepped forward, her eyes blazing, demanding to know what he just said about orphans. Johnny froze solid. A jolt of recognition hit him. He knew exactly who this red-haired girl was. It was Yorum, the notorious psycho of the Blue Dragon dorms. Yorum repeated her question, her voice growing sharper, more menacing by the second, demanding an answer. Johnny was already sweating bullets, recalling the grave warnings from his family. Basically, the elders had warned him to avoid Yorum at all costs, unless he wanted to get every tooth knocked out. So, trying to act unfazed, Johnny explained that orphans were simply lair students without a guardian. He then shot a smug glance toward Hisaki and Jean, and added it was just slang for losers with no one to back them up. The realization dawned on Yorum. She understood why her team was so weak. They were the bottom feeders of the academy. She muttered an angry curse under her breath, not thrilled to be stuck with them. Then Johnny took his stupidity to a whole new level. He casually placed a hand on Yorum's shoulder like they were close friends, and suggested she abandon her team to join his instead. He even offered to make a special spot for her. His teammates, however, were visibly against the idea. But Johnny figured that even if Yorum was totally unhinged, her power was an incredible asset, and he wanted that on his side. Seriously, dude, this clueless blonde was provoking the absolute wrong person. Yorum just glared at him, silent. Johnny actually thought she might agree, and maybe she was just as unhinged as he was. He was about to celebrate his victory, but then, wham! Yorum slammed her fist right into his face, zero warning. Everyone went wild. His friends, her teammates, even Hisaki and Jean were completely stunned. Yorum casually brushed her shoulder as if wiping off some filth, and then glared down at Johnny, who was cradling his face and groaning. She then asked him if he wanted to die, and berated him for putting his filthy hand on her. She said he had to be insane to think they were anywhere near close. Johnny was so shocked, he wanted to fight back, but pure fear held him back. Yorum warned him that next time, he would be dead for real. Johnny could only retreat in fury, and everyone could tell he was completely spooked. Even Yorum's own teammates looked at her, as if she was an actual demon. Not far off, Jutai watched the entire scene unfold, totally calm. But before things could escalate, the school's announcement blared from the speakers, ordering all students to prepare. Suddenly, a massive gate materialized, and Professor Kai appeared to explain the event rules. He announced that everyone would be divided into teams, starting at various locations, inside a virtual dungeon. He explained points were awarded for every action, including kills and deaths, and even damage dealt. Rankings would be displayed live for everyone to track. There was one critical rule: if a student died, they would respawn elsewhere after 3 hours, so they had to be cautious. The dungeon itself was called the Ant Tunnel. To conclude, the professor wished them luck and ordered everyone to move out. So, Yorum and her team stepped through the portal and into the dungeon. She glanced around, impressed by the lifelike environment. She was amped up, ready to start fighting immediately, but Jin stopped her, asking if she even knew how to locate the other teams. Yorum simply replied that if they just moved around, they would eventually encounter someone. But Jin wasn't convinced. She explained they couldn't just charge in blindly, since they lacked Yorum's superior speed and stamina. She warned that recklessness would only get them ambushed. Yorum rolled her eyes and mocked her, thinking Jin was just broadcasting her own weakness. Jin wanted to strategize first, but Yorum immediately labeled her a coward and told them to simply cover her while she handled the fighting alone. Jin fired back that this was supposed to be a team event, not a solo mission. Suddenly, a dangerous fire lit up in Yorum's eyes, and she reminded them that they were only on her team, out of her own pity, so they shouldn't get bold now. Hisaki tried to calm the tense atmosphere, but the situation was already a disaster. That's when our main character spoke up. He asked if Jin had a specific target for the number of teams to eliminate, then asked how many squads the girls wanted him to crush for them. Jin stared at him like he was insane, calling his proposal impossible. She said other operators would never expose their locations so easily. Yorum, however, caught on immediately, a wild look of excitement on her face. She turned to Jutai and said she wanted to eliminate every single team they encountered. The scene then cuts to another part of the dungeon. Johnny was there, still holding his nose, complaining about the pain. His teammates started chewing him out for foolishly provoking Yorum, especially after their families had warned them all. Johnny tried to play it off, saying he was just being friendly and didn't expect her to snap. His friend asked if he really planned on kicking someone out for Yorum, but Johnny panicked, insisting he was only testing her. He vowed to tear Yorum apart the next time he saw her. But then, an eerie voice drifted down from overhead, repeating his own threat, "Tear me apart?" Johnny looked up and there she was, Yorum, dropping right on top of them. Sword drawn, a chilling grin spread across her face. She practically dared him to even try. In a flash, a brutal kick connected with Johnny's face, instantly cratering his HP as the ground trembled from the force. Johnny's crew cried ambush, drawing their weapons in a panic, but Yorum landed gracefully in a low crouch, a mocking laugh escaping her lips. This wasn't a fight, she told them. Her eyes blazed crimson, her grin widening into something from a nightmare. This, she declared, was a one-sided hunt. Those poor fools were finished. One of Johnny's lackeys unleashed a blast from his high-tech rifle, but Yorum sidestepped it effortlessly, her blade gleaming with deadly intent. The guy shrieked, begging her to stay back, but his pleas were useless. She deflected his energy blast like swatting a fly. He never even saw her move, and then, bam. A single, vicious slash and his HP bar evaporated into nothing. The guy was utterly outclassed. Next up, a challenger with a massive greatsword charged and screaming, foolishly thinking size was everything. He brought it down in a heroic arc, but what a joke. Yorum's grin only widened as she effortlessly overpowered his strike. She even mocked him, asking if he truly thought he could match her in raw power. With a final, crimson-infused blow, she launched him into the air. Another health bar shattered. You almost pity them, but they totally had it coming. And so, Yorum stood amidst the wreckage of her foes, an expression of sheer boredom on her face. She sighed, complaining that it wasn't even a decent warm-up. What an absolute savage. Scanning the field, she asked if that was all, but her teammate Hisaki noted that Johnny was still breathing, cowering on the ground in a pathetic heap. Poor guy. His face was completely mangled. With a bloody nose and broken teeth, he managed a weak smile, begging her to spare his face. His plea fell on deaf ears. Yorum delivered one final, brutal kick, extinguishing his health bar for good. That's the price for running your mouth. Nearby, Hisaki was losing his mind, stunned that Yorum soloed the entire team. Jean stared at Yorum in awe, finally understanding her infamous reputation. But even more impressive was the mastermind behind the operation, our main character. The fact he was keeping pace without mana was unbelievable, since operators were forbidden from using magic here. Jean mused that his timing for the ambush was flawless, his tracking and commands on a whole other level. She couldn't help but wonder if he was secretly a first-tier operator. The man barely seemed to be trying, while the rest of them were completely hyped. A system message flashed. Team 37 had been eliminated. They would respawn in 3 hours at a new location. Hisaki was ecstatic. One team down, and they'd already jumped to 6th place. Jean, however, noted that most teams hadn't even engaged yet, as the simulation had just begun. But Hisaki couldn't stop gloating about Yorum's flawless victory. He even tried to give her some props, but that was a huge mistake. The moment he called her amazing, Yorum seized his face, squeezing his cheeks mercilessly. Her expression turned furious. Eyes blazing red, she roared, asking what he had to be happy about when all he did was watch. From the sidelines, she berated them both, demanding to know if their weapons were just for show since they provided zero backup. Hisaki and Jean could only stare at the ground, ashamed. She wasn't about to celebrate 6th place. She screamed that their goal was 1st place and nothing less. Her teammates could barely manage a nod, wishing the earth would swallow them whole. Meanwhile, back at the dorm, baby Gil sat on the floor, clutching her teddy bear and thinking of Gitai. In the background, the janitor sported a pink apron while cleaning. What a truly bizarre household. 2 days pass, and the scene shifts to Lair Academy's mock dungeon control room, gleaming under a perfect sky. A professor named Kwan Gitai lounged with his coffee, casually chatting with his assistant. He inquired about the current rankings. His assistant reported Team 1 in the lead, but Team 50, Yorum's squad, was hot on their heels. The professor was stunned, muttering about that crazy girl Yorum, shocked her team was in second. The assistant credited their operator, our MC, for carrying the team, highlighting their incredibly aggressive route on the map. Professor Gite, a former operator himself, seemed a bit offended, but admitted he'd never heard of anyone like our protagonist. The professor grew suspicious, noting that the main character's background check was suspiciously flawless, as if it had been wiped. He began to suspect something deeper was going on with this team, with Yorum, Bomb, and their enigmatic guardian. But that wasn't all. The assistant pointed out another oddity. Team 1's path never crossed with the 3rd or 4th place teams, almost like coordinated avoidance. Professor Gitai mused that smart tactics aren't cheating, unless, of course, they deliberately refuse to fight when their paths do cross. And that's a problem. He was clearly waiting for the drama to unfold. Down in the dungeon, Yorum was about to erupt. She slammed her fist into the floor, shattering the stone, and roared at her team, demanding why they were still second despite having 0 deaths. Hisaki, wrapped in bandages, muttered that 2nd place was perfectly fine. But Yorum wasn't having it. First or nothing, she declared, kicking the ground and sending debris flying. Just her aura was draining his HP. Jean tried to de-escalate, saying they were exhausted and should be cautious with time running out. For a fleeting moment, Yorum's fierce expression actually softened. Patting Jean's shoulder, she admitted they'd improved. A flicker of relief crossed Jean's face. But then Yorum's rage returned. "And that's why you're losers," she snarled, grabbing her by the collar. She demanded if they knew why everyone looked down on them. It wasn't for being outcasts, but for giving up the second it got hard. Branding them losers in the harshest way, she reminded them of their promise not to be dead weight. So get up and stop being pathetic. Trembling, Jean and Hisaki swore they would fight for first place. Yorum loomed between them like a final boss, her sword resting on her shoulder, while her teammates looked ready to bolt. Our main character simply watched, completely calm, awaiting the next move. He said, "If the soap opera's over, you'll want to see this." Looking at the wall, Yorum suddenly sensed something was very wrong. She noted how strange it was that the top teams never clashed, concluding they were using signs on the walls. Hisaki remembered hearing rumors that seniors formed secret pacts to avoid each other in these competitions. They figured Team 1 must be using that tactic now. Jean suggested they should probably report it to the professors, but Yorum just flashed a terrifying grin. She had a much better idea, a way to completely destroy their plans. The look on her face was dead serious. "Yeah, if I were those seniors, I'd be sweating right now. The Red Dragon isn't someone you provoke." Meanwhile, Team 1 strutted through the creepy cave, acting like kings for holding the #1 spot. The blonde on their team checked his wrist. About 40 minutes remained. He asked if Team 50, Yorum's crew, was still stuck in second. The red-haired girl confirmed they were, but insisted there was absolutely nothing to worry about. She guaranteed they would win, so long as they didn't make any foolish mistakes. The blonde admitted he'd heard Yorum was skilled, but he was shocked a first year was performing this well, admitting it would have been dangerous without their prior arrangements. You could practically feel the smugness radiating off him. Their leader, Myung-ho, suddenly shot him a death glare. The red-haired girl fired back at the blonde, yelling that there was no way anyone was better than their leader. She got way too triggered over it, honestly. She called him a pig and told him to watch his mouth. That was a little much. Myung-ho, heir to a prestigious sword clan, warned them all not to get cocky. He declared the test wasn't over, revealing he needed first place so the clan head would finally acknowledge he was better than his rival, Yong Tae-ha. The guy was dealing with some serious family drama, and just like that, their world descended into a nightmare. The walls were now plastered with their secret codes. Team 1 stared in absolute shock. With markings everywhere, they had no idea where to go. Total panic erupted. The blonde guy was losing his mind, screaming about who the hell would deface the entire cave. In the middle of their freak-out, other teams appeared, equally lost. Team 1 recognized them as Team 3, their supposed allies. But now, it seemed they'd have to fight them for real, just to keep up the facade for the professors. The blonde whispered about faking a loss, but Myung-ho shot that down. Their professor wasn't an idiot. He would definitely spot the cheat. Yeah, that plan was completely cooked. Without hesitating, he simply ordered them to eliminate the other teams. So a real battle was about to break out, the tension skyrocketing. High on a ledge, our girl Yorum watched the chaos, the biggest evil grin on her face. She was loving every second of this. Her teammates, Hisaki and Jean, looked absolutely terrified though. He couldn't process that her plan to sabotage the top teams had actually worked. Jean asked if Yorum was serious about using this insane strategy on their seniors. Yorum just smirked, telling them to keep adding more markings to sow confusion. She declared she was off to hunt for points, and if she stumbled upon Team 1, well, she would just have to crush them. A classic Yorum move. Jean then asked what they should do if they ran into another team. Yorum waved it off, saying she'd lend them this guy, meaning our MC, to act as their bodyguard. In the back, our guy was thinking, "Bro, am I just a rental item to these kids?" He looked less than pleased, but Yorum was all smiles, waiting for his validation. She kept bugging him, asking if her plan wasn't brilliant. Our main character remained stone-faced, before admitting her idea wasn't half bad. She was absolutely gloating, certain her strategy was a stroke of genius. And it was clever, not that she needed his validation. She was just flexing. Down below, the battlefield erupted. Myung-ho and Team 1 went on a rampage, crushing the other squads. When a teammate reported her virtual death, he simply brushed it off. Extra points were all that mattered. His focus was locked on victory, but just as he tasted it, a voice from above declared their survival was anything but guaranteed. That's right, Yorum descended like a demon, sword drawn, her red hair a blaze of glory. She was the true villain of this chaos, and she looked ready to burn it all down. Yorum's team provided cover fire, with Hisaki and Jean perched on the cliffs. Myung-ho instantly recognized her, the infamous first year, who was wrecking the rankings. He ordered his injured ally to eliminate Hisaki and Jean. On the high ground, the blonde teammate protested, arguing they could win by just stalling. But Myungho's glare intensified. His eyes flared with a menacing purple aura, a silent command to fall in line. The blonde grumbled but shot off to obey, leaving a streak of energy in his wake. Reaching the cliff, he faced Hisaki and Jean, telling them he was in a hurry. He told them to make their deaths quick. The two wisely screamed and bolted straight for our main character. Smart move, hiding behind the big guy. As the blonde hunter pursued them with frenzied rage, Jete effortlessly shut him down with a single kick. So much for all that bravado. Meanwhile, the main event between Myungho and Yorum finally began. Myungho roared that he was the opponent, worthy of her attention. Yorum responded with a brutal kick that sent him spiraling through the air. He asked if she was truly Yorum. Admitting her disruption of his plan was impressive, but she just scoffed, saying his strategy was pathetic to begin with. She called him a fool right to his face, absolutely savage. Myungho staggered up, a storm of blue energy erupting from him. He declared that she should learn to accept second place because the top belongs to the house of Young. But Yorum, her blade humming with a crimson aura, just gave a chilling smirk. No, second place was reserved for them. Perched on a rock, Jete watched with his typical deadpan expression, just wishing this whole drama would end. Well, great, because Jete drew Yorum's focus. 3 other students were now on the run. Jiro and Jean were sprinting, as if their lives depended on it. Hot on their heels was the massive blonde guy from Team 1, shouting for them to stop while he was still feeling merciful. Jean desperately tried to motivate Sojiro, guessing the big guy had to be low on stamina from his previous fights. If they could just outlast him, they might have a shot. But Sojiro was completely gassed, barely registering her words, panting and drenched in sweat. Jean glanced over at him, and honestly, she was shocked. The kid looked like he had aged 10 years. He nearly collapsed, telling her to go on without him. He couldn't take another step, but her glare was like ice. Giving up wasn't an option. Did he really want to face Yorum's wrath for quitting? Even on the verge of collapse, Sojiro knew she was right. He wouldn't surrender. The fear of Yorum was a powerful motivator. He mustered his last ounce of strength for a counterattack, drawing his bow in an epic pose. He vowed to not be underestimated, but his arrow flew with all the force of a wet noodle. Even the blonde pursuer just stared as it wobbled toward him, completely bewildered. Sojiro could only panic, blaming his weak shot on having to mark the walls earlier. The blonde guy was furious. He roared that Sojiro had scared him for nothing, and landed a devastating punch that instantly wiped out all his HP. Game over. Jean stood frozen with her gun raised, watching Sojiro fade out and calling him a moron. But the blonde wasn't finished. He lunged, slamming her to the ground, screaming that she was just more trash. He pinned her down, sneering that they both forgot their place, after lucking into second. But she just stared back, blood trickling down her face. Suddenly, her eyes ignited with a brilliant blue light. She asked if he seriously believed second place was their goal. Then, with a chilling smile, she said sorry, but they were only interested in first. Her weapon pulsed with the sniper's blessing, unleashing a massive beam of blue energy straight at his face. The guy flinched, but incredibly, the shot missed. The pig grunted that he was almost scared for a second, then started ranting that they didn't deserve first place. If she couldn't even aim her magic weapon. Jean, still pinned and bleeding, just gave him a tired look. Like, what on earth was this idiot talking about? To prove her point, she smirked, revealing her true target was always above him. And right on cue, a massive chunk of rock from the ceiling crashed down onto his head. The blonde realized too late he was never the target. She was targeting the stone above him. And it worked. The system declares his HP has dropped to 0. It's truly over for him now. Jean slumps to the ground, using the defeated foe for support, a faint smile on her bruised face. She whispers Yorum's name, admitting she genuinely gave it her all this time. Deep within the cave, the rest of Team 1 begins to stir. Their operator checks on the red-haired girl. She's awake, but asks what became of their team. He informs her the blonde guy is dead, and that Myungho is still in the middle of a battle. But one glance at the fight sent a shiver down her spine. She was horrified to see their leader was actually being overpowered. Now, let's dive into that clash. Myungho is on one knee, looking utterly beaten, while Yorum stands over him, sword ready. Seriously? Is that everything you've got? She sounds bored, even disappointed. Our girl was hoping for a real challenge. She tells him not to use his previous battle as an excuse. But Myungho isn't finished. He grinds his teeth, snarling that he's fought like a cornered animal until now, and she has no right to call it over. The fight reignites. Myungho shouts some insult about her inferior family, but Yorum just vaults clean over him, smashing his face into the dirt, declaring he's the only loser here. Suddenly, Blue energy crackles to life around Myung-ho. Yorum is surprised. She was sure she'd ended it, yet he's still moving and even blocked her strike. He lets loose a savage roar, blue aura erupting and blasting Yorum back. He rises, glowing with power, admitting Yorum is far stronger than he imagined. But your swordsmanship is sloppy, he sneers, promising to show her the true gap between them. Yorum just stares, thinking, bro, you've been getting absolutely styled on this entire time. Before she can finish the thought, Myung-ho leaps high into the air, unleashing the secret sword arts of his clan. He activates a classic longsword technique, Yang House Sword Arts. First form, Rising Dragon. A colossal dragon of pure blue energy materializes behind him. Every spectator is losing their mind. Even Jitae, our main character, just watches from a rock, perfectly calm, but perhaps intrigued. Myung-ho's attack is a maelstrom. Yorum's health plummets as the energy slams into her. The pain is real, but internally, she's absolutely thrilled. She thinks to herself that this sword technique is legitimately incredible. Myung-ho charges for another strike, boasting that true skill is what matters, and that the artless have no place before his sword clan. He unleashes a second devastating move. The cave descends into chaos. Yorum and Myung-ho collide midair, a storm of blue and red energy, and the very ground shatters beneath them. Myung-ho lands, panting, shocked he was forced to use a technique of this caliber. He reflects on his years of grueling training, thinking how the clan elders will finally acknowledge he's surpassed that other prodigy, his brother, Yong Tae-ha. Classic hunter family issues. But he glances down and freezes. Where is his sword? It has been literally shattered. And now, Yorum is right behind him, chomping on Myung-ho's broken blade like a dog with a stick, red aura crackling as she smirks like she owns the world. She taunts him. Looking for this? Holding up his broken sword, he completely snaps, screaming that she stole his blade. After all his talk about his legendary clan, Yorum just mocks him relentlessly, saying a famous sword clan without a sword is nothing but a bunch of fools. Then she goes wild, announcing her own insane U-House sword arts, 990, 9th form, shutting up a yapper, and pummels him into the ground. Bro, I am actually dying right now. This is hilarious, and Yorum is such a legendary character. Imagine trolling your opponent by faking their sword style and calling them a yapper. Our queen, for real. Myung-ho is just a heap on the ground, utterly defeated, muttering that this can't be real, that it's not an actual sword skill. Whatever, dude, you got wrecked. The system confirms it. His HP hits 0. After that legendary fight, Yorum stands, breathing heavily, grinning as if she just won the championship. She keeps repeating, I finally got first place, totally drained but unbelievably happy. Then she collapses. But thank God, our boy is there to catch her like a true pro. Jitae, with his usual poker face, asks how it feels to be number 1. She looks up, barely conscious, but her smile never fades as she says she's so freaking exhausted and needs Gaio's healing. The system displays the final rankings. Yorum's team has officially secured first place. Our hero says, it's time to head home, but outside, snow has begun to fall. Huh? How is there snow in this season? Yorum even complains that the cold snow will make their injuries ache even more. Meanwhile, outside the dungeon, snow falls on a bright, sunny day in the city. Yeah, definitely strange, right? Guol sits at a table with her cute cat mug, watching the snowflakes drift past her window. She explains to someone it's because of a certain person. It seems that when a blue dragon feels lonely or sad, pure white snow materializes around them. So yeah, Guol was not having a good day. Eyeing the janitor, Guol hatched a plan to cheer up the blue baby. The janitor replied that he understood completely, but he questioned if this look would truly melt Guol's heart. Bro, I just can't with this. The fearsome knight looked like a clown in a pink apron with caked-on makeup. He was giving Sailor Moon vibes, but if she were cursed to be a Wally wannabe, Guol grinned, dragging him along and declaring that all the kids adore this character now. The janitor followed, moving stiffly like a statue, while making what he presumed were cute noises. Pa-pang-pang. This was truly a new low for the knight. When they finally reached Guol, she was sitting alone, her face a blank slate as she drew in her notebook. The knight abruptly appeared, trying to get her to play princess. He then formed a heart shape with his hands, complete with floating pink hearts. Yeah, it was beyond cringe. Guol stared at him as if he were an alien, which, to be fair, is basically true. Then she snapped her crayon clean in half. No joke. I'd be furious too if some huge guy showed up like that. Bomb arrived asking what on earth was happening, and the janitor confessed. He dressed as a cartoon character to make Guol happy, as Guol whispered to herself that they were busted. Bomb, ever the voice of reason, informed the janitor that he was more likely to scare Guol, looking like that, so he should go wash up. The janitor looked absolutely crushed, saying Guol promised the dragon would love it, but the yellow-haired brat played innocent and denied everything. The poor man let out a sad whimper and shuffled away. He was later seen showering in his full armor, water cascading over his helmet. He was definitely questioning his life choices. Meanwhile, Jitai was approaching the house with Yorum, who was cursing up a storm about the bizarre May snowfall. Suddenly, Guol sprinted towards them, waving excitedly, exclaiming that it had felt like an eternity. Yorum saw her opportunity. With a sly look, she told Guol that, yes, they even brought her a special present. Then she plunged a snowball right down the back of Guol's shirt. Guol shrieked about how cold it was, but Yorum claimed there was also dog poop in it. Guol's freakout intensified, while Yorum just cackled. Yeah, Guol totally lost this one. Meanwhile, Bom and Guol watched the mayhem unfold. Little Guol was holding Bom's hand. Bom, sweet as always, told our MC he did a great job, to which he just replied, yeah. Then little Guol showed her drawing to GT, a vibrant stick figure family portrait including everyone. Bom explained who was who, and pointed out that the one holding Guol was GT himself. Our hero gazed at the drawing for a long moment, and unbelievably, he actually smiled. It was faint, but it was there. It was a perfectly wholesome moment. Man, I never thought our Sung Jin-woo type hero, GT, could actually smile. That moment needed to be framed. Anyway, riding this happy wave, our protagonist suddenly suggested they take a trip for 2 days and 1 night. Hearing this, Bom's face lit up, thinking he was in a good mood because of Guol. GT looked away, his expression suddenly stern, muttering it wasn't exactly that. But seriously, dude, we all know he's going soft for his little family. Suddenly, Guol looked up at him, her eyes sparkling with a massive grin. She was 100% ready for this vacation. She was the absolute cutest. Meanwhile, across the city, because her heart was no longer sad and lonely, the snow finally ceased. The city's inhabitants were stunned by the extraordinary weather event. Now the scene jumps over to Russia. Yeah, it's random, but trust the process. The location is Severbaikalsk, a remote place far to the north. It was once a military site, but now it lies completely deserted. The squad, GT and his dragons, arrived in a white car, taking in the breathtaking scenery of a bright blue lake and forests. Mountains framed the beautiful view. Guol ran about in a large straw hat and white dress, exclaiming how pretty it all was. She asked how GT even discovered this place. GT, with his usual deadpan expression, said he found it while clearing a dungeon. Classic him, discovering a secret paradise in the middle of a monster raid. Yorum, however, was sprawled out in the car looking annoyed. She complained about why they couldn't just teleport, but Bom said a drive was nice sometimes. Without warning, GT headed off to pitch the tents and prep the food, telling the others to go play by the water. Our girl Bom offered to help, but he hit her with the, "You're the oldest, you have to watch Guol" line. Bom looked so let down, but you could tell this red dragon was already scheming up something mischievous. Out in the forest, GT immediately got to work, building his camp and gathering mushrooms for the night. A rare sight indeed, he actually seemed to be enjoying himself. His brow furrowed in concentration as he chose some strange-looking mushrooms. Man, that thing has to be lethally toxic. He gets back to find the girls already suited up for the pool. They're kicking back, munching on snacks, having an absolute blast. I'm honestly starting to wonder if this manhwa is rated M. Anyway, Jita can't help himself. His lock onto Bom's swimsuit. She spins around with a mischievous smirk, telling him it's the one from the store. Then she drops the bomb, teasing that he was just dying to see her in a bikini. Jita instantly freezes over and turns away. He coldly tells her to go get dressed. Yorum erupts in laughter, asking if he's flustered, and finally sees them as women. She just keeps poking the bear, saying if. Our boy gets completely fed up. Next thing you know, Yorum is floating face down in the water, getting a little lesson, and our sneaky yellow dragon is absolutely living for this drama. She calls it divine retribution for her stolen cup noodles. That's what you call instant karma. But as night falls, an aura of pure terror descends upon the girls. What could possibly frighten a clan of dragons? Jita's cooking, of course. He unveils his infamous mushroom hot pot. This time, it's a bubbling, purple concoction that looks straight out of a witch's cauldron. This has Shion's cooking written all over it. Even Gabiru from Tensura would have flashbacks. Yet, Jita is beaming with pride. He calls it mushroom hot pot, but Guol immediately accuses him of brewing a poison mushroom stew. She's hit with traumatic flashbacks of the Amazon, of almost dying from a bad mushroom. She's completely done with them forever. Bom starts throwing shade, saying she can't even picture Guol surviving in the jungle. Yorum, with zero filter, declares his food looks so foul that even the neighbor's dog wouldn't touch it. Our boy's pride is wounded. He snaps back, asking if she's dissing his skills, reminding her she had no problem with Bom's food. Hearing that, Bom pouts. She points out he called her cooking delicious, so why is he even comparing her masterpiece to This sludge. Yorum digs in her heels, screaming she won't eat that stuff. She demands cup noodles or the table gets flipped. Guol informs her the noodles are long gone. Then, out of nowhere, the little dragon happily scoops up a giant spoonful of the purple goop. Guol and Yorum absolutely lose it, screaming for her to spit it out, convinced she's about to die. But Guol just happily munches away, absolutely loving it. She even mumbles out that it's delicious. The entire room is stunned into silence. Their cute little dragon Guol can finally speak, and the girl just keeps on smiling. She actually ate the cursed mushroom hot pot. This family is certified insane, but you have to admit, they're wildly entertaining. Anyway, Guol leans in, her mind completely blown, and asks if Guol could actually talk this whole time. Since she could talk from birth, she wonders if Guol just chose to be silent until now. Overcome with excitement, she pulls Guol into a massive hug, calling her an adorable little thing. Guol asks how she stayed so quiet, and that's Yorum's cue to be savage. She suggests Guol stayed quiet, because she witnessed how obnoxiously loud Guol is, and simply didn't want to end up the same. Guol immediately fires back, insisting she's not talkative whatsoever. Yeah, sure. All the while, Jita stands beside Bomb, who wears a smile that says she knew everything. He asks Bomb if she knew Guol could speak. Bomb nods, revealing she'd heard Guol talking to herself when no one was around. Our boy wonders why she kept it a secret, but she simply says she wanted to wait for Guol's moment, for her to speak to everyone on her own terms. She even guessed Guol wanted her first words to be just for their family. That's actually incredibly sweet. But then, a dark memory surfaces, reminding our boy of how twisted things once were. In his previous life, Guol wasn't this happy little dragon. She was utterly broken, and the Jita of that timeline was no hero. He had his foot on Guol's frail body, coldly repeating that she was forbidden from ever leaving that place. Bruised and weeping, Guol pleaded for him to let them go. Man, I still can't believe Jita chose to imprison them first. Instead of trying to protect the young dragon, why choose the cruelest path when a better one was right there? It's heartbreaking to imagine the pain our sweet Guol went through in that other timeline. Back in the present, Jita looks down at Guol, who just beams up at him, saying, "Food yummy," as if that darkness never existed. The dude is on the verge of tears. In all his past lives, he had never once seen a genuine smile like that from her. Back then, this blue dragon only knew how to beg for her life. Yet, he knows he can't afford to regret his past cruelty. Because for a regressor, regret is a paralyzing curse. Our main character just reminds himself that this life will be different. He kneels before Guol and gently touches her forehead, whispering his thanks. The little boss just smiles, radiating pure happiness. Not gonna lie, that was an incredibly touching moment. Back at the table, only the empty, purple-stained pot remains. Yorum stretched out, complaining her stomach still felt empty. But Guol immediately called her out, reminding her how the redhead just swore the food was so bad, not even the neighbor's dog would touch it. Meanwhile, Bomb, looking adorable in a pink hoodie, announced that since JT handled the cooking, someone else had to clean. Her eyes landed right on Guol. Yorum instantly backed her up, declaring it was the younger one's job. This flicked a switch in Bomb. Her voice dropped as she asked Yorum exactly where she thought she was going. They were cleaning up together, and a serious bomb is a terrifying bomb. Naturally, Yorum wasn't having any of it. She pouted, her anger obvious, but she was cornered. So, she unleashed her ultimate technique. She slammed a hand to the earth, and a vibrant red magical circle blazed to life beneath her. "Is that a summoning circle?" Bomb asked, stunned. Yorum just smirked, telling them to watch. Seconds later, a fully armored knight was yanked, straight out of the ground. The janitor, poor soul, looked completely bewildered. He asked Yorum why she'd summoned him, maybe hoping she just missed his company. But nope, she just pointed a finger at the greasy hot pot and ordered him to clean. The scene was priceless. Without a word, the janitor in all his glorious armor knelt down and began scrubbing the pot. Seeing this, Bomb offered to help, and the man's face lit up with gratitude. Just then, JT appeared, demanding to know why the janitor was even here. Guol called Yorum a wicked dragon, but she just shot back, telling Guol to help if she felt so bad. But there was no way that lazy yellow dragon was touching a single dish. Suddenly, JT's entire demeanor shifted. He ordered the dragons into the tent. Now, Guol started to question him, but their protector was already moving as a shadowy figure lunged towards them. Out of nowhere, a man in full hiking gear appeared, smiling cheerfully, totally oblivious to the tense atmosphere. He greeted them, asking if this was a family camping trip. JT replied that they were just traveling and asked what the hiker was doing here. The man gestured toward his wife and child nearby. He explained they were also on a little getaway, but then his tone changed slightly. He confessed he hadn't expected to find anyone else out here. He then casually asked if JT had done any mushroom foraging. Our protagonist, completely unfazed, told him they'd already eaten all the Abaddon mushrooms. The man's smile faltered for just a split second. He then explained that those were his mushrooms. He'd been cultivating them for his wife, who was suffering from a serious illness. JT offered a sincere apology, but the man just waved it off, blaming himself for not marking them clearly. But our hero knew this man. He was the official superhuman, global rank 9, Manhwa, also known as the Druid of Regeneration. He was one of those rare, nature-type superhumans, a living national treasure in JT's previous life. JT had been both his ally and his foe across timelines. He didn't recall every detail, but he knew the man was desperate to save his sickly, pregnant wife. Those mushrooms were for her. In a rare moment of pure kindness, our protagonist did something unexpected. He presented an enormous 1,000-year-old ginseng root, a priceless treasure, as compensation for the mushrooms. The man was floored, insisting it was far too valuable. But JT was firm, and even their small child chimed in with a thank you. Our hero stated that the ginseng's value far exceeded the mushrooms, so their debt was settled. The hiker, Yongha, then asked if JT's group had some spare time. He wanted to guide them to a breathtaking viewpoint just up ahead. He was so excited about this spot and wanted to share it. JT was about to decline, but the others were instantly hooked by the idea of a beautiful view. Yorum, however, was hyped for a totally different reason. This man radiated power, and she was itching for a fight. But Yongha just chuckled, saying he wasn't the fighting type. Instead, before anyone could react, thick vines erupted from the ground, instantly ensnaring Yorum, Gaio, and Guol. He lifted the three of them with a massive hand made of roots, telling them to hold on. Gaio screamed that it was like a super cool amusement park ride, while Yorum just got weirdly excited about the tentacles. At that moment, Yongha's wife rushed over to apologize, explaining her husband was basically a giant child. But our main character just said it was fine, and he'd follow after cleaning up. She then ran off, shouting for her husband to slow down, so no one would get hurt. After the chaos settled, Bomb stood beside JT, remarking that this felt like a big family trip. But our MC, JT, replied that their family was a little different from a normal one. A flicker of sadness crossed the girl's face as she said, that's because they weren't a real family. She stepped closer, trying to elaborate. She reasoned that if JT was the dad, she would be the eldest daughter, with the others as her younger siblings. Following that logic, she pointed out, their family was missing a mom. And that just wouldn't work. A single leaf drifted down dramatically, as the warm sunset bathed them in a golden light. Bomb smiled softly, deciding that maybe she could be the mom. Okay, who else is on this ship? 'Cause I'm betting my entire life savings on it. Anyway, JT just stood there, completely speechless and frozen. Seeing his reaction, Bomb knew she had him, and she started playfully teasing, asking if his ears were turning red again. Our boy could only try to play it cool, telling her to quit messing around so they could catch up. But that blush on his face was undeniable. But just as our hero tries to escape the teasing, a message suddenly pierces his mind from his shadow. The clone reveals fresh intel on Prototype X. Instantly, JD's entire demeanor shifts into serious mode. He zones out completely, leaving Bomb behind, confused and calling his name, but JD just vanishes through a portal. That's when Javier Karma, the guy in armor, materializes right next to Bomb. She asks aloud where JD disappeared to, and Javier just shrugs, cracking a joke that perhaps our main character was hitting the bathroom, possibly for a number 2. Bomb's expression soured as she shot him a death glare that made him apologize on the spot. She questions if he's joking around because he's already done cleaning, basically threatening to double-check his work for any slacking. The poor guy tenses up immediately. Classic Bomb, always keeping everyone in line. The scene then cuts to the neon-lit night of Moscow, Russia. A woman with olive green hair surveys the sprawling city from a rooftop. And just like that, our main character emerges from a portal beside her. The woman greets him with deep respect, addressing him as her lord. JD clarifies he's only there for a quick drop-in, and will be leaving shortly, but she worries he's overextending himself by coming in person. JD brushes it off, saying he just needed some air. He asks for her update, and the shadow presents him with a clipboard. Our protagonist's face grows grim as he reads. The news is definitely not good. The shadow reports that the demonic humans in hiding have grown desperate, ever since her boss eliminated a huge number of them. Now, they're orchestrating something massive. Their goal is to send a weapon called X straight into the Superhuman Alliance's raid team for a total wipeout. Yeah, the situation just escalated. JD presses for more details on X, but she can only apologize, admitting her intel is limited for now. But our hero isn't one to wait, declaring he'll investigate personally and ordering her to maintain surveillance. After accepting the command, the shadow gives a silent, firm nod. Meanwhile, back at the scenic lake, the rest of the team is relaxing. Yonghwa asks if the baby's name is Guol, and then bursts into laughter as if it's the greatest joke he's ever heard. He points out their names, Bomb, Yorum, Guol, and Guol, claiming it's a Four Seasons pun. The dude is way too proud of that one. Yorum just rolls her eyes, muttering she always felt their names were incredibly low effort. But Guol jumps in to defend the choice, saying that she, model, finding the names oddly charming. Just then, Bomb's face lit up as Jite returned. She rushed over, asking what took him so long after he promised to be quick. Our main character just said he met someone, keeping his answer deliberately vague. Yorum instantly couldn't resist, teasing that he must have a secret lover to be sneaking around so late. She let out a dramatic laugh while Bomb shot her a death glare. Yorum absolutely lives for this drama. But then, Yongha warned that the sun would rise if they didn't get going. He urged them to look up, and in an instant, the sky erupted in a web of blue lightning. It was as if the heavens had cracked open, revealing massive red and blue nebulae swirling amidst the electric storm. Guol was completely freaking out, yelling that it looked like a real dimensional rupture as she tried to capture a picture. Even Yorum seemed genuinely impressed, despite trying to play it cool. Beside him, Bomb asked Jite if he'd ever witnessed something so beautiful. Our hero gazed at the spectacle, lost in thought, and simply answered that he didn't know. Bomb glanced at him, a flicker of concern on her face, but as she started to speak, a fleeting image of a heartbroken Jite flashed in her mind. Suddenly, Guol screamed about falling stars. Jite lifted Guol onto his shoulders, and the entire group watched as meteors blazed across the cosmic canvas. Even Yonghwa's wife was blushing at the sight. Guol saw only the beauty, and for a brief moment, there was a profound sense of peace. The next morning, the sun beamed down, making the lake look like a postcard. Jite and Yongha exchanged a handshake by the car, thanking him for the incredible trip. Yongha confessed he actually proposed to his wife in this exact place, earning a shout from her that she could hear everything. She was clearly flustered, which was hilarious. Jite, in a rare moment, called it romantic, which stunned even Yonghwa. He admitted he never expected our protagonist to say something like that. He even probed if Jite had a special someone, but our boy's expression went completely void. Then, the mood shifted heavily. A flashback revealed a beautiful woman in a white dress on a beach, her hair dancing in the wind, a radiant smile on her face. Who could she be? A past love, perhaps? In the present, Yonghwa's wife suddenly coughed up blood. Panic erupted. Yongha, terrified, declared they had to leave immediately. He opened a portal, pulling his family through to safety, but their son managed a small wave to Guol. Jite then called to Bomb and Guol, telling them it was time to head home. Bomb seemed to be in a daze until he said her name, snapping back to reality with a blush. She pointed out that Guol looked disappointed to be leaving, noticing the little girl staring at the lake with a pout. In a surprising gesture, our main character crouched down, filled a bottle with lake water, and promised Guol they could return someday. She offered him a shy, radiant smile and nodded. It was an incredibly sweet moment. But then, Yorum, already inside the car, shattered the peace, shouting for them to get a move on, just as Guol shrieked that Yorum had let one rip again. For this crew, the madness never truly ends. The scene cuts to a stark, silent hospital room. Yonghwa sat vigil by the bedside of his wife, Hawon. She lay unconscious, an oxygen mask covering her pale face. He reached out, his hand trembling, to comfort her, his expression utterly shattered. Just then, a hand gently clasped his shoulder. A new figure, BM, had appeared. He had curly gray hair and glasses, and a smug grin that hinted at trouble. BM simply said it had been a while. And this guy was no joke. He was the world's second-ranked superhuman, a true titan. Now they sat on a couch, sipping a vibrant orange drink that BM had brought along, his boisterous energy filling the quiet room. Yongha mused to himself, chuckling at how long it's been since they last met. He teased BM for missing their previous gathering, saying he was far too busy. BM brushed it off, claiming he was just grabbing a few things, before returning to his lab, insisting he couldn't stay. He also mentioned he'd been leading a no-alcohol campaign for the past 3 years, so that neon drink was supposedly harmless. Then, he shot Yongha a knowing glance, and asked if his wife's condition had relapsed. The hero's face fell as he admitted it returned after their camping trip. He looked completely defeated, whispering that it has already been 10 years. A full decade. It was a crushing weight. Seeing his wife so frail, tethered to machines in that hospital bed, Yongha's mind spiraled into darkness. What was the point of all their power, their advanced tech, if they couldn't even diagnose her illness? He flashed back to a brutal war, holding her as she was attacked, with sinister roots and a monstrous figure looming in the background. He was drowning in guilt, believing he should have protected her, as he cursed the ancient virus that caused this. The man was tearing himself apart from the inside, but BM, ever the pragmatist, just swirled his orange drink and told Yongha he had done everything he could. He said there was nothing left for him to do. This, however, was the worst possible comfort. It only fueled Yonghwa's despair until the glass in his hand shattered from the pressure. He roared that there was always something more, and then he broke, tears finally streaming down his face. Fame and titles meant nothing to him. All he wanted was for Hwan to recover. The anguish was crushing him. Tears streamed down his face as he lamented his cruel fate. Just then, BM rose and closed the distance between them, getting right into his personal space. A smirk played on BM's lips as his bottle let out a comical burp, making Yonghwa demand what he was doing. BM coolly replied. He just wanted a front row seat to him crying, an event that basically never happens. He even let out a chuckle, mocking that Yonghwa always laughed like a brute and never showed any real emotion. This was a spectacle he refused to miss. The only other time he'd witnessed it was at Hwan's childbirth. Yonghwa was a total mess back then, and BM found it absolutely hilarious. Yonghwa's face contorted with annoyance. He pleaded, asking if BM could just once try to comfort him like a normal friend. But his friend ignored the plea. Instead, he presented a small, glowing yellow orb and simply told him to take it. BM suggested using it on Hwan but warned him not to expect a miracle. Confused, Yonghwa asked what it even was, to which BM replied it was an incredibly potent and rare item. With that, he got up and prepared to leave, telling Yonghwa to send his regards to Hwan when she woke. Yonghwa stared at the orb, realizing it must be priceless, if it was that difficult to acquire. He looked up to thank his friend, but something nasty in his own hand caught his eye. It was a gnarled, twisted root. He called out to BM, offering to let him inspect it, hinting that even the well-traveled BM had probably never seen anything like it. This piqued BM's curiosity, who questioned if there was truly something he had never encountered. Meanwhile, in a place with a totally different vibe, a vibrant, tropical beach, a red, monkey-like beast frantically chased a yellow bird, roaring that the fowl was its next meal. The bird shrieked in terror, crying out for help. Amidst the chaos, Guol was just relaxing under a palm tree, with her teddy bear and sunglasses on, casually observing the pandemonium. Suddenly, a voice called out her name. It was JT, standing coolly in the surf with his shirt open, looking like a movie icon. He invited her to come play in the waves. Overcome with shock and joy, Guol leaped into the ocean, her sunglasses flying. Our hero caught her midair, hoisting her up, praising her magnificent jump, and calling her the absolute coolest. Her eyes widened with pure astonishment, looking like she was having the time of her life. The next moment, Guol was back in bed, hugging her teddy and smiling in her sleep, dreaming about being the coolest alongside JT. As night fell, the dragon's house was silent, except for Guol's loud snoring. Yorum was out cold, and even Javier Karma was dozing off while sitting upright in his full suit of armor. Seriously, who even does that? JT, however, was wide awake. He emerged from his room with a grave expression, moving silently through the moonlit house. He slipped past all his sleeping friends, crept down the dark hallway, and finally stopped at the base of the stairs. At the top, Bomb was waiting, staring right at him. She asked why he wasn't asleep, and declared she was going with him. He replied that he'd be back soon, and urged her to go back to sleep, but she wasn't buying it. She said the reason he was leaving now was the same one behind his mysterious disappearance yesterday. JT realized she must have seen something with her Providence ability. He told her he couldn't explain, but she insisted that he would need her, a chillingly ominous warning. He tried to brush her off, saying it was none of her business, but Bomb quickly grabbed his coat, stopping him. She looked hurt, asking if he just saw her as a little kid he needed to shield from all the ugly truths. She wondered if he thought they could be happy, knowing only the good things. While Guol hugged her bear in dreamland, Bomb said she wouldn't object to only seeing the good, just like the others. But she was of the Green Dragon clan. She wasn't just some ordinary kid, but our main character gently pried her hand off his coat, repeating that he would be back. She wasn't finished, though. She had one last question. If there was something JT truly hated doing, but knew in his heart it was the right path, what would he do? He answered that he would do it, even if it made people resent him or caused them pain. The heavy silence was broken as a hallway light flickered on. JT approached a door where a magnificent sword was on display. Bomb told him she had borrowed it from the janitor, adding that he would need it soon. But she confessed she wished he never had to lay eyes on it. Her words left our boy speechless. Bomb ended their talk by telling him to stay safe, and our hero left her standing alone in the hall, looking desolate as she hugged herself. The scene then cuts to Tokyo, at the Global Superhuman Association headquarters. Today, all the world's greatest heroes were assembling for a massive raid. A stern, blonde man appeared, followed by an entire legion of imposing superhumans. With portals glowing everywhere, it was like the world's ultimate heroes had arrived. Inside the Tokyo branch, the director sat behind his desk, his face soured as if he'd been eating lemons all morning. And who should stroll in? Our main character, exuding pure confidence with a sword and a smirk, asking if he's found the leader. He declares they'll need to make room for one more. The Tokyo boss just stares, completely bewildered. The Global Superhuman Alliance has assembled a 70-man unit. Their target? A ridiculously powerful S-rank dungeon boss. A colossal kraken with violet skin, wild eyes, and an insane number of tentacles. See this thing at the beach, and you're done with the ocean. These aren't just any heroes, they're the best of the best. Imagine a special forces unit for superhumans. Only the top 0.5% of the Alliance was even invited. Leading this operation is a top executive from the Global Superhuman Alliance, ranked near 90th in the world. His name is Shiraishi Ryunosuke. Dressed impeccably with a stern look, he's the world's 93rd ranked hero, the Divine Archer. That's a crazy high rank, and with a title like that, you know he's got an ego. Anyway, back to the action. Our main character stands before the boss's desk, looking completely unfazed, as if he belongs there. Shiraishi questions if he's Japanese. Our guy just claims he lives nearby. Yeah, totally believable. He then plays it off, asking if JT wants in on the raid, even offering a look at the team's classified files. Our hero doesn't hesitate. That's exactly why I'm here. The boss erupts in laughter, leaning back so far you'd think his chair would snap. And then, boom. His expression turns icy. He points out that JT has no business knowing about their covert plans, and no ordinary superhuman could have possibly bypassed their top-tier security. He deduces our guy must be incredibly powerful. He then fakes a welcoming gesture, as if inviting him to join. But it's a trap. He hits him with a smug, "Is that what you expected me to say?" Suddenly, Shiraishi's hand glows with a fierce green energy. His eyes now scream that he means business. He tells JT the raid is imminent. Since he's not an ally, he has two choices: a prison cell or be treated as a hostile. He threatens to end him right here, then asks if JT takes them for fools. A massive miscalculation. Our protagonist remains completely unfazed as the boss unleashes a torrent of green energy, but our hero simply releases his own dark aura, which effortlessly shatters the attack. Realizing his attack failed, Shiraishi kicks his desk at our hero and launches another assault. But when the dust settles, JT is unharmed. Shiraishi stares at his own hands in disbelief. His attack was useless. He grunts in pure frustration. JT calmly informs him that such basic attacks are pointless. Furious and humiliated, Shiraishi declares he didn't want to get serious, but he's been left no choice. His chair shatters as he rockets into the air, enveloped in a vortex of green power, preparing to strike. He unleashes his ultimate move, Judgment of the Heavenly Arrow. He warns our hero not to even think about dodging, claiming he doesn't want to destroy the entire building. Seriously, the drama on this guy. But JT remains completely still. A dark aura pulses around him, his sword resting on his shoulder. As the immense green arrow descends, our hero casually nullifies it. Whether he caught it or erased it, Shiraishi is completely stunned. The man is in shock, his mind reeling. He just neutralized that insane attack without any effort. JT's response? A wave of shadow energy that sends him flying across the room, crashing hard into the wall. Shiraishi collapses, coughing blood and crackling with energy, looking like he just got hit by a train. JT calmly approaches and looks down, asking if he's had a change of heart. But the boss is defiant. He asks what happens if he refuses. With a chilling expression, our hero threatens to wear his skin. Okay, that escalated quickly. Shiraishi forces a laugh, joking that an old man's skin is tough, saying it would be too much work to wear. Bro is trying to look tough, but the facade is cracking. He musters his strength for one last, desperate attack, launching another blast of green energy. But it doesn't even faze our hero. Once again, Shiraishi is thrown aside, his panic visibly growing. Pure panic sets in. He realizes there is absolutely no escape from this monster. His last hope is an emergency warp device in the next room. He makes a break for it, but he's slammed into the floor once more. When he looks up, the warp machine is already obliterated. It's completely fried, sparks flying everywhere. Yup, our guy's work. Now, Shiraishi is utterly desperate. Shiraishi's face screamed defeat, but Jite stood impassive, his blade resting coldly on the boss's neck, completely unbothered. He pressed again, asking if Shiraishi had reconsidered. The boss could only curse under his breath, sweating before he finally relented, welcoming Jitai to the unit. Our main character had just strong-armed his way onto the team, and no one was brave enough to object. In the aftermath, the office was a war zone, littered with shattered furniture. Papers drifted through the dusty air. Amid the chaos, our hero sat calmly, reviewing some documents, while Shiraishi knelt, defeated, in the rubble. His mind raced, wondering who on earth Jite really was. He wasn't a demon, maybe a returner from another world, like the famous BM? But no, he quickly dismissed that. The Alliance would have known about a returner of that level. He couldn't begin to guess why Jite was so set on joining the raid. Jite finally spoke, asking if the file listed all 70 members of the team, noting that one was missing. Shiraishi explained their primary choice was away on research, forcing them to find a last-minute substitute whose paperwork hadn't been processed. Still, he feigned confidence, insisting the replacement was official. He assured him there was nothing to worry about, but Jite wasn't buying it. He demanded to see the operator himself. The boss tensed up. Using his smartwatch, he summoned the standby operator, warning them not to ask questions and to get there immediately. As this happened, a dark, swirling aura pulsed around Jitai as he conversed with his subordinate. Suddenly, a voice from the shadows asked for a word. Our main character rose to his feet and replied, demanding to know the problem. The voice revealed they had finally gathered intel on the so-called Prototype X. Jite, his patience wearing thin, demanded to know why they didn't just transfer the memory. The shadow apologized. Our protagonist then asked if it was a familiar face. The answer was, yes. At that exact moment, a woman entered the room, clad in gleaming golden armor. She surveyed the wreckage of the office, immediately demanding to know why it was a disaster, and why Shiraishi was kneeling, injured. The boss tried to play it off, claiming he fell, but the excuse was flimsy. She pressed, asking if he was being disciplined. Shiraishi deflected, turning to Jite and saying he was the one who summoned her. Jite's inner thoughts were cold. It didn't matter if X was someone he knew. If they were an enemy, they would be eliminated. His resolve was like ice. The woman then lifted her visor, revealing a confident smile as she introduced herself as Hasuel. Recognition struck Jite. She was the Regressor's former lover. Yes, you heard that correctly. It looks like things are about to get infinitely more complicated for him. Now then, let's rewind to when our main character, Jite, was in his second life, not his seventh, a major flashback. It was 3 years after a massive war began, a war against demonic humans who were pure nightmare fuel. They were stationed at the massive blue lake called Sever by Kulsuk. The area was filled with tents and soldiers in tactical gear, with some cooking casually over an open fire, as if it were any other day. A much younger Jite, 32 at the time, stood with long, messy hair and a dark trench coat over a turtleneck. He looked serious, his eyes holding a deep sadness, lost in heavy contemplation. That's when Saibiol appeared. She also looked different in this timeline, with long dark hair and a flowing white dress. She snuck up on Jite and poked his cheek, teasing him for falling for her trick once more. Our hero turned with a deadpan expression and questioned her outfit. In response, she beamed with a bright smile and began to show off the white dress she'd slipped on, announcing it was their rare day off, and she wanted to capture a vacation mood. She asked if it suited her, clearly hoping for a compliment. Our main character turned away, but he was definitely blushing. She caught on immediately, laughing as she pointed out his red face. Her tone then grew a bit more serious as she asked him to meet her on a hill behind the camp. That evening, Jite looked confused and asked what was happening. She just gave him the classic, "If you want to know, catch me first," and darted off, her hair flying behind her. Nearby, at the fire, 2 mercenaries watched this all play out. One, wearing a bandana, asked if Jite and Saibiol were an item. The other confirmed they were, saying they'd been dating for some time. Apparently, love can indeed bloom on the battlefield. The bandana wearer wondered aloud how someone so gentle joined their squad as he watched the 2 of them on the shore. His partner explained that before the war destroyed everything, she used to work at an orphanage. Then the atmosphere darkened. He spoke grimly of the war. Every single child she had cared for was lost. As she shattered, an immense torrent of blue energy erupted from her body. With her powers awakening, she was drawn to a grim life among mercenaries. A shadow of sorrow crossed Bandana Guy's face. He never guessed her cheerful mask hid such a past. His buddy watched the flames, muttering they all had their demons and just wished this war would end. Fast forward to that night, where Saibiol was on a hill, waving her arms wildly to get JT's attention. When he finally appeared, she playfully jabbed at him for actually showing up. He just wanted to know what the big deal was, but she pouted, saying he had zero romantic vibes, pointing to the sky and, of course, herself. Calling herself the pretty girl under the stars with a cute pose. JT's silence prompted her to get serious. She mentioned her unique ability, the eye that perceives danger. That single phrase made his entire demeanor darken. His battle instincts flared as he demanded to know if a threat was nearby. She immediately called him out on it, for catching his serious itis again. The man has no chill. She then told him to close his eyes and just listen. He complied, and she explained that while her power could sense threats, after using a blessing for so long, it starts to pick up on other things, like a fiercely pounding heart. JT opened his eyes, confused, just as Saibiol unveiled the real show, a massive meteor shower igniting the heavens. Our hero was awestruck. As he stared, she drew close and embraced him, resting her head against his chest. "See?" she whispered. It really is a pounding heart. Beneath the cosmic display, she leaned in for a kiss. Not gonna lie, the moment was legendary. Afterwards, Sabiel joked his lips were chapped and needed balm. He blushed furiously and tried to shrug it off, but the mood shifted. Lying there, staring at the stars, JT's expression grew solemn. He asked, once the fighting here was done, if they should get married. She was utterly floored. She stammered, asking if he was seriously proposing. He just asked if she was against the idea. Still flustered, Sabiel said, if it was an order from her, he'd be forced to obey. Then he began overthinking if he could even have children. For real. He asked about laying an egg. Bro, what? She burst out laughing, calling that idea horrifying, and asked if he couldn't just give birth instead, saying she heard magic could do that. He just said he'd consider it, which made her light up and demand a promise. Her mind was already racing with their future. Pure happiness. A perfect scene that was about to be obliterated. It cut violently to a hellscape of blood, rubble, and chaos. Sabiel was horrifically wounded, an eye gone, drenched in blood, and barely standing. She begged JT to stop, but it was too late. He was panicking, his body not his own, as Sabiel reached for him one last time. Her hand trembled. The world was nothing but wreckage and pain. And then, a sinister, shadowy hand appeared. As it manipulated glowing threads of fate, a voice cackled that the sweetest sound is someone killing their beloved. And then he emerged, Hasegawa, the disaster-class demonic human, the one pulling the strings. Looming over JT, he sneered that our hero deserved every second of this. For being such a nuisance, he taunted, asking if JT knew how much trouble he'd caused. Still, he would grant him his life, only because Sabiel had begged for it. His new mission, live on, and remember this agony forever. Our main character was left broken in the dirt while Hasegawa walked away, a victorious smirk on his face. A system window appeared. Mission, save Earth, failed. The Grand Power, Grand Clock, had initiated another time regression. It was a total catastrophe. Then, we were snapped back to the present. Our hero was in an office, his gaze distant and completely dazed. Sabiel, now clad in golden armor, tapped his nose with a gauntleted hand, asking if he was okay. He only mumbled, still lost in the past. She remarked that he'd been zoned out for ages. Witnessing this, the raid boss Shirayuki yelled from across the room, warning her not to provoke him. Suddenly, JT's Grand Clock power activated. A golden hourglass materialized as glowing text scrolled by, scanning for malice and searching for a target known as X. It locked onto Sabiel. In this timeline, the system explained, her orphanage was raised by so-called heroes, not demons. Her hatred for superhumans grew so deep she forged a pact with a void entity called Rakshasa, becoming a demonic human herself. The system added a warning. Memories from outside the current timeline may be corrupted, but our hero simply resolved not to dwell on the confusing details. No matter who X was in this life, he knew exactly what he had to do. He then turned his attention to Shirayuki and questioned if he was actually the team's wing guard. The boss confirmed it, but Jite immediately cut in, demanding a switch to operator. He insisted on deploying with Sabiel, both their faces grim with determination. His mission was absolute. His one goal was to stop X. The raid was now set in Hethia's raging ocean, a tempestuous sea with a strange island on the horizon. The 70-strong raid unit arrived. Lightning cracked, armor gleamed. Every single one of them was primed for war. Shiraishi roared for them to hold formation. Sabiel secured her golden helmet, visor clicking shut, as Jitai shadowed her from behind. Sword sheathed on his back, ready for anything. The time had come. The Kraken subjugation was on. Inside the base, a group of elite heroes analyzed a massive hologram. Two profiles stood out. Sabiel, and our protagonist, Jite, who was now assigned as the mission's operator. This sudden change made a few Alliance members deeply uneasy. One even questioned the safety of bringing in a last-minute unknown, a total mystery operator. His partner just shrugged it off, figuring if Captain Ryunosuke approved him, it must be fine. Meanwhile, out in the raging storm, our main character stood with his arms crossed, calmly observing the chaos. Beside him sat Sabiel, resplendent in her golden armor. Captain Ryunosuke then stomped over. He explained he told his unit that our hero was his acquaintance. Some might be skeptical, but he didn't foresee any major problems. He then demanded to know if Jite planned on causing trouble. Our hero's response was a chillingly simple no. Ryunosuke backed off, but made it clear he wanted nothing more to do with our main character. He told him to do his job and then disappear. Sabiel watched this exchange, looking impressed. She confessed she'd never seen the captain act so deferential, wondering aloud if Jite was some kind of secret agent. Our hero just gazed into the storm, remaining completely silent. Sabiel continued, guessing he had countless dangerous missions under his belt. Then her tone shifted. She sat down, admitting she was terrified of the water, since this was her very first ocean dungeon. She tried to laugh it off, asking him not to let her drown, joking her armor would drag her straight to the bottom. But beneath the bravado, she was sweating, her eyes welling with tears. A wave of panic hit her as she blurted out that she needed the restroom. Her nerves were so frayed, she was on the verge of tears, scrambling away as she pointed in the direction she was headed. Jite watched her go, his expression unreadable. This triggered a memory. In his second life, 𝖪биол had been just as timid, trembling at the very sight of blood. He remembered her weeping over his injured arm, desperately trying to reassure him that he would be fine. He knew that memory well, but he also knew the truth. She was never actually afraid of water. Suddenly, Jite's eye began to glow, ethereal blue scales spreading across it, the scales of balance, an ability that could perceive the truth behind good and evil. He pieced it together. This 𝖪비ol had the original's memories, but her actions were a facade. Deep down, she wasn't the same person. She was an imposter, playing a part, using the original body's memories as a script. The real 𝖪비ol's soul was bound to a monster named Rashada, the seventh monarch of the void. This entire twisted timeline was the work of some outside force, meddling with fate. He realized someone wanted to make him suffer, to force him to kill her all over again. This entity's sole purpose was to break his spirit. But Jite made a vow. This enemy had no idea who it was dealing with. He was prepared for anything. In that instant, a colossal tentacle erupted from the ocean depths, a horrifying purple mass covered in glowing red eyes. The Alliance veterans began to scream, yelling that the Kraken had appeared. And this was no exaggeration. It was far larger than any report had indicated. Even Captain Ryunosuke's composure faltered, though he tried to mask it, boasting they'd slay the beast and celebrate with drinks afterward. He then roared for the vanguard to charge. A legion of armored heroes surged forward, unleashing a storm of steel and crackling green energy. The Kraken's massive tentacles slammed down, nearly obliterating the heroes. Some dodged just in time. Others were sent flying into the storm. One warrior stood his ground in the chaos, fighting relentlessly. Thrown back by an immense blow, he got up and launched himself back into the fray. Ryunosuke barked orders, commanding the sorcerers to bind the tentacles with massive chains of golden energy. He screamed at the ranged units to continue their assault. The supports amplified their magic, and for a fleeting moment, victory seemed possible. He ordered them to hold out until the operators found its weakness, but a veteran mage cried out in despair, yelling that the magical restraints were shattering. The Kraken was simply too powerful. The captain's desperate gaze shot toward Jite, begging for a plan. He screamed at him, asking if he'd found the creature's weak spot. Our main character replied, utterly calm. Aim for its left eye. Yunosuke, stunned, questioned if that was its core, but JT shot back that hitting that spot makes the Kraken freak out. He then demanded to know where 𝖪비ol was, and our hero, completely deadpan, told him she went to the bathroom. Seriously, the captain almost blew a gasket. What kind of timing is that? But there was no time to argue. He roared for everyone to brace themselves. He was about to unleash something massive. He started gathering an insane amount of green energy, with the supports amplifying his power. With a furious battle cry, he unleashed a colossal arrow of pure emerald light. This ultimate technique was his final lullaby for the Kraken. The energy arrow slammed directly into the Kraken's left eye, erupting in a blinding flash that cracked the orb and made the beast roar in agony. For a moment, hope ignited as the behemoth sank, tentacles flailing. But the captain was far from relieved. With his shoulder wrecked, he wasn't at full power. He knew that one shot wouldn't be enough to kill it, and he had to finish the job before it recovered. Suddenly, 𝖪비ol appeared on a rock right above the captain. Her golden armor gleamed as she launched herself into the air, shrouded in a furious yellow aura. Her eyes flashed crimson, her hand crackling with sinister dark energy. But her target wasn't the Kraken. It was the captain. All humans must perish, she screamed. This was not part of the plan. In the next instant, JT stood over a defeated 𝖪비ol, her brilliant armor shattered into pieces. He shoved her with such force they both plunged into the raging ocean. Ryunosuke was nearly swept away by the resulting wave. He could only stare, confused, at what had just rocketed past him. Beneath the waves, 𝖪비ol was sinking, shards of her armor drifting around her. She looked unhinged, her face fractured, one eye glowing a malevolent red. She locked eyes with our protagonist floating nearby, sword ready, and hissed, "How long have you known?" His gaze was ice. "You don't know me at all." Internally, he felt nothing, no regrets, no feelings left. The 𝖪비ol he once loved, their memories, were meaningless now, because in the past, both 𝖪비ol and JT were already dead. He killed them. The JT of today was a different being entirely. Meanwhile, 𝖪비ol's broken face twisted into a grin that would haunt your nightmares. "Oh, I know you. she sneered. I remember now. From the battlefield, wasn't it? Like it was just another day at the office. Then she revealed they were lovers in their past life, holding hands and kissing under shooting stars the whole 9 yards. But those memories were just fuel for the nightmare standing before him. Setabiel grabbed his face, her voice a venomous taunt. She whispered about his lips, how they were rough yet sweet, adding that if she'd known he'd ruin her plans, she would have bitten his tongue clean off back then. Savage. She then blasted him with a burst of red energy, but our main character deflected it with his giant sword, completely unfazed. What did you say earlier? She asked. About killing me? Setabiel began peeling away her broken golden armor, revealing her true form underneath. She was now a towering, red-skinned demon with flowing white hair and sinister tendrils, a prototype X-complete edition. You killed me once, she declared, a horrifying smile spreading across her face. Now, it's my turn. Blood trickled from her eyes. Yikes. Her demonic form lunged, scarlet tendrils lashing out from all directions. But our hero moved like a machine, his sword a blur as he dodged and parried, a blue energy shield flashing with each impact. Stunned, he could keep up. She began to mock him. Are you really the same JT I once knew? He was far too strong now. Rage poisoned her voice. If you were this powerful back then, you could have saved everyone. You could have even saved ME. She seized his hand, getting in his face. Why won't you fight back? Is it guilt? She taunted. Are you afraid to kill the woman you loved? Again? She reminded him how he tore her apart, even gouged out her eyes. You have no idea how much that hurt. I was so cold that morning. This was way beyond a messy breakup. And then, boom, a system window materialized, announcing his ultimate ability, Grand Clock, had activated. It had sensed an object from outside the timeline, Arma's longsword. JT snapped to the present, wielding a blade of pure golden light. He struck Setabiel. A brilliant golden explosion sent her flying backward as she screamed in agony. The holy light seared her demonic form. The system confirmed. Grand Clock would now protect JT from all malice. The sword pulsed with power, and he remembered. This was the malice he'd taken from the Guardian. He thought of Bomb, who'd given him the blade, insisting he'd need it. Our hero knew instantly that she'd predicted all of this. The woman was a genius. With this sword, JT believed he could purge the corrupting energy and save Setabiel without having to kill her. Setabiel, in response, just snarled, calling him a bastard. As she shrieked in agony from the golden power searing her, our main character was unfazed by her demonic rage. He spoke to the entity inside her. Stop toying with this girl's body and show yourself. He struck again, the slash cracking her demonic form until she glowed, her body sinking through the water. JT sensed that if he continued, the demonization would be nullified. This was his chance to win. But mid-attack, Setabiel faltered. He needed more. Suddenly, she spotted the Kraken's colossal purple tentacle. Desperate for more power, she lunged for it. In a flash, he blitzed towards the monster, landing squarely on top of its head, and unleashing his full power. But golden chains erupted, ensnaring her before she could reach her goal. She thrashed wildly, her red tendrils smashing against the chains, but she couldn't break their hold. She realized the Grand Clock was thwarting her every move. At the same time, the gargantuan Kraken watched from below, its immense eye glowing. JT taunted her. Can you really dominate a monster's mind? In this life too? His tone was ice cold. Our hero was just getting warmed up. He imbued his sword with dark, shadowy power, the Formless Sword, second form. As tentacles attacked, black chains erupted, wrapping around them and oozing a dark, bloody aura. This power was no magic or blessing. It was pure killing intent forged from raw hatred itself. Setabiel, pinned to the Kraken, looked up in horror. She wondered where he got this horrifying power. It was neither mana nor a blessing. She hissed, "You monstrous bastard." But let's be real, she was probably just jealous. JT then swung his golden sword down, and a pillar of light shot skyward, blasting through the ocean into the clouds. Aboard the ship, everyone panicked as a huge golden light exploded from the water, launching waves and debris everywhere. Ryunosuke, the captain, could only stand there in shock. What is that man doing? A dark maelstrom formed, and he knew without a doubt that JT was the cause of all this chaos. Finally, the insanity ceased. Sunlight broke through the clouds as the raging sea grew calm. Our hero emerged from the water, carrying the real Setabiel in his arms. She had returned to her human form, with long hair and golden cracks on her skin, completely unconscious. The system announced it was collecting the final traces of evil, but she'd require follow-up care to be fully purified. Our hero simply muttered, "It's finally over, for now." His face was grim, water dripping from his hair as he clenched his fist. Setabiel's body faintly glowed, but she was safe. Then, on a distant shore, little Guol began shouting for JT inside his mind. She was panicking because a woman named Yorum was drinking his liquor. She desperately screamed for him to return, her priority being her sister's drinking habits, not the apocalypse he just stopped. And for a brief second, we see our hero in a dark cloak, sword on his back, a lone, legendary figure against the horizon. And with that, the Global Superhuman Alliance's 7-man raid was complete. The S-rank Kraken dungeon was cleared. Of course, Jite pretty much soloed it, as usual. He then returned home, stepping inside. While carrying 𝖪biol, he was dressed sharply, looking serious, while 𝖪biol appeared at peace for once. Bomb, Yorum, Guol, and little Guol were all there, staring at him like they had just seen a phantom. Yorum was holding a liquor bottle, her hair a mess. Guol held the younger child, all of them with their mouths wide open. Even the normally composed Bomb was completely shocked. Then again, who could stay calm? Seeing Jite enter carrying a nearly naked woman? Later that night, in the tense living room, Yorum stood with her arms crossed, giving Jite a death glare while the other girls watched. Our boy looked incredibly awkward, as she demanded that he start explaining. She gestured to the unconscious woman he'd laid on their couch. "Who is this?" she demanded. Jite started to speak, but Yorum cut in, asking with a smirk if this was his girlfriend. She poked his side, saying she never knew he was that kind of man. She then called out to Guol. He was in such a hurry he undressed her before even getting in the house, and that certainly caught Guol's attention. Whipping around with Guol in her arms, she demanded to know if this woman was actually his girlfriend. Jate stayed cool, saying they were just acquaintances, but the red-haired girl wasn't buying it. She started taunting him about friends who take off coats, then shirts, asking what could possibly be next. She was clearly trying to shame him, so our main character just silenced her with a swift chop to the head. Ouch. She crumpled to the floor, stunned, as he repeated that he and this woman were not close, that she barely knew him. Bomb asked if he left because of her, and he confirmed it, saying he had to find someone. And this new woman could help. He then announced she'd be staying for a bit, which got a shrug from Yorum. She mumbled that she was over it, her head still throbbing. But Guol was not letting this go. Furious, she shot up, declaring this was their home, their sanctuary, and she refused to let it be ruined by his personal drama. Little Guol pumped her fist, totally backing her up. They were not having it. Little Guol was in full agreement. Hearing this, the red-haired girl called her old-fashioned, before our hero pointed at the janitor. Guol argued the janitor could stay since he wasn't human anyway. Bomb and Yorum quickly agreed. They didn't want some strange woman in their house. The golden-haired girl cheered, declaring the vote settled. 𝖪biol, the newcomer, had to go. Bomb, looking exhausted, said they would figure it out tomorrow. She and Guol had class early. Once they left, Yorum seemed shocked by the harsh rejection. She asked for his next move, and he just sighed, saying he'd search elsewhere. All while 𝖪biol was passed out on the couch, completely oblivious to the drama. The next morning, sunlight streamed peacefully into the house, until a blood-curdling scream shattered the calm. Jate, holding a frightened Guol, demanded to know what was happening. She just told him to see for himself. That woman he brought home was losing her mind. And indeed, 𝖪biol was freaking out, smashing a bottle and screaming, demanding to know where she was and what they did to her. Jate calmly noted she was finally awake. The red-haired girl, unimpressed, told him to handle it. 𝖪biol's screams intensified as she questioned why her clothes were changed. Yorum tried to de-escalate, insisting our main character did nothing weird, but that just enraged her more. She threatened to hurt them all, claiming she was a superhuman. The red-haired girl had seen enough, mentally branding 𝖪biol a psycho, and even considered just ending her right there, a seriously savage thought. Suddenly, system messages lit up for our main character. He'd gathered 10% of Malice's traces, and the Grand Clock had unveiled a new truth. Anyone corrupted by Malice would have their mind twisted, remaining unstable until they were properly cured. 𝖪biol's condition worsened. Sweat beaded on her face, her eyes glowed red. She was in agony. Our hero recognized the signs instantly. This was Malice's mental corruption at work, but before he could act, 𝖪biol lunged, crackling with golden energy. Yorum intercepted, asking for permission to take her down. Jate gave the green light, just warning her not to kill. 𝖪biol shrieked, lashing out wildly, but the red-haired girl blocked her with a golden barrier, telling her to open her eyes. Then, she slammed into her, pinning her to the floor. After the scuffle, 𝖪biol was nearly exposed again, covered by a scrap of cloth. Yorum immediately panicked, swearing it wasn't her fault, and yelling at the janitor, who'd been watching from a corner. She screamed at him to clean up the glass, but he just replied, "Rejected." His duty was to protect the young lady, not to be a maid. His eyes then flared blue as dark energy coiled around him. He glared at Jate, demanding his sword. Terrified, little Guol clung to our hero, trembling. Jate instantly realized the janitor's strange behavior stemmed from the same malice. He was positive this tin can had been corrupted too. Now he sets Guol down, as the situation spiraled. The janitor then roared that he only lost before because he was careless, a mistake he wouldn't repeat. Before the machine could make a move, Jate struck with another clean hand-edged chop, slamming him down in a shower of blue sparks. The blow knocked the janitor's head clean off his body. He was done playing games. Soon, the janitor was tied up on the floor, right next to 𝖪. The red-haired girl sat nearby, holding the janitor's head. Meanwhile, little Guol placed her teddy bear on the neck of the headless body. Yorum recapped the situation. Both the woman and the robot were acting wild, thanks to that villain's malice. She then asked what comes next, since they were in a real bind. To the hospital with these two? A fair question, but our hero has a more pressing one for her. He asks if he truly drank every single bottle last night. With a frown, she says no. To dodge Uriel's intense stare, he awkwardly pulls the janitor's metal helmet over his head. She mentions having a few left in her room, and just like that, he tears open a giant, purple portal. It pulsed with a cool, dangerous energy. "Bring one bottle and follow me," he commanded. "We're going to get them treated." Guol and the janitor. In the next instant, they were standing in a vast, ancient underground labyrinth, all ancient stone and eerie purple light. Uriel's eyes widened with excitement. What is this place? Jate called it his base, the very spot where he planned to fix these two problem children. Suddenly, Uriel found herself staring through heavy metal bars. Skeptical, she noted it felt more like a prison than a hospital. "Just follow me," was all he said. She even teased him, asking if he'd lock them up for misbehaving, which, knowing this guy, was a definite possibility. And what do you know? Guol was already in a cell. She was curled into a ball of misery, her crimson eyes glowing faintly from beneath her hair. "No more cages," Jate declared. But Uriel's confusion only grew as they walked deeper into the maze. Uriel wondered if anyone actually lived here. He replied that he needed to ask the owner for a room. Her instincts suddenly flared. She could sense someone incredibly strong nearby. Our boy confirmed it was the world's number 2. That sent Uriel over the edge. The second strongest in the entire world. She was about to explode with excitement. She sprinted to a door marked BM, begging to just peek inside. Jate ordered her to wait until he called, but she pleaded, "Just one look." As he opened the door, a massive, furry monster's hand shot out and snatched him. It was BM, the famous number 2 superhuman, looking completely wild. He lunged at Jate, who deflected him with a wave of blue energy. BM, now back in human form, sat in his trashed room, bottle in hand, and grumbled that he didn't remember sending an invitation. The guy was clearly irritated. But well, that's just the kind of guy BM is.